Chapter 851. One of the conditions Yu Ruwen agreed to was that Gu Junqing would help her handle the Yu family's affairs. Gu Junqing naturally wanted to resolve this matter as simply as possible. First, he needed to eliminate the most unstable factor in the Yu family, the eldest uncle. He chose the cruel method of controlling the uncle's favorite niece, Yu Ling, to do it. This was not just for Yu Ruwen, but primarily because the uncle had offended him at the banquet. No one had ever been able to offend him without paying a price. Gu Junqing walked out of the banquet hall with a handsome face and a smile that gave off a sunny, positive feeling. Once he stepped out of the hotel, a long, luxurious black car pulled up in front of him. Gu Junqing sat inside with a calm expression. Inside sat a bewitching beauty with a curvy, perfectly proportioned figure. Her form-fitting clothes clung to her curvaceous body, accentuating her explosive figure and making her look gorgeous and sexy. This was Yaya, Gu Junqing's personal secretary. She was one of his trusted confidants. Young Master Gu, the streets nearby are under our surveillance, but after checking, we have yet to find any traces of Sichen. Yaya's face was alluring, and even though she was reporting an emergency, her voice remained bewitching. An ordinary man might have lost control just hearing that voice. Her peach blossom face and charming tone made her seductiveness seep into her very bones. He is still in this city, I can feel his presence. Continue to expand the search, and if necessary, get authorization from the regulatory department to use the Skynet, Gu Junqing said calmly. Yaya was often spoiled by him, so he seemed indifferent to her charms. After all, this enchanting flower was watered by his own dew. Do we really need to use the Skynet to find one Sichen? Yaya blinked and asked curiously. Skynet was the Xia Kingdom's video surveillance system for real-time monitoring and data logging in fixed areas. It could even accurately identify a pedestrian's age, gender, and clothing. Ordinary personnel could not access it. Of course, with Gu Junqing's status, using this system to find someone was effortless. I have said before, never underestimate our opponents under any circumstances. Gu Junqing glanced at Yaya and said indifferently, understood. Yaya gave a light cough, nodded, and began arranging the mission remotely via her phone. After giving a few more instructions, Gu Junqing looked at the alluring Yaya, and his heart stirred. Since he was still waiting for news, he did not mind finding some entertainment. When there was work, the secretary did it, and now that there was no work, he would have to do the secretary's work himself. You have been with me for so long, and you still have to ask such questions. It seems I must punish you properly. Then, young master, would you like your little secretary to be kneeling, sitting, or lying down this time? Yaya seemed to know what Gu Junqing was about to do, lightly licking her bright red lips with a seductive look in her eyes. When Gu Junqing first asked her to follow him in Lilidu, she had agreed out of necessity. After all, Gu Junqing's own strength and the forces behind him were far beyond her imagination. Now, she was completely willing. Especially after learning about some of Gu Junqing's internal affairs, she felt even more so. Combined with Gu Junqing's personal charm, as well as his extraordinary stamina and endurance, Yaya was extremely satisfied with this master. After all, no woman could resist a man who made her love overflow every single time. It is a difficult choice, so we will just have to take them one by one. First kneeling, then sitting on top, and finally, you can lie down. Gu Junqing mused for a moment and chuckled. Yaya looked at Gu Junqing's face with watery, seductive eyes and slowly knelt before him. This would have been impossible before. After all, she was the head of the Red Sleeve Garden, and even though it had been acquired by Gu Junqing, she should not have been this subservient or seductive in front of him. But after submitting to him, she felt that serving Gu Junqing well was her duty. Yaya did not hesitate to take this opportunity to gain Gu Junqing's favor, kneeling directly on both knees, straightening her back, and parting her red lips. Fortunately, the long luxury car had privacy glass and was an independent space. The cabin was also thick enough that it would not rock back and forth during the action. Otherwise, it was hard to imagine what people would think if they saw such a scene. After using the short-distance teleportation talisman, Sichen felt as if he had been sucked into some sort of space. His mind was in chaos, and the bizarre, colorful scenes before his eyes made it impossible for him to keep them open. However, he was quickly kicked out of that space. Sichen tried to open his eyes, and when he finally did, the strange sights had vanished. He was currently in a dim, narrow alleyway on a street. It seems I have escaped. Sichen breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he fell back into confusion. Is Gu Junqing really just a rich second-generation minor villain? Why does he possess such strength? And what is that ability that makes everyone around him blind to his actions? Sichen thought this in disbelief. He had always thought this was a world centered around Dao Tianyan and his 7 sisters, and that Gu Junqing was merely a stepping-stone villain. But the current situation suggested that Gu Junqing was not a minor villain at all, but a major antagonist. This gave Sichen a headache. His divine tycoon points were completely exhausted, and he did not know when he would be able to accumulate so many again. Right now, he only had the money the system rewarded him with every moment. He was truly the definition of someone so poor that he only had money. I should just save my own life for now. Sichen shook his head and sighed. The short-distance teleportation talisman could only move him a short distance, at most a few streets away. Sichen looked at the tall hotel in the distance, and clenched his fists with a ferocious expression. Gu Junqing, just you wait. I will make you taste exactly what I am feeling right now. He was essentially at a dead end now. He did not even know the situation regarding Yuruwen. Why had she suddenly been embracing and kissing Gu Junqing? She had not looked forced at all. He was afraid that if he went to find her, she would report him to Gu Junqing instead. After witnessing Gu Junqing's unfathomable strength, he had decided that he would not appear before him again without the strength to ensure victory. The pressure this villain, Gu Junqing, put on him was even greater than the original protagonist, Dao Tianyan. Chapter 852. The priority right now is how to escape, Su Chen thought to himself, hiding in the corner of a deep alleyway. Although he did not know Gu Junqing's exact status, even a fool could tell it was terrifyingly high. If Gu Junqing were like the bumbling rich second-generation heirs in the novels from his past life, he would not be worried about his safety. After all, those villains from his past life often had an advantage at the beginning. Opposing the protagonist was not difficult. However, he felt that Gu Junqing was not like those stepping stone villains. Where did things go wrong? Why do others get rich and find beautiful women, reaching the peak of life after transmigrating, while I am stuck in hell mode? Su Chen sighed to himself. But at least I have the perfect Shenhao system. The wealth I accumulate will eventually shock the world, and I will reach the pinnacle. Although he was frustrated for the moment, he was not without hope. The system was his trump card and his hope for a comeback. After thinking for a moment, Su Chen understood the path he needed to take. He planned to hide in the shadows and develop using the system. When the time was right, he would return, shock the nation, and take his revenge on Gu Junqing. Su Chen thought for a moment, then walked out of the alley without hesitation. If he guessed right, Gu Junqing must be extremely curious about his sudden disappearance. He was likely searching for him with great fanfare right now. Therefore, he planned to hide his identity and flee the capital as quickly as possible. He was even considering whether to leave the country to hide. Su Chen tightened his collar and lowered his head as he walked out of the alley. The banquet started around 6 or 7 in the evening, so it should be around 9 o'clock now. The streets of the capital were still bustling with activity and endless crowds at this hour. Su Chen breathed a sigh of relief. With so many people around, he did not believe Gu Junqing could find him. With that thought in mind, Su Chen silently blended into the crowd. However, what Su Chen did not know was that the moment he stepped out of the alley, security cameras on every skyscraper locked onto him. The Skynet system had already captured his facial recognition data. After a series of reports, Su Chen's whereabouts were sent to the phone of Gu Junqing's subordinate, Yaya. At this moment, Yaya and Gu Junqing were no longer in the car. They were staying at a hotel. There were plenty of opportunities to find Su Chen, and he could not escape Gu Junqing's grasp. Gu Junqing was not in a hurry. Yaya had changed into tight-fitting black-trimmed lingerie, and was sitting on Gu Junqing's waist, performing a rhythmic, repetitive motion. From Gu Junqing's perspective, he could feel the slender suppleness of Yaya's waist and her curvaceous figure. A light sheen of sweat on her porcelain-like skin seemed to give her pale complexion the luster of polished pearl and jade. "Young master, there is a call. It should be news about Su Chen," Yaya said breathlessly, her voice stuttering between gasps. "I told you to call me master now. I will handle this, you continue." Gu Junqing smacked Yaya's firm backside, then reached out to grab the phone from the nightstand. "Yes, master." After a suppressed murmur, Yaya refocused on the activity at hand. After reviewing the information sent by his subordinates, a faint smile appeared in Gu Junqing's eyes. It seems he had been too high profile. He had frightened Su Chen so much that he abandoned his foster mother, Yuruwen, and his sister, Qing Tong, to secretly book a plane ticket to leave the country. The key was that while Su Chen bought the ticket, he was actually on a private bus leaving the capital. Buying the ticket was merely a smokescreen Su Chen had set up. He was afraid that Gu Junqing would be able to access his identification information. He had deliberately used his real identity to buy the international ticket online, intending to quietly leave the capital first before deciding whether to actually go abroad. It could be said that if Gu Junqing had not tracked Su Chen's specific movements, he might have actually succeeded in escaping. Unfortunately, as long as Su Chen appeared under any security camera, his movements would be tracked completely. Time to speed things up, or the rat will get away. Gu Junqing chuckled mockingly, tossed the phone aside, and flipped Yaya over beneath him. Chapter 853. The night fell, with a bright moon and sparse stars, and a faint mist hung in the night sky. A bus heading out of town drove quietly along the road. The passengers inside were few, and most were fast asleep. Only one passenger, sitting in the furthest corner, looked out the window with a nervous expression. His face was full of vigilance. He was like a startled rabbit, ready to bolt at the slightest disturbance. This was Su Chen, attempting to throw Gu Junqing off his scent. He had first booked a flight abroad using his own identification. In reality, he sneaked off to the highway and tranced to see if he could catch a ride on an unlicensed bus that did not require ID. He felt very lucky to have actually found an unlicensed ride that only required cash. Although the cost was several times that of a normal bus, money was the last thing he lacked. Given enough time, his perfect almighty system was enough to grant him wealth that would shock the world. The vehicle accelerated, soon passing the borders of the capital. This allowed Su Chen to relax his tense mood. The lights on the bus were off, leaving only the faint hum of the engine and the soft breathing of the passengers. Everything seemed so normal and peaceful. Su Chen gradually let his tight nerves settle. Finally, I have escaped, he thought with a sigh of relief. Throughout this journey, he had been terrified of being caught by Gu Junqing, sticking to alleys and deserted areas. Having finally caught an unlicensed ride out of the capital, his nerves had remained on edge, scanning the surroundings in fear. Now that he had relaxed, he could not help but want to strike up a conversation. Just then, a refined-looking man wearing gold-rimmed glasses sat in the seat to his left. The man's scholarly appearance and temperament made Sichen feel a sense of affinity, so he leaned over to talk. "Brother, do you know where this bus is heading?" The refined man put away his phone and glanced at Sichen with confusion. "You do not even know where the bus is going, yet you got on?" Sichen knew his question sounded strange. However, he really did not know the destination of this bus. After asking the driver if ID was required, and getting a negative answer, he had excitedly hopped on. Only now did he realize he did not know where he was going. "Well, you know how stressful life is. I was in a bad mood before getting on and wanted a spontaneous trip, so I just hopped on. Now that I have calmed down, I have started to wonder where I am headed." Sichen pondered for a moment before offering a plausible reason. Given the fast pace and high pressure of modern life, it was easy for people to be affected mentally. Lately, the topic of spontaneous travel was quite popular, with more and more young people embracing a laid-back, Zen lifestyle. "I see, that makes sense. A spontaneous trip is quite an appropriate description," the refined man said with a tone that seemed full of hidden meaning. "Yes, forced by life," Sichen sighed. He thought about how he had been forced to leave the capital, and had to abandon Yuruwan and the others behind. He had been driven away by Gu Junqing in defeat, his heart heavy with gloom and disappointment. "I understand your pain. I am in a similar boat. I have not been home in a long time for work, and if it were not for a work assignment, I would not be going back either," the refined man said with emotion, seeing the look on Sichen's face. "So you have your own struggles too. Life is not easy for anyone. By the way, you still have not told me where we are going." Sichen felt a flicker of joy at being understood, as if he had met a kindred spirit, and asked with a smile, "We are on our way to Luodu." At the man's words, the smile on Sichen's face froze. Luodu? There was an imperceptible tremor in Sichen's voice. The refined man nodded as if he had not noticed. "What, have you never heard of Luodu?" the man asked in surprise. "No, it is not that. I just remembered something." Sichen offered a forced smile and straightened his body, looking uncomfortable. If he remembered correctly, Gu Junqing came from the Gu family of Luodu. In Luodu, the Gu family was a clan capable of covering the sky with one hand. Otherwise, where would Gu Junqing get such power and status? Sichen did not know about the status of Gu Junqing's grandfather, the Xia family, so he attributed everything about Gu Junqing to the power of the Gu family. "Have I just headed straight into Gu Junqing's lair?" Sichen's expression turned grim and ugly. He wondered if he was walking into a trap. He was supposed to be avoiding Gu Junqing's pursuit, yet unexpectedly, he had stumbled his way to Gu Junqing's hometown. But one cannot catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's den. Defeating Gu Junqing is too difficult, so maybe I can go to Luodu and find his weakness? Sichen thought and deliberated frantically, debating whether or not he should continue to Luodu. Initially, he did not want to go, but after some thought, it did not seem so bad. Perhaps this was an excellent opportunity to take revenge on Gu Junqing. First of all, Gu Junqing surely would not expect him to run to his own base camp. Perhaps he could actually find a chance to escape. Second, Gu Junqing must have many relatives and friends in Luodu. If he wanted to take revenge, he could start there. He could start by getting revenge on his family. For example, if Gu Junqing had a sister, he would woo her, making Gu Junqing taste what it felt like to have his own sister wooed by another man. He did not believe that without Gu Junqing's direct oversight, the Gu family could be a match for him, a transmigrator with a system. Done thinking. Why is your expression shifting so much, alternating between determined and worried? The refined man's eyes deepened as he seemingly noticed the changes in Sichen's face and asked with an ambiguous tone. "It is nothing. I just thought of some things that were exciting and happy." Sichen pushed these thoughts aside and replied calmly, "It is good that you have come to terms with it. Actually, even if you had not, it would be fine, as you would eventually come to terms with it anyway." The refined man seemed quite philosophical, acting like a riddle maker and saying things that Sichen could not quite understand. "By the way, brother, since you mentioned going home, do you know the Gu family of Luodu?" Sichen asked, feigning indifference. "Naturally, I am aware of them." The refined man paused for a moment, his gaze towards Sichen seeming to carry something, before he spoke unhurriedly. Chapter 854. The surrounding lights flickered and dimmed. Sichen failed to notice the strange, shimmering light in the elegant man's eyes. "Do you know the Gu family? Could you tell me about them? I heard they are the most powerful family in Luo City, controlling the economic lifeline with their roots everywhere. Is that true?" Sichen looked at him with a hint of anticipation. He needed to know them inside out to win. He had to understand everything about the Gu family in Luo City to find their weaknesses and crush them. It was just like how Gu Junqing had crushed Dao Tianyan's Azura society. He could also defeat the backing behind Gu Junqing. Gu Junqing must never have guessed that he would loop back to his base after fleeing. Sichen sneered inwardly. Going against the grain might just yield results. Why would a small fry like you be concerned with such a massive entity? The elegant man looked surprised. "I was just asking." Sichen hesitated to ask more, fearing suspicion. "But since you are so curious, I suppose I can tell you a thing or two." The elegant man glanced at Sichen and spoke calmly. The Gu family used to be one of the 4 great families in Luo City, but their influence was limited to just this city. Under the leadership of the young master, the current Gu family has become powerful enough to influence the whole country, and even reach into the world. The elegant man's face displayed a flash of fanaticism, his expression extremely agitated. I don't think he is that great. If I were in his position, I could also lead a family to rise, Suchen said with resentment. Hearing someone praise the bastard Gu Junqing filled Suchen with disgust. Furthermore, the fanatical look on the man's face made Suchen feel strange. The moment the man mentioned the young master of the Gu family, the other passengers on the bus turned their heads. They all displayed the same fanaticism as the elegant man. When they heard Suchen's words, everyone's gaze locked onto him. Their eyes were full of malice, as if they were extremely angry at his blasphemous words. Suchen lowered his head and suddenly felt a chill around him. When he looked up and noticed that everyone on the bus was staring at him, his terror was indescribable. The surroundings were dim, and pairs of eyes glowed with an eerie light, looking at him as if they wanted to devour him. Suchen felt a chill in his heart, feeling the atmosphere on the bus had become abnormally bizarre. I miss Poke. The young master of the Gu family is indeed a genius, perfect and flawless, a proud son of heaven. Suchen finally felt that something was wrong, but he could not put his finger on it. Seeing the bizarre atmosphere, he could only offer hasty praise. After hearing Suchen's words, the surrounding people turned their heads away in satisfaction. Suchen breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that no one was looking at him anymore. No, something is wrong, Suchen thought with a flash of vigilance. Were these people all connected to the Gu family? Otherwise, why did everyone look over the moment Gu Junqing was mentioned? Suchen felt a tightness in his chest. Could he have boarded a thief ship? That is impossible. How could there be such a coincidence? Suchen could no longer control his chaotic thoughts. He did not even want to chat with the elegant man anymore. After simply saying he wanted to sleep, he turned his head to the window. He was vigilantly watching everyone around him. Not long after, the bus suddenly stopped at a service area. The bus has arrived at a service area. Those who need to can get off and rest. We have a long journey ahead, and the bus needs to refuel. The driver shouted loudly. Understood. Many passengers who were still awake responded one after another. Suchen hurriedly got off the bus, looking at the pitch-black scenery. There were many trees and the service area was desolate, so he was about to check the terrain when, whack. Suddenly, a hand slammed hard onto Suchen's shoulder. Holy shit, who is it? Suchen was startled and spun around, finding it was the elegant man. Little brother Su, do not be afraid. It is me. Where are you planning to go? The elegant man asked with a smile. This service area is too dilapidated, it doesn't even have a restroom. I am planning to go inside to relieve myself. Suchen gave a dry laugh, pointed into the woods, and sighed regretfully. Then you must be careful. The environment here is desolate, and there may be wild beasts, and it is the middle of the night. The elegant man patted Suchen on the shoulder, and said with a smile. Then he ignored Suchen and went off to do his own thing. Suchen felt relieved that the elegant man only warned him and said nothing else. If these people were truly Gu Junqing's men and knew his identity, they would certainly not let him leave. The passengers who got off the bus also did not seem to care about his whereabouts. Suchen turned and walked into the dense forest. He did need to use the restroom, having drunk too much at the banquet, and fled in a panic after being scared by Gu Junqing. As for running away, he was not going to bolt before confirming the identities of the people on the bus. Gu Junqing was not here anyway, and he did not believe Gu Junqing could actually reach outside of the capital just for him. He knew he had already run quite far from the capital. If Gu Junqing really wanted to catch him, he should have been dragged back to the capital by now. Even if the passengers on the bus were Gu Junqing's men, he was not afraid. Those without Gu Junqing's level of strength could not possibly catch him. He still intended to go deep into the tiger's den to understand everything Gu Junqing possessed, so that he could defeat him. Protagonists are always like this. The more dangerous the place, the more they want to go, thinking about how to make a comeback. He just did not know who he was about to face, as Gu Junqing would not give him that many chances. Hell awaited him ahead. Although Suchen still felt some unease, he was bold and meticulous enough to stay instead of fleeing. Hello, may I ask if you know the way to the capital? Just as Suchen intended to return, a voice as beautiful as a bubbling spring reached his ears, touching his heart. Chapter 855. A woman's voice suddenly emerged from the misty, forested mountain. Although the sound was as crisp and ethereal as music from an empty valley, it still gave Suchen a violent jolt of fear. In the dead of night, and in such a remote wilderness, where could a woman possibly come from? He wondered if it could be some kind of mountain spirit or monster. Suchen felt his heart pounding in his chest. He had only recently transmigrated into this world, and did not know if such things existed here. Since transmigration was real, the existence of monsters was not entirely impossible. Sister, I have been weak and sickly since childhood, with a fragile constitution. You can take whatever you want, just please spare my life, Suchen said, raising his hands with a tremble. He dared not turn his head to look at the source of the voice. What nonsense are you spouting? The woman's voice was cold. She flicked her finger, and a bright light, like a magnificent silver dragon, shot out and struck Suchen precisely on the knee. Suchen screamed in pain and fell backward. He suddenly realized that this woman's appearance and vitality did not match the monsters from his previous life. Suchen scrambled to his feet and looked up. Upon seeing her appearance, he froze in place, stunned. It felt as though something had struck his heart and soul with great force, leaving him completely breathless. She wore a snow-white dress with a long hem that swept past her ankles, as if she had slowly walked out from the moon itself. Her posture was like a dream, and her skin was as flawless as mutton-fat jade. Her face seemed to have been crafted with all of heaven's care and favor, with exquisite features gathered on a delicate, porcelain-like oval face. She was indescribably beautiful, and even the most flowery language in the world could not capture even a fraction of her charm. She looked like a fairy who had stepped out of an ancient ink painting. Su Chen's eyes widened, and his mouth fell open. After fleeing from Gu Junqing all day, he had not expected to encounter such a beautiful woman in this desolate, late-night place. Do you know where this is? In which direction is the capital? Seeing Su Chen staring at her blankly, the woman frowned slightly, feeling a bit of displeasure. However, she did not say anything. She was well aware of how strong the attraction of her appearance could be to the male sex. Had she not lost her way while traveling, she would not have stopped to ask for directions. The capital. The capital. Ahem. Su Chen mumbled to himself a few times before realizing that the fairy was asking for directions. He quickly replied, "This is the midpoint between the capital and Luoduo. The capital is roughly in that direction. You can walk a few hundred meters that way to reach the side of the highway, where you can hail a car headed to the capital." Su Chen pointed toward the capital, doing his best to guide her. "I see, thank you." The fairy nodded slightly and turned to leave. Su Chen felt a sense of regret, as he had not yet managed to get the fairy's contact information. Her beauty surpassed any woman he had ever seen, even better than his foster mother, Yu Ruwen, or the heroine, Mu Peining. In terms of pure looks, they were on par. However, in terms of temperament, this woman truly possessed an ethereal, otherworldly quality. "Miss, it is so late. Why are you here? This wilderness is not safe, and if you travel through the mountain forest, it will be hard to tell north from south once the fog rises." Seeing that the fairy did not seem to be heading toward the highway, but was instead walking through the forest, Su Chen spoke with concern. "That seems correct." The fairy hesitated for a moment. She was primarily worried about getting lost again on the road ahead. Therefore, she began to consider whether to follow Su Chen's suggestion. The fairy's eyes suddenly narrowed. She reached out, casually plucked a leaf, and flicked it with a wave of her hand. The leaf shot straight toward where Su Chen had been standing. The leaf brushed past Su Chen's ear, breaking him out in a cold sweat. Su Chen turned back and realized that the leaf was not aimed at him, but at a green bamboo snake that had been creeping toward him in the dark. The fairy had saved his life. "Thank you for saving me, miss," Su Chen said, filled with gratitude. "Think nothing of it," the woman replied indifferently. To her, it was merely a trivial act. However, the woman's display of skill gave Su Chen an idea. If he could get this woman to protect him, he would no longer need to fear Gu Junqing. In his eyes, this woman's strength was terrifying, clearly belonging to the transcendent level. "You saved my life, so I must repay you. How about I personally lead you to the capital?" Su Chen did not want to leave the capital in defeat anyway. If this fairy could help him, he would not need to risk going to Gu Junqing's lair. That could work, the woman nodded slightly. To reach the capital as quickly as possible, she did not mind the help of others. As for encountering danger, with her current strength, she had no need to worry. At least, this man in front of her seemed to be nothing more than an ordinary person in her eyes. "However, I have a feud with an enemy. If anyone tries to stop me on the way, I hope you can help me handle them," Su Chen said with a bitter expression. He truly had a life-or-death grudge with Gu Junqing, who had not only bullied his foster mother, but also wanted him dead. Even now, his foster mother and sister were still in Gu Junqing's hands. He could not swallow this grievance. "As long as you are not breaking the law or committing crimes, I can help you fend them off because you helped me." The woman did not want to cause trouble, but to reach the capital quickly, she agreed. "Of course not. It is actually my enemy who is relying on his power to oppress me and my family. My mother is still in his hands, and I hate that I lack the strength to take revenge." Su Chen showed a pained and resentful expression. His words were half-truth and half-lie, fully capable of resonating with anyone who had a sense of compassion. There is still such a thing in this world. The woman was slightly surprised, though she did not fully believe Su Chen's words. "Ah, you will find out when we get there." Su Chen sighed, pretending to be utterly pitiful. "I will make my own judgments then. Lead the way." The woman's elegant and indifferent demeanor was like the scent of jasmine, making Su Chen feel a bit intoxicated. "She is too beautiful, far too beautiful," Su Chen thought with a hint of joy. Was his luck finally turning around? He had just escaped death, and now a powerful expert had appeared. The shock this fairy-like woman brought to Su Chen was truly immense. It was no wonder she dared to walk through the desolate mountain forest alone, for she was definitely the type of recluse master living in the mountains. She was like the yellow-clothed woman, or little dragon maiden from Jin Yang's martial arts novels. Su Chen had already categorized this fairy in his mind. They looked cold and indifferent on the surface, but were actually extremely soft and kind on the inside. This was the reason he immediately started playing the victim. Just as Su Chen was about to lead the fairy down the mountain, she suddenly stopped, a grave look appearing in her eyes. It appeared, just as Junqing expected. A faint voice suddenly rang out in the mountain forest. Chapter 856. I wonder which fellow cultivator is playing this joke. The fairy stood still and spoke calmly. A faint current of white energy rippled around her. With a flutter of robes, a figure drifted down to the ground. The newcomer was another stunning, peerless woman. She wore simple white garments without a single ornament, yet they defined a grace beyond words. All the ornate and beautiful things in the world paled before her dreamlike, otherworldly face that seemed to steal the color from the heavens. Her skin was white as frost, bathed in a holy radiance. Her eyes held misty waves, cold and indifferent like a pool of autumn water. She was a woman who could rival the fairy in beauty and temperament. Looking at these two top-tier beauties, Chen was dumbfounded, wondering what kind of luck he had. How could he encounter two such peerless women in such a short time? If Gu Junqing were here, he would surely step forward and respectfully call her master. The new arrival was none other than Gu Junqing's master, Guiyu. Oh. The fairy's beautiful eyes betrayed a trace of surprise at the newcomer, and she let out a soft exclamation. Are you Guiyu? It is really you. Why are you here, when reports said you had disappeared without a trace? Some things happened back then, but fortunately, I am safe now. Guiyu thought of her time with Gu Junqing and sighed slightly. If she had not met Gu Junqing, she might not have recovered from her injuries so easily, nor would her cultivation have advanced further. Your cultivation has reached this level too. It seems your years of seclusion did not hinder your progress. We can finish the battle we started long ago. A flash of battle intent flickered in the fairy's eyes. Li Suanyu, my goal today is not to fight you. Guiyu shook her head and spoke calmly. Both she and Li Suanyu were once the favored daughters of their respective septs, naturally wanting to determine who was superior when they first met. But circumstances had changed. After everything that had happened, she was no longer the arrogant, favored daughter she once was. There were simply too many geniuses in this world better than them, like her disciple Gu Junqing, whose natural talent left Guiyu feeling indescribably amazed. You aren't here to fight me. Then are you here for him? Li Suanyu pointed to Chen, speaking with interest. Guiyu nodded. She had departed for the border between the capital and Luodu after receiving her disciple's call. Chen's dream of reaching Luodu to disrupt Gu Junqing's rear was merely a plan orchestrated by Gu Junqing himself. The entire bus was filled with Gu family members. Luodu was already under the Gu family's absolute control, managed like an iron barrel. For Chen, entering Luodu was nothing more than walking into a trap. Therefore, Chen's luck would never allow him to actually enter Luodu. Gu Junqing had sent Guiyu to ensure Chen arrived in Luodu without any mishaps, so he could be successfully locked away. And, as expected, the unexpected had occurred. Fortunately, they were close to Luodu, and Guiyu had successfully arrived in time. Chen's face had already turned pale. Upon hearing Gu Junqing's name, he felt a wave of unease. He had not expected this new fairy to truly be here for him. Fairy, what do you want with me? We don't seem to know each other. Chen's mouth twitched, and he forced a smile. We do not. Guiyu shook her head. Then why are you looking for me? Although he had a vague suspicion, Chen still wanted confirmation. If Guiyu was truly sent by Gu Junqing, it meant his movements had been under Gu Junqing's watch the entire time. A light mist seemed to surround Guiyu. Her peerless face remained cold and indifferent, truly cold as ice and snow, leaving one unable to guess if she was happy, angry, sad, or joyful. My good disciple asked me to escort you safely to Luodu. Guiyu looked at Chen with cold eyes, acting as if her disciple was thinking of his best interests. Your disciple is Gu Junqing. It was him who sent you, right? Safe arrival in Luodu, that is a joke. He wants me to walk into a trap. Chen gritted his teeth, his eyes full of resentment. Guiyu simply looked at him calmly, saying nothing. Li Suanyu watched Guiyu with interest. She and Chen were merely passing acquaintances, and she had no interest in his grievances with others. I didn't expect you to have a disciple after so long. You must let me meet him sometime. Li Suanyu sighed with emotion. When Gu Junqing was mentioned, Guiyu's calm demeanor shifted slightly, and she nodded reservedly. Fairy, this woman is the master of my enemy. Can you protect me? Seeing them chatting happily, Chen grew anxious and looked at Li Suanyu with a hint of pleading. He wanted to know if this shield could protect him. Li Suanyu was his only lifeline. Gu Junqing was already so powerful, so this master of his could not be weak. Otherwise, Gu Junqing would not have sent her to capture him. Well, I did make a promise earlier, Li Suanyu said, looking slightly troubled. Although Chen had not fulfilled his promise to take her to the capital, and she had no obligation to keep hers. But she had made a promise, and leaving just like that seemed a bit unrighteous. Do you intend to stop me? Guiyu stood not far from Li Suanyu, her expression becoming solemn. Although I am in a rush to go to the capital, and have no desire to get involved, nor do I care about his life, I am more curious about how much your strength has improved. Li Suanyu did not hide her thoughts. White currents surged around her, the scene elegant and stunning. Then come. Guiyu's eyes turned cold. Since her disciple had asked her to do this, she would choose to complete it with all her might. Their figures blurred, and in a flash, they leapt into the surrounding trees, disappearing from the spot. Seeing this, Chen was overjoyed. Without hesitation, he ran away. With Li Suanyu's help, he had a chance to escape. All he needed to do was try his best to escape Guiyu's pursuit during this time. He certainly could not return to the motorcade. From Guiyu's words, he quietly realized that this was all Gu Junqing's conspiracy. It was all to send him to Luodu. If not for this accident, he might have really been heading to Luodu. Chen's mind was much clearer now. The fire of hatred had been extinguished by successive blows. He knew he had no way to deal with Gu Junqing right now. The only thing to do now was to flee. Otherwise, once he fell into Gu Junqing's web, he would have no chance left. Chapter 857. The gloomy, bleak moonlight shrouded the vast mountain forest. It was so quiet that it felt as if everything had fallen into a death-like slumber of fear. Chen fled frantically through the forest, not daring to look back even once. He did not know if the woman named Li Suanyu, who looked like a fairy, could block Gu Junqing's master. Crack, crack. His sharp intake of breath hissed into the air. The sound of his clothes tearing, and his skin being scratched by thorns and branches echoed constantly. Specks of blood appeared on his collar. Su Chen gasped in pain, but he could not worry about that right now. If she could hold them off, that would be fine. If Li Suanyu failed, he certainly would not be a match for Gu Junqing's master either. His system no longer had any wealth points to purchase life-saving items. If he were caught, it would truly be the end. Roar, roar. Suddenly, a series of tiger roars erupted from the forest. The sound sent a shiver of fear deep into Su Chen's heart. This was a genetic instinct etched into human bones. It was a defense mechanism triggered by the threat that large predators posed to their lives. There are tigers here. Su Chen was shocked. He was so unlucky. He was already running for his life, and now he had to encounter a tiger. What terrified him even more was that the tiger's roars and movements were getting closer. Shit, it is not coming for me, is it? Su Chen cursed under his breath. Su Chen had to change direction immediately. However, the encroaching sounds warned him that the tiger was in hot pursuit. He could only assume that the scent of blood from his open wounds had attracted the beast to him. As for the tiger chasing Su Chen, its demeanor was incredibly relaxed, as if it were out for a leisurely stroll. Bayu, catch him. He is the person Junior Brother is looking for. A stunning beauty sat upon the tiger's back. Her devilish figure was enough to turn heads, and her legs, clad in tight-fitting trousers while riding the white tiger, accentuated her perfect physique. Years of exercise had left her body, without a single ounce of excess fat. Her delicate face wore no makeup, possessing not only a heroic spirit that rivaled any man, but also an overbearing aura. She was Gu Junqing's senior sister, Chen Lingyu. This tiger was Bayu, the one raised by Gu Junqing. For some unknown reason, Bayu had grown larger and larger under the care of the Gu family. A normal adult tiger's body length is between 1 and 4 meters, including the 1-meter-long tail, with a weight typically around 500 kgs. Yet, despite not even being an adult yet, Bayu's length and weight had already surpassed that of a full-grown tiger, reaching the level of a giant beast. Furthermore, Bayu's fur had gradually turned white, as pure as snow, without a single impurity. At first, the people in the Gu family thought Bayu was sick. After carefully examining it, they discovered that Bayu's body was extremely healthy and strong. Still worried, the women reported this to Gu Junqing, who was far away in the capital. Gu Junqing diagnosed the situation remotely. He found that Bayu had no health issues and was remarkably healthy. Aside from an increasing appetite, its intelligence had also developed significantly. At the very least, it could understand most of what an average person said. Upon discovering this, Gu Junqing believed it was likely due to his beast-taming techniques and the excellent food the Gu family provided. Therefore, he could not be bothered to look into it further. This change was a good thing, and the Gu family could certainly afford to keep a large tiger. After simply stating that Bayu was fine, the matter was settled. However, Bayu was indeed undergoing an astonishing transformation. Outsiders did not know whether this change was good or bad. Roar, roar. Bayu let out 2 low, dissatisfied growls. It had run such a long distance, did they not think it would get hungry? These detestable 2-legged creatures not only failed to feed their master, but were now urging it to chase someone. You just ate a sheep and now you are hungry again. I do not know if you are a tiger or a pig. Even a pig would not get hungry this quickly. I am warning you, if you do not put in more effort, I will send you back to your master. Chen Lingyu had raised Bayu for quite some time, so she understood a little bit of tiger language. Bayu's growl meant that it was hungry. She had never seen such an intelligent animal. It could be said that Bayu was only missing the ability to speak. It could easily make others understand that it was hungry now. It was just like a child using crying to express that they were hungry. Roar. A flash of human-like dissatisfaction appeared in Bayu's eyes. However, it dared not say anything else. It still remembered the fear that Gu Junqing had instilled in it back then. The sturdy cage that had held it captive was bent out of shape by Gu Junqing's bare hands. It still remembered the scene of shivering in the corner. Even within its still developing brain, a primal instinct of immense fear remained. Furthermore, because it had been controlled by Gu Junqing's beast-taming technique, it subconsciously wanted to bow down and worship him whenever it appeared before him. This was unbearable for the proud Bayu. It was clearly the king of beasts. It should be the master. Besides, its current life was too good, having food delivered right to its mouth. It did not want to suffer at Gu Junqing's place. Roar. Bayu began to sprint through the forest. The forest, filled with thorns and branches, was like flat ground to it. Jizuyu held onto Bayu's fur, leaning down against its soft coat with a sense of comfort. She was simply treating this mission to capture Su Chen as an outing. Smelling the blood left behind by the human, Bayu quickly tracked Su Chen's whereabouts. Jizuyu lifted her body slightly and saw Su Chen running frantically ahead. She narrowed her eyes, having confirmed that Su Chen was indeed the person she was looking for. She stopped bothering Bayu, tapped her toes lightly against its broad back, and lunged directly towards Su Chen's back. By now, Su Chen was terrified to the point of losing his soul. He had never seen such a massive tiger. His build was not small, and he stood at 1.8 meters tall. Yet, compared to that giant tiger, his height seemed like that of a small child. The tiger's shoulder height was nearly as high as his chest, reaching a height of nearly 1.4 meters. If it were to stand on its hind legs, it would have to reach 5 or 6 meters. Initially, Su Chen had wanted to see if his enhanced body could mimic Wu Song fighting the tiger from his past life. However, upon realizing how massive the tiger was, he had already abandoned that idea and was focused solely on escaping. Naturally, he had not noticed that there was someone on the white tiger's back. He even failed to notice that this person had already closed in on him. Bam! Ji Ziyu's palm struck Su Chen's neck with ease. Su Chen was knocked unconscious on the spot without even a chance to react. Chapter 858. Chen Lingye looked down at Su Chen, who lay unconscious on the ground after she had knocked him out. She could not help but mutter to herself about the situation. Such a weak person, and yet he required both me and master to mobilize for him, she thought. I do not know what that bastard junior brother is thinking. What Chen Lingye did not know was the truth behind his weakness. If Gu Junqing had not already drained most of Su Chen's luck, it would not have been guaranteed that she could have taken him down. Creatures like these sons of luck could jump off a cliff and survive unscathed. They would invariably stumble upon their own fortuitous encounters, whether it was eating a fairy herb or receiving power from a master. Chen Lingye sent a message out and waited quietly on the spot. Soon, a group of people surrounded them from all directions. Leading them was the refined-looking man from the car earlier, while many others were passengers from the same vehicle. I will leave him to you. Do not let him run away again, Chen Lingye said indifferently. Yes, young Mistress Chen. The refined man bowed respectfully. Do not call me young mistress. Your young master has so many young mistresses that I have lost count, Chen Lingye snorted. The refined man could only smile awkwardly at her words. The young master did indeed have too many romantic debts. Take him away, the refined man ordered. The people around them promptly tied Su Chen up and carried him off. Chen Lingye did not follow them. Instead, she rode back to where she came from. Ji Yuyu was still fighting, and she needed to check if she could assist her master. Meanwhile, on the other side of the forest, Li Suanyu stood at the tip of a tree. She was light and ethereal, like an immortal. Her flowing hair danced as if caught in a breeze, and her eyes, bright and piercing like blades, stared fixedly at Ji Yuyu on a neighboring tree. Suddenly, Li Suanyu noticed countless birds rising from the forest behind her, startled by a bestial roar. She also heard a cacophony of animal and human noises. She guessed that Su Chen had failed to escape and had been captured. She did not really care about that, however. The only reason she had agreed to help Su Chen stall Ji Yuyu was simply to test her own strength against her. After all, finding someone with Ji Yuyu's level of skill was not easy. Make your move, Ji Yuyu. I have wanted to spar with you for a long time, Li Suanyu said in a relaxed tone. Is it really necessary to fight? Ji Yuyu asked with a cold expression, sighing softly. After experiencing betrayal from her own kin, she had grown indifferent toward matters of power and status. Li Suanyu said nothing more. Her leaping body spoke for her. Tipping her toes off the branch, she channeled her internal energy to execute her lightness technique, propelling herself forward like an unsheathed blade. She forced the air in front of her to compress, and a faint white palm print seemed to manifest out of thin air as she struck toward Ji Yuyu. Ji Yuyu crossed her hands in front of her chest, creating a ripple of invisible energy within a 3-foot radius around her. When the pale palm print struck this invisible wall, it quickly dissolved. Li Suanyu had already closed the distance and engaged Ji Yuyu in close-quarters combat. Li Suanyu suddenly raised her hand, executing a palm strike imbued with pale energy that tore through the air with a piercing screech. Ji Yuyu curled her lips at the sight. She truly did not want to fight, but since the other party had already closed in, she had no choice. She raised her hand to meet the incoming strike with her own force. As their fair palms collided, both figures trembled and took the opportunity to separate quickly. Both women felt their blood roiling and a tightness in their chests. It was not that people in the modern martial arts world did not use weapons, but travel was extremely inconvenient. High-speed rail stations would not even let you in if you carried a sword or saber. Never mind the station, you would be lucky if you did not get dragged to the police station to explain where you obtained controlled blades. Unless prepared in advance, most people fought using their own internal energy. They also utilized readily available tools, such as tree leaves. Their auras collided and they engaged once more. Waves of energy rippled through the air, causing countless tree leaves to float and dance around them. Li Suanyu's momentum flared again. She grabbed a handful of leaves and infused them with internal energy, turning each leaf into a razor-sharp blade. With a graceful flick of her hand, the leaves scattered and rained down on Ji Yuyu from every angle. Having exchanged blows, she knew Ji Yuyu's martial arts were not inferior to her own. She did not worry that Ji Yuyu would fail to block them, but she knew that if even one leaf struck her opponent, she would win. To her surprise, however, Ji Yuyu dodged the entire onslaught, relying solely on her movement technique. Ji Yuyu utilized nimble, swift footwork and keen dynamic vision, successfully evading every single leaf. At the same time, she gave her body a slight shake, causing the remaining leaves that had not yet reached her to drop to the ground. Seeing this, Li Suanyu stopped using the leaves as weapons. She looked at Ji Yuyu with a sense of wonder and ceased her attack. She had roughly gauged Ji Yuyu's true strength. Seeing that Li Suanyu had stopped, Ji Yuyu withdrew the currents of energy swirling around her. Your strength has improved so much. I have experienced many fortuitous encounters, and I thought I would have left most people far behind. How do you train? Li Suanyu was dressed in simple white robes that could not hide her exquisite, curvaceous figure. Her stunning, city-toppling face was devoid of any makeup. The pale arms exposed by her wide sleeves seemed to glow with a charming white light under the moonlight. At this moment, this ethereal and beautiful woman looked at Guyu with unconcealed curiosity. Standing on the other side, Guyu's appearance and temperament were not one bit inferior to Li Xuanyu's. Both of them were peerless beauties. How do I train? Upon hearing this, Guyu immediately recalled the scenes of training with Gu Junqing. How could she possibly speak to an outsider about such shameful matters of their intimacy? Well, I have a good disciple, Guyu said slowly after a moment of deliberation. A good disciple? Your disciple guides your training? Does that mean your disciple is now stronger than you and can offer you pointers? Li Xuanyu asked curiously. Yes, Guyu did not find it difficult to admit, and nodded indifferently. That's strong. Li Xuanyu's eyes lit up with curiosity. If they were to truly fight, her strength would not be much greater than Guyu's. Looking at Guyu's expression, it was clear that her disciple was significantly stronger than Guyu herself. Did that not mean that Guyu's disciple was even more powerful than her? Chapter 859. In the gloomy, dense mountain forest, two exquisite beauties with towering snow-capped peaks were chatting. If any man stumbled in here, they would likely mistake them for mountain fox demons. You say your disciple broke through to the foundation establishment stage earlier than you did? After Jizuya briefly recounted some of Gu Junqing's experiences, Li Xuanyu could not help but marvel. Entering the divine realm, which cultivators call the foundation establishment stage, at their age was already no easy feat. She never expected there to be such a genius in this world. When she was the same age as Gu Junqing, she was only at the 7th grade realm. She was still a long way from the foundation establishment stage, which was beyond the 9th grade. Jizuya gave a slight nod. Then I really must find a chance to meet him, Li Xuanyu said with clear interest. Upon hearing this, Jizuya stared at the peerless face of Li Xuanyu, which was by no means inferior to her own. She couldn't help but mutter to herself that with such a beautiful face, even if Li Xuanyu didn't go to see him, Gu Junqing would sniff her out and come looking anyway. During this time, she had truly realized how many romantic debts Gu Junqing had stirred up. A beautiful woman from the capital even came running, claiming to be a scientist working for him. Now Jizuyu had let it go, as she was not the type to get jealous over such things. Just then, Chen Lingyu arrived at high speed, riding on White Moon. Seeing her master chatting with a beautiful woman, she did not rush in impulsively. Master, what is the situation? Do you need backup? Chen Lingyu looked warily at the tall, alluring Li Xuanyu, and even White Moon stared at her with hostility. It is fine, Jizuyu said with a slight shake of her head. You have captured that man? Li Xuanyu's beautiful eyes turned toward Chen Lingyu. I have, what of it? Chen Lingyu's expression grew even more guarded at the sight. Rest assured, that man has nothing to do with me. Although I once had a grievance with your master, there is no need to fight to the death over him now, Li Xuanyu said calmly. Don't worry, Jizuyu patted Chen Lingyu on the shoulder. I have matters to attend to, so I will take my leave. We shall meet again if fate allows. Seeing Chen Lingyu still watching her vigilantly, Li Xuanyu shook her head slightly and spoke faintly to Jizuyu. After speaking, Li Xuanyu drifted away. Before leaving, she left one final remark for Jizuyu. I will go look for your disciple in the capital. Only after Li Xuanyu left did Chen Lingyu's expression relax significantly. The aura radiating from that woman was stronger than anyone she had ever met. It was even stronger than Gu Junqing when he first left Luodu. Master, do you think we could capture her if we joined forces? Chen Lingyu leaned in toward Jizuyu, watching the direction in which Li Xuanyu had disappeared, and muttered softly. What kind of dream are you having? You would be captured within 2 moves, and I would have to save you, Jizuyu chided, tapping Chen Lingyu on the head. At the same time, she cast a solemn gaze in the direction Li Xuanyu had departed. I said joined forces, Chen Lingyu clutched her head and said with a mournful face. Even though she was not young anymore, she still acted like a child in front of Jizuyu. Joining forces would not make us her match either. Her strength has grown quite a bit. I never expected that even though my own strength has improved so much, I am still inferior to her. Jizuyu expressed a hint of emotion. Who is she? Is she an old friend of yours, master? Chen Lingyu did not know Li Xuanyu, but seeing how familiar Jizuyu seemed to be with her, it was clear this happened before Jizuyu took her as an apprentice. You could say that, but that was a very long time ago. Back then, I was considered a prodigy among my peers, but I once happened to encounter a teacher and disciple with impressive martial skills. The master traveled everywhere challenging the talented disciples of various sects in the martial arts world. I stood out for the Suantian sect, but I did not last many moves against that disciple. That disciple was none other than the currently Xuanyu, Jizuyu said with clear, calm eyes. She had been proud and arrogant back then, unable to accept being defeated in so few moves, but she was no longer that person today. What? She dared to bully you, master? Next time we will call junior brother to gang up on her. I refuse to believe she could beat us then. Jizuyu's heart was calm as water, but Chen Lingyu, unwilling to accept this, wore a look of indignation. How can you justify suggesting an ambush so matter-of-factly? Jizuyu shook her head with a laugh, then patted Chen Lingyu's shoulder to comfort her. Rest assured, that matter passed long ago. Moreover, my current strength may not be much worse than hers. Now, stop being angry and go inform your junior brother about the situation. I really did not expect junior brother to be able to predict that someone would come to help that man named Su Chen, even while far away in the capital. Ji Zuyu nodded and voiced her own question. Originally, she felt that capturing a normal person should not have required her and her master to both step out. But she had not expected Sichen to draw out a woman as terrifyingly powerful as Li Suenyu. There are always people in this world who are different from the norm. Your junior brother is one of them. In the future, just trust his judgment. Ji Zuyu was broad-minded and did not care about these things. She only felt that she needed to help with what her beloved disciple had entrusted to her. Although they had not defeated Li Suenyu this time, Sichen had finally been captured, so the matter was considered a complete success. I understand. Chen Lingyu nodded obediently. Then, the master and disciple, along with White Moon, disappeared into the moonlight. Meanwhile, Li Suenyu was in the midst of speeding away, but she suddenly stopped in her tracks. She slapped her forehead and said regretfully, I actually forgot to ask Ji Zuyu for directions. I will just have to see if I can find a passerby later. Where is the road to the capital? Strength not below masters. And it seems she is currently heading toward the capital. Far away in the capital, Gu Junqing hung up the phone with his senior sister and leaned against the large bed, lost in thought. This trap had been designed by him from the start. He simply wanted to see if Sichen could escape his grasp with his current luck. That was why he had allowed his subordinates to indulge Sichen's behavior. He only needed to watch him along the way and move to capture him only when Sichen truly tried to escape. The Son of Luck is a creature that can always escape death in a crisis and gain great benefits. Heroines, treasures, medicinal herbs, receiving power from experts, and so on. He actually wanted to see if he could snatch those benefits away for himself. To that end, he had specifically asked his master and senior sister to go out together. In the Gu family, other than him, it was his master who possessed the greatest strength. He never expected that even his master could not subdue the woman named Li Suenyu. Still too confident, Gu Junqing murmured to himself. However, completely controlling Sichen was not a bad thing. Ultimately, Gu Junqing had already siphoned too much of Sichen's luck. At this moment, a moist, warm, and curvaceous body rolled into Gu Junqing's embrace after just finishing her exercise. She hooked her arms around Gu Junqing's neck, hot and soft, carrying a bewitching fragrance, and kissed him passionately. While his master and senior sister were off fighting for their lives, he was enjoying the alluring, moving body of a beauty. A rare trace of guilt stirred in Gu Junqing's heart. Chapter 860. The capital city was filled with skyscrapers, and the morning streets were already bustling with heavy traffic. Crowds flowed like a tide, with hazy lights that felt both illusory and real. As the most important political center in the Xia Kingdom, it attracted countless citizens from across the country. It held the concentrated wishes of thousands, a city full of charm and influence. The morning after Sichen's arrest, Gu Junqing went straight to Yu Ruwen's home. Sichen's luck was currently strong enough to support his consciousness. To make him fall into that state of stupor and helplessness, he needed to strike at his confidence and persistence. This had to start from Yu Ruwen. As long as Sichen learned that the person he held dearest and admired had fallen for Gu Junqing, no one in the world would look forward to his existence. Sichen would then fall into despair. Combined with the special potion Gu Junqing had prepared, Sichen would descend into chaos and remain in an eternal sleep. The perfect god-tier tycoon system on Sichen would then serve Gu Junqing forever. Gu Junqing strolled into Yu Ruwen's home. He saw at a glance that Yu Ruwen was elegantly having breakfast with Qingtong. Perhaps because she was at home, she wore a black silk backless dress. Her fair skin was delicate and firm, perfectly displaying her voluptuous and alluring figure, like a ripe peach dripping with juice. One couldn't help but covet that honey, itching to take a bite and taste the sweet, ripe, tender flesh inside. Underneath, she wore a sheer, transparent skirt that only covered her calves. Gu Junqing couldn't help but glance twice at her snow-white, partially covered legs, feeling his throat go dry. When Yu Ruwen saw Gu Junqing walk in, a look of discomfort flashed across her face. She had truly lost her mind last night. She must have been drunk to have agreed to this jerk's request to try being real lovers. Yu Ruwen felt extreme regret in her heart. She didn't know what had come over her to agree on such an impulse. The man in front of her was more than 10 years younger than her, and she had actually agreed to give it a try. Good morning, Brother Junqing. Would you like to have breakfast with us? Qingtong's innocent and pure nature could not detect the turbulent undercurrents between Gu Junqing and Yu Ruwen. She softly greeted him and asked if he wanted to eat. Perfect. I haven't had breakfast at home yet. Aunt Yu, I hope you don't mind. Gu Junqing looked at Yu Ruwen and deliberately winked at her. Yu Ruwen no longer cared about these things, nodding with a distracted look in her eyes. Gu Junqing sat beside Yu Ruwen with a smile, while Qingtong sat across from them. Aunt Yu, you look beautiful in that outfit today. Gu Junqing whispered into Yu Ruwen's ear the moment Qingtong lowered her head to eat. He didn't notice him stealing a few looks at her partially covered, snow-white thighs. The fair skin, set off by the black sheer fabric, was movingly pale, and made him feel hot all over. Little jerk, where are you looking? I told you to be careful, and not let Qingtong notice. Yu Ruwen glanced at Qingtong, who seemed not to notice anything while eating, and shot a white glare at Gu Junqing before whispering quickly. She was not some teenager, after all. However, while there was less shyness in her heart, there was more self-satisfaction. At over 30 years old, possessing such a perfect and graceful figure was indeed something worth being happy about. Gu Junqing could naturally see that although Yu Ruwen reprimanded him on the surface, she was happy inside. Since she didn't seem to resist his sweet nothings, Gu Junqing felt it was time to push his luck. Wasn't that how boy-girl relationships went? You test the waters and eventually move forward. Gu Junqing took advantage of the lack of onlookers to slowly extend a wicked hand, resting it lightly on Yuruwen's leg. The moment Gu Junqing's hand touched Yuruwen's thigh, he was watching her profile and easily saw her whole body tremble instantly. Her cheeks turned uncontrollably red. Yuruwen turned her head and glared fiercely at Gu Junqing. She tried to pull his hand away, but she couldn't dislodge it. However, Qingtong was eating right in front of them, so she couldn't resist too vigorously for fear of being seen. Mother, the manager didn't agree to the contract approval and payment you ordered. Qingtong hesitated for a moment, lifted her head and said in a whisper. To groom Qingtong, Yuruwen specifically made her the head of her secretarial department, effectively her personal assistant. She also equipped Qingtong with several top-tier secretaries to help her complete various tasks. This treatment made Qingtong feel terrified and anxious, constantly striving to do every job well for Yuruwen. However, she couldn't even complete the tasks Yuruwen assigned, leading to deep guilt and self-reproach. Only after Gu Junqing arrived did she summon the courage to speak up. I know, this isn't your fault. Those people want to follow Uncle Yu in driving me out, so they are intentionally making things difficult for you. Don't blame yourself. Yuruwen comforted her upon seeing Qingtong's self-reproachful look. However, a sharp look appeared in her eyes. Now, even a small character dared to defy her. Did they really think she had spent all these years as the family head for nothing? She cast a side glance at Gu Junqing, giving him a look. They had made a deal that he would help her resolve matters regarding the Yu family. Aunt Yu, Qingtong, don't worry. The Yu family's issues will be resolved very soon. Gu Junqing understood Yuruwen's signal and said this with a light chuckle. Then I'll be waiting for your news. Once it is resolved, I will agree to your request. Yuruwen felt the hand slowly kneading her thigh and issued a reminder that sounded both like advice and a warning. Gu Junqing's mouth curled into an evil arc, and his hand slowly slid up her smooth thigh. Yuruwen's expression changed drastically, and she hurriedly grabbed Gu Junqing's hand to stop him from moving any higher. But a numbing sensation like an electric current kept stimulating Yuruwen, causing her whole body to tremble slightly. Mother, what is wrong? Do you feel unwell? Qingtong asked with a look of confusion. No, I am fine. Qingtong, are there any other issues you need to report? Yuruwen's charming face showed a flush as she hurriedly concealed her loss of composure, her voice trembling slightly. This bastard knew I wouldn't lose my composure in front of Qingtong, which is why he acted this way. Yuruwen cursed Gu Junqing in her heart, while suppressing the tremors in her voice, and talking slowly to Qingtong. Even Uncle Yu and his niece hadn't made her lose her composure, yet Gu Junqing managed to do it. Chapter 861. Yuruwen looked increasingly seductive, a rosy flush blooming and spreading across her skin. It started at her neck and crept up to her cheeks. Eventually, her entire body was stained with a light, crimson glow. In an instant, she exuded a mature and charming allure. Mom, are you really okay? You look a bit strange, and your face is so red. Qingtong looked at her mother's unusual expression, frowning with concern. Since just a moment ago, she had noticed Yuruwen's body trembling uncontrollably, and her voice and tone sounded odd. Her entire demeanor seemed almost intoxicated. You bastard. Qingtong was right in front of them, yet he dared to take advantage of her. Yuruwen took a deep breath, glared fiercely at Gu Junqing, and then turned to force a smile at Qingtong. I am really fine. I might just be suffering from too much internal heat. Please, continue with your work report. Gu Junqing acted as if he had not seen that glare at all. Instead, he looked back at her with eyes full of tenderness and contentment. Yes, due to the chaos abroad, the share prices of many of our Yu family companies have fallen significantly, and our trade volume has also dropped by half. Qingtong nodded after hearing Yuruwen's denial, and began to slowly report on the recent situation of the Yu group. She did not notice the undercurrents surging between her mother and Gu Junqing beneath the table at all. Don't worry about those things. The Yu group will not collapse so easily. The most important thing right now is to clear out internal threats and unite the entire Yu family. Yuruwen tried to ignore the shivers running through her body as she smiled and brushed off the topic. She had never experienced such an intense sensation, as if she were riding a roller coaster. Qingtong, look, Aunt Yu is sweating so much. She might have a fever. Hurry and pour her a glass of water. Gu Junqing said with a look of concern. Oh right. Qingtong had been listening carefully to Yuruwen's slightly hesitant instructions, but hearing Gu Junqing's words, she immediately got up to go to the kitchen to boil water. Watching Qingtong leave, Yuruwen finally let out a sigh of relief. Take it out. Yuruwen's eyes widened slightly. Gu Junqing had no intention of continuing to tease her, or else he would not have sent Qingtong away, so he pulled his hand back. Yuruwen then smoothed out her skirt, which had been ruffled by his large hand. Gu Junqing, stop messing around. If Qingtong sees this later, how am I supposed to face her? You know she likes you. If she sees what is happening between us, what will she think? Yuruwen's beautiful brows were furrowed, her eyes filled with a trace of anger. Yet, her gorgeous and charming face still retained a faint trace of passion. Her stern words were undermined by a lingering allure. It was clear that Yuruwen did not actually reject Gu Junqing's touch. She just did not want overly intimate contact while Qingtong was present. Don't worry, Aunt Yu. I am very careful. Qingtong won't notice. Come, let me kiss you again. Gu Junqing's mouth curled slightly as he teased her, before leaning in to claim her red, seductive lips without waiting for an answer. Yu Ruwen felt helpless. She should never have agreed to let this man in. He wanted to take advantage of her at every single moment. She pressed a finger gently against Gu Junqing's lips and glared at him slightly. The internal chaos in the Yu family. You haven't solved it yet. Wait until you resolve that before you come back. That is just a simple task. It won't be too late to get the ticket after boarding the train. Gu Junqing blinked, and feeling the soft finger on his lips, he felt a stir of emotion. He gripped Yu Ruwen's slender hand and actually took her delicate finger into his mouth. Are you disgusting? Yu Ruwen glared at him, pulling her finger away immediately. Gu Junqing licked his lips, seemingly savoring the feeling. I am not disgusting, but I do not know if you will feel disgusted in the future. Gu Junqing looked at her alluring lips with deep meaning, and said with a smile, Pa, I think you are just dreaming. Yu Ruwen was not a teenager. She understood what he meant. Just as she was about to scold him for being filthy, Qingtong walked out. Yu Ruwen had to bite her tongue. Mom, here is your water. Qingtong handed the warm water to her mother. Good, thank you, Qingtong. Yu Ruwen accepted the cup and took a few elegant sips. She was a woman who was elegant and seductive to the core. Even while drinking water, it felt as if she were sipping $1 million wine at a high-end banquet. Love really needs courage to face the rumors. Just then, Yu Ruwen's phone rang. Hearing the ringtone, Gu Junqing raised an eyebrow slightly. Was this a song about their relationship? He cast a meaningful glance at Yu Ruwen. Yu Ruwen acted as if she had not seen his gaze and answered the phone calmly, though she was internally mortified. This was a song she had heard last night, when she could not sleep, which fit her state of mind perfectly. She had impulsively set it as her ringtone, but now she felt like she might die of embarrassment. Hello, is this the family head? It is bad, the eldest uncle died at home last night. A panicked woman's voice came through. Yu Ruwen froze in place. Even after everything she had been through, hearing this news caused her to pause in disbelief. She wondered if her ears were playing tricks on her. Wasn't it the eldest uncle's birthday banquet yesterday? How could he be dead today? Don't panic, tell me again, what happened? She asked again, uncertain. She recognized the voice as a cousin from the same generation, someone on her side. The eldest uncle didn't get up this morning. The servants forced their way in after seeing no movement, and they found him dead in his bedroom. His body was already completely cold when they found him. Yu Ruwen's cousin said with a hint of terror. Is this information verified? Yu Ruwen asked, clearly shocked. Verified. I went to the scene myself after hearing the news. The villa has been sealed by the authorities. I asked people in the know, and it is said the suspect might be Yu Ling apparently. Yu Ling poisoned the eldest uncle's tea. The cousin whispered. Yu Ling was the eldest uncle's niece, and he doted on her greatly, even competing with Yu Ruwen for the position of family head for her sake. She did not believe Yu Ling had murdered him. She would rather believe Yu Ruwen had done it than Yu Ling. Naturally, she did not dare share this suspicion with Yu Ruwen. Chapter 862. Fine, I understand. Remember to notify the various uncles of the Yu family. If this matter is true, make sure you also handle the dissemination of the obituary and funeral arrangements. Yu Ruwen instructed her cousin in a deep voice. Yes, family head. Although the cousin was suspicious about whether the death of Uncle Yu was related to Yu Ruwen, she kept it to herself. After all, she really did not believe that Yu Ling would poison the uncle, who loved her so dearly for no reason. Following the principle that the person who benefits the most has the greatest suspicion, Yu Ruwen was undoubtedly the one who stood to gain the most. However, she knew that she and Yu Ruwen were on the same side, so she could not be bothered to look into it too much, and just followed Yu Ruwen's instructions. Does this have anything to do with you? After hanging up the phone, Yu Ruwen saw Qingtong and Gu Junqing both staring straight at her. She suppressed the turbulent emotions in her heart, and looked at Gu Junqing. Uncle Yu, who had been in perfectly good health yesterday, was gone today. It just so happened to be the day she brought Gu Junqing to meet him for the first time. Could the method Gu Junqing mentioned to solve the internal problems of her Yu family be to just kill off everyone who opposed her? What is it you referring to? I do not understand, Gu Junqing said with a blank face, acting like an ignorant child. It is nothing. Yu Ruwen looked at Gu Junqing deeply, seemingly unable to see through him. She had originally thought that Gu Junqing was just an ignorant rich kid who only knew how to chase women, but through their gradual interaction, she discovered his hidden intelligence. If Uncle Yu was really killed by Gu Junqing, Yu Ruwen would have to label him as unscrupulous and ruthless. However, she would not be displeased by that. She even felt a faint sense of satisfaction and appreciation. If Gu Junqing were merely someone relying on power, she would have no favorable impression of him at all. She just liked this kind of man, one who was capable and could conquer her. Qingtong, you can relax for these few days. It will become very busy in a while, so you need to be prepared. Yu Ruwen turned her head to look at Qingtong and sighed. The entire Yu family would be busy handling Uncle Yu's affairs these days, and many in the family might be in shock and grief. But after a while, in order to fight for the power vacuum left by Uncle Yu, the entire family would undergo a major reshuffle. That would be a more difficult time. However, Yu Ruwen was not worried, because her say within the Yu family was already significant, and she was sitting securely on the fishing platform amidst this struggle. I know. Qingtong had also heard some of the phone call just now, so she naturally knew what Yu Ruwen was talking about. Do not worry either. If we win, my authority in the Yu family will never be constrained again. Yu Ruwen comforted Qingtong, seeing her tense little face. Aunt Yu, it is not so easy to unite the scattered Yu family. The news of the death of an Uncle Yu who was at odds with you is not enough. Gu Junqing shook his head. Then what do you think should be done? Yu Ruwen frowned and looked at Gu Junqing. Internal unity often comes from external pressure. I can have people apply pressure on the Yu group from the outside, which will make it easier for you to discipline the rest of the Yu family. Gu Junqing chuckled and explained. Fine. Yu Ruwen knew what Gu Junqing meant, so she nodded and agreed. Then Aunt Yu, what about that thing we agreed on? A meaningful smile appeared on Gu Junqing's face. Brother Junqing, what did you agree on with Mom? Qingtong, who was on the side, looked over curiously, her clear, beautiful, and tender eyes fixed on Gu Junqing. Children should not worry about such things. Go upstairs and play. Yu Ruwen glared at Qingtong and tapped her on the head. Brother Junqing is not much older than me, and he knows. Qingtong knew that Yu Ruwen loved her, and since Gu Junqing was someone she was close to, she retorted in a very low voice, which was a rare occasion. However, under the suppression of Yu Ruwen's slight glare, her tiny resistance was quelled. Yu Ruwen watched Qingtong go upstairs before she breathed a sigh of relief and faced Gu Junqing. We will talk about that in a couple of days, as these few days are very busy. Although the Yu family's affairs had not completely ended, she knew that with Uncle Yu's death, and the subsequent pressure from the Gu family, the remaining forces of the Yu family would definitely not make a fuss about changing the head of the family again. It could be said that Gu Junqing had already fulfilled the agreement between them. Therefore, she also had to face a question, which was whether she should accept Gu Junqing as her young boyfriend. Aunt Yu is not thinking of reneging on the deal, right? Gu Junqing said with a suspicious look. Who wants to renege? Yu Ruwen shot Gu Junqing a glare with annoyance. The charming and mature posture made Gu Junqing feel a bit stirred up. However, are you really sure? What do you like about me? I am quite a bit older than you, enough to be your mother if I were any older. Yu Ruwen sighed, feeling puzzled. Chapter 863. I am quite a bit older than you. If I were any older, I could easily be your mother, so wouldn't that make us a laughingstock if word got out? Yu Ruwen said, sounding quite self-deprecating. Aunt Yu, do you have some sort of misunderstanding about yourself? Gu Junqing looked at her skin, which was meticulously cared for, her alluring eyes, and her mature, voluptuous figure, with a slightly puzzled expression. So, Aunt Yu actually thinks our age gap is too large. She feels embarrassed to be the older woman grazing on younger grass? Gu Junqing felt a spark in his heart, and continued affectionately. Setting aside the fact that your looks make you one of the most famous beauties in the capital, you are also the head of the Yu family. You are wealthy, fair-skinned, beautiful, and full of nobility. If any man managed to win you over, it would be a wonder if he didn't become the public enemy of every man in the capital. Furthermore, love knows no age. You and I are in mutual agreement, so why should we care about the eyes of outsiders? Who is in mutual agreement with you? Yu Ruwen pursed her lips. However, seeing Gu Junqing's seemingly sincere gaze, a faint blush appeared on her mature and charming face. She wondered, who was actually the older one here? Gu Junqing's sweet talk came one after another. It was a bit too much for her to handle at her age, and she felt a bit shy. Did I say something wrong? A smile touched Gu Junqing's face as he moved ambiguously closer to Yu Ruwen, the tip of his nose filled with the soft, delicate fragrance lingering on her body. He reached out a long arm, intending to pull her voluptuous, charming figure into his embrace. It could be said that Yu Ruwen kept her figure in absolutely perfect condition. Although she wasn't as slender as a young girl, she possessed more fleshiness and allure. Everything that should be slim was slim, and every curve was defined. Her texture could only be described as perfect. Yu Ruwen pursed her creamy, sexy red lips. She gently pressed a finger against Gu Junqing's chest, and said reservedly, the matter of the Yu family hasn't even begun to take shape. It is best if we maintain some distance for now. She was truly shocked when she learned at the banquet last night that Gu Junqing liked her. It felt as if she had suddenly learned that her daughter's classmate liked her. But the Yu family was too important to her. Her father and brother had entrusted it to her on their deathbeds, so she had to preserve the family's strength and help it grow. She was willing to give up everything for this goal. That was why she had made a deal with Gu Junqing last night. She would try to be with him, provided he could resolve the internal turmoil within the Yu family. But now, she was once again feeling hesitant and anxious. She did not know whether she should continue with Gu Junqing or not. However, there was no way a single finger could stop him, especially since she was still hesitant and hadn't truly rejected him. Eventually, her delicate body was pulled into a full embrace by Gu Junqing. Since you are not willing to agree to me so quickly, Aunt Yu, you cannot refuse my pursuit, right? Gu Junqing held her lightly, seemingly unconcerned about the hesitation on her face. Since Su Chen had been captured, and there were no other protagonists around her, he did not need to be so desperate for success. Furthermore, a woman as mature and wealthy as Yu Ruwen would not be as easy to win over as Qingtong. She had seen too many things of all shapes and sizes in this world. A 20-year-old girl might fall for a humorous, handsome boy, but after 30, women feel such boys are unreliable and prefer someone mature and steady. To put it bluntly, if you use the pickup lines and tricks meant for a 20-year-old on a 30-year-old woman, you will mostly likely meet with rejection. Women in their 30s cannot be deceived by a few sweet words. Therefore, Gu Junqing did not force the issue. Winning the heart is paramount, while winning the body is secondary. Of course, the two are complementary and neither can be dispensed with. Seeing this, the look in Yu Ruwen's eyes as she gazed at Gu Junqing became somewhat complex. She had originally thought he was just lusting after her, but now that she saw how accommodating he was, her favor and estimation of him rose significantly. Would you be at a disadvantage this way? Yu Ruwen pondered for a moment before speaking slowly. She had never been in a relationship before. Back when she was just starting to experience romantic feelings, she had already shouldered the heavy responsibilities of the Yu family. Later, she exhausted her efforts for the family's development and never had time to consider her own affairs. Therefore, she was somewhat unfamiliar with the intricacies of romance between men and women. She still used business logic to describe the relationship between them. Aunt Yu, matters of the heart cannot be described as being at a disadvantage or not. However, since you feel so guilty, I will collect a little interest. Gu Junqing chuckled with a meaningful look in his eyes. Interest? Yu Ruwen asked, appearing slightly puzzled. This. Gu Junqing finished, leaned down, and kissed Yu Ruwen's soft, red lips. Although it was not their first kiss, Yu Ruwen still felt shivers run through her entire body, and her mind went blank. In an instant, she felt her breath being stolen, and a searing heat washed over her. The investigation into Great Uncle Yu's death proceeded slowly. After all, he was a man of high position and power, yet he died inexplicably in his own home at the hands of his niece, Yu Ling. How could anyone believe such a fact? Many in the Yu family secretly believed that Yu Ruwen was the one behind it, having instigated Yu Ling to do it. This had mobilized all the veteran opposition members in the Yu family, who were searching everywhere for detectives and law enforcement officers to uncover dirt on Yu Ruwen. As long as they found evidence that she was responsible for murdering Great Uncle Yu, her downfall would be inevitable. Unfortunately, after autopsies and investigations by various detectives, the matter turned out to be surprisingly simple. It was so simple that it was almost idiotic. Great Uncle Yu was indeed poisoned by Yu Ling. No matter how hard the detectives tried to find other evidence, the result remained the same. The poison was bought by Yu Ling, and the tea was brewed by her personally, as attested to by the servants in the household. Chapter 864. Inside a villa in the capital, an old man in his 50s or 60s roared at the detective standing before him. He insisted that his brother had been murdered by that girl, Yu Ruwen. He demanded to know what he was paying the detective for. He refused to believe that Yu Ling could have harmed her own uncle, and he was convinced that Yu Ruwen was involved. He ordered the detective to keep digging. He told Detective He that he had better not disgrace his prestigious name. The old man calmed down after speaking, and with the help of his servants, he returned to his room. Detective He wore an expression of difficulty. While he was not widely known among ordinary people in the Xia Kingdom, he held a reputation as a master investigator within law enforcement circles. To him, the case seemed straightforward, as the method was simple poisoning without any attempt to hide the tracks. The problem was the motive, and the case did have some lingering questions. Even after consulting with several detectives abroad, the conclusion remained the same. They all agreed that Yu Ling had murdered her uncle. He found this incredibly puzzling, as murder required a motive, and Yu Ling clearly had no grudge against her uncle. Still unable to figure it out after much thought, Detective He decided to head to the prison. He intended to interrogate Yu Ling once more. After all, he had been paid a significant fee, and he had developed an interest in the case. He soon arrived at the prison. Yu Ling was wearing a prisoner's uniform, sitting on the prison bed with a haggard expression. Since she had not yet been confirmed as the murderer and due to her status, she was treated well, held in a single cell with luxurious meals. Yet her spirit was utterly shattered. She could not fathom how she had gone from a little princess just days ago to a prisoner today. The charge was that she had poisoned her own uncle. She asked how that could be possible, and why she would ever poison him. Yu Ling only had vague memories of the banquet that night. She only knew she had returned home after eating. She had no memory of what happened afterward. This was the reason many detectives found the case so difficult. Some even suspected that Yu Ling suffered from split personality disorder. They wondered if another persona had taken control to poison her uncle. She shouted at Detective He, demanding to know why he had returned. She told him that she had not killed her uncle, over and over again. Detective He remained unmoved. He adjusted his glasses and spoke calmly and seriously. He told her that all evidence pointed to her, and no signs of anyone else were found. Yu Ling looked as if she were going mad as she insisted that Yu Ruwen must have done it. She claimed that Yu Ruwen did it to secure her position as the head of the family. She said that as long as her uncle was alive, Yu Ruwen could not sit securely in that seat. She argued that only Yu Ruwen had a motive. She insisted they could just arrest her and use interrogation methods, and she would surely confess. Detective He told her that they would love to prove someone else killed her uncle. However, he noted that there was no evidence to support that, and she needed to recall what happened that night. He asked her how they were supposed to overturn the verdict otherwise. Yu Ling pulled at her hair in pain. She said she had no memory of the night. She only remembered leaving the banquet. Every time she tried to recall the events of that night, she suffered a splitting headache. Detective He noticed a gleam in her eyes as he asked about the banquet. He knew some details about the banquet, but they were nothing compared to the eyewitness account of someone who was there. Yu Ling said she did not have many impressions of the banquet itself. She remembered that Yu Ruwen had brought a very handsome man to the banquet. She assumed he was Yu Ruwen's boyfriend, and she had wanted to steal him away at the time. She said the man was just so handsome. Her eyes were confused for a moment, before they suddenly filled with obsession. She could not remember the details of the party, but perhaps Gu Junqing's face, with its charm beyond limits, was etched too deeply into her memory. She could not remember anything else, but she remembered his face. Detective He pondered the mention of the handsome man, a glimmer of deep thought in his eyes. he suddenly recalled what a foreign detective friend had told him. That friend had suggested that Yuling's condition looked like she had been hypnotized. He noted there were people in the world with the ability to hypnotize others to achieve their goals. Yu Ruwen was already the prime suspect in the criminal case, and now her boyfriend could not be excluded either. Detective, he felt he had discovered a blind spot. The matter was likely related to this man. He wondered if Yu Ruwen had found a master of hypnosis to manipulate Yuling into killing her uncle. He could not be certain, but he had a faint intuition. If Yuling was truly incapable of killing her uncle, then the hand behind it must be Yu Ruwen. Detective, he was excited and wanted to report this immediately. Solving such a high-profile case would do wonders for his reputation. After all, the victim held a high position. Upper-class people feared nothing more than dying without knowing why. This would help him break into the inner circles of the capital's elite. However, out of professional caution, he decided to investigate who this man was that the beautiful Yu Ruwen had brought to the party. He was only doing this for the money, and did not want any trouble. He asked his friend in law enforcement to look into Gu Junqing's identity. After his friend told him what he had found, Detective, he broke into a cold sweat. He discovered that there was no file on Gu Junqing at all. This could only mean that his file was classified as highly secret. Any information circulating on the market was merely superficial. Many details could not be found. Even so, the fact that Gu Junqing was the eldest young master of the Gu family terrified him. The Gu family was growing increasingly powerful, and was no longer limited to the region of Luodu. He had even heard that the Gu family intended to pressure the Yu family, a major clan in the capital, with an aggressive force that made no sense. People were confused as to why the Gu family and the Yu family, who had no connection to each other, would suddenly clash. After learning some inside information, Detective, he immediately stopped his investigation. He knew it would be rude to keep digging. He was just a small detective, and could not afford to get involved in the affairs of two such behemoths. Chapter 865. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. With Gu Junqing's subtle guidance, the case regarding Uncle Yu had quickly been put to rest. No one dared to investigate further, lest they lose their eyes in the process. Gu Junqing spent his time getting along famously with Yu Ruwen and her daughter. If she was naive about the world, he would show her its grandeur. If her heart was weary, he would take her for a ride on the carousel. Following this philosophy, he spent every day escorting Yu Ruwen and Qingtong out to play. Along the way, their affection for him grew by the day, especially for Yu Ruwen, who no longer resisted Gu Junqing's stealthy, intimate touches. Yu Ruwen was currently in the kitchen, preparing a meal. Having never done manual labor in her life, she had originally been completely unable to cook. However, ever since she began raising Qingtong by her side, she had resolved to handle the cooking herself. Coupled with the incident where Yuling poisoned Uncle Yu, she felt it safer to prepare the food with her own hands, regardless of whether she knew the full scope of what had happened. Aunt Yu, the business with the Yu family is mostly settled now. You must be feeling much more relaxed. So how about I take you and Qingtong to the amusement park today? Gu Junqing walked into the kitchen, smiling as he asked the graceful woman. In the past, Yu Ruwen had been cold, arrogant, and authoritative. She had shaken the entire commercial circle of the capital with her iron-fisted methods, making many powerful figures afraid to underestimate her stunning beauty. Yet now, she was willingly washing her hands to prepare a meal. Gu Junqing guessed that perhaps having a family to care for had changed her. Her aura had shifted from sharp and ruthless to elegant and quiet, radiating a moving charm. You are still a child. Why go to an amusement park? Yu Ruwen shook her head with a laugh. She was becoming increasingly relaxed in Gu Junqing's presence. In their private moments, she no longer put on the airs of an elder. She interacted with Gu Junqing entirely as a woman would, which showed just how effective his conquest had been over this period. This isn't about me. I want to take you and Qingtong out. Come on, what's wrong with taking our daughter out for some fun? Gu Junqing stood behind Yu Ruwen, skillfully wrapping his arms around her soft, full waist. He leaned his head against her shoulder, blowing gently against her translucent earlobe. You have the nerve to call her our daughter. Have you no shame at all? Yu Ruwen rolled her eyes at him. She didn't react to his ambiguous advances, nor was she angry, though she was speechless at his words. Since Qingtong is your daughter, that makes her mine too. Gu Junqing kissed her pearl-like earlobe, chuckling softly. I have never seen someone dating their own daughter. Yu Ruwen glared at him with exasperation. She isn't biologically related to me. And besides, I knew Qingtong as a little sister first. If we are talking about status, shouldn't you be calling Qingtong older sister? Gu Junqing blinked and said with a smile. You really are a big jerk. I knew you had designs on us, mother and daughter. Take your paws off me. Yu Ruwen had been scolding him, but she suddenly felt something and shrieked in protest. Gu Junqing's hand had slid from her waist, across her stomach, and was creeping toward her southern hemisphere. It is not like I have never touched you there before. Gu Junqing muttered under his breath. Say that again. Yu Ruwen brandished the kitchen knife with murderous intent. If I say it just because you tell me to, I would lose all my dignity. I refuse. Gu Junqing chuckled. Yu Ruwen twisted her beautiful body, trying to shake his hand off. Finding she could not, she rolled her eyes at him again. This guy tried to take advantage of her at every single opportunity. By now, most of her body had been explored by this jerk, and she had almost no secrets left from him. I need to cook, stop bothering me. What if Qingtong comes down and sees us? Yu Ruwen turned her head away, focusing on chopping the vegetables. Then you must promise me you will go to the amusement park with me later. Gu Junqing's hand continued to roam slowly over her. Just go with Qingtong. I will not be jealous. Why would I go to an amusement park at my age? People would laugh at me. Yu Ruwen said, feeling rather helpless. It is precisely because of your age that we should go, Gu Junqing thought to himself. Then I will keep bothering you. Gu Junqing was not discouraged, continuing to hug her tight waist. Yu Ruwen sighed helplessly, having no solution for the man clinging to her back. She could hardly hack at him with a kitchen knife, could she? So Yu Ruwen had no choice but to focus on her cooking. Gu Junqing, let go of me. At that moment, Yu Ruwen's red lips parted as a sweet, involuntary whimper escaped, followed by a flush of anger. The two of them began a fierce battle over whether Gu Junqing could keep his hand firmly in place. Mom, brother Junqing, what are you doing? Just as they were locked in their standoff, a pure, sweet voice came from around the corner of the kitchen. Qingtong had heard the noise and come over, full of curiosity. Gu Junqing and Yu Ruwen froze at the sound, and Gu Junqing silently withdrew his hand. Soon, a fresh and refined girl appeared at the kitchen doorway, staring at them with eyes as clear and bright as the moon. Nothing, I was just watching it you cook, trying to learn. Gu Junqing naturally retracted his hand, wearing a gentle smile, looking as refined as jade. It was as if he were not the man who had been molesting Yu Ruwen only seconds ago. What a great actor. Yu Ruwen looked at him with a trace of disdain and scoffed internally. Feeling the numbing sensation in her chest where he had just been kneading, she let out a quiet moan that she struggled to suppress. If she had never done this before, perhaps she would not be thinking about it. But ever since she met Gu Junqing, her body had become increasingly sensitive, and even a simple touch from him would make her skin tingle and flush. Mom, what is wrong? Qingtong asked, noticing the beads of sweat on Yu Ruwen's face and her flushed, beautiful cheeks. It is nothing, I was just pinched by this jerk of a crab. Let's see if I can't stew it for lunch. Yu Ruwen pointed at the large crab in the sink, her words carrying a double meaning. Comparing me to a crab? Gu Junqing laughed internally. Are you hurt? Do you want to ask the auntie to come in and cook instead? Qingtong asked, looking over with some concern upon hearing that Yu Ruwen had been pinched. I am fine, do not worry, a crab is not enough to defeat me. Yu Ruwen shook her head, feeling a bit guilty. She had only just started learning to cook recently, so she had no idea how to handle seafood. She had only bought the crab on a whim when she decided she wanted to learn a seafood dish. Oh, by the way, Qingtong, Aunt Yu was just asking me to invite you to the amusement park. Do you want to go? Gu Junqing smoothly took over the conversation. Of course. Qingtong's eyes lit up as she looked at Yu Ruwen. Looking at Qingtong's bright, clear eyes, Yu Ruwen closed her mouth before she could expose Gu Junqing's lie. All right then. Chapter 866. Yu Ruwen shot an indignant glance at Gu Junqing. He had actually used Qingtong to force her agreement to visit the amusement park. Though she wanted to refuse, the look of anticipation in Qingtong's eyes made it impossible to speak those words. In the end, she had no choice but to agree. Having grown up in an orphanage, Qingtong had never set foot in an amusement park. She had only seen them on television and, as a child, she had always envied those who could visit one. Now that she was older, she was overjoyed that both Gu Junqing and Yu Ruwen could accompany her. Both were lost in their own thoughts, failing to notice Gu Junqing covertly tucking a button from his chest away. With Qingtong's presence, Gu Junqing stopped harassing Yu Ruwen, and she quickly finished preparing the meal for the three of them. By the way, where has Sichen gone? I haven't seen him for a long time. Qingtong, has he contacted you? While the three were dining, Yu Ruwen asked with a frown. Perhaps because of her busy schedule with the Yu family and Gu Junqing's frequent visits, she had no time to consider other matters. She had completely forgotten about Sichen's existence. Only now, with the Yu family affairs mostly resolved, did she remember her adopted son. No. Qingtong lifted her delicate, porcelain-white face. A flash of confusion appeared in her eyes before she shook her head firmly. Yu Ruwen felt a secret sense of peculiarity. In the past, Sichen had been extremely attentive to her and her daughter. She had not expected him to be absent for several days. It seemed she had not seen him since the banquet. Feeling doubtful, Yu Ruwen picked up her phone and dialed Sichen's number. She only heard the automated message that the phone was powered off. Gu Junqing's expression did not change in the slightest. Nobody knew he was the one who had abducted Sichen. After the failed call, Yu Ruwen did not try again and put the matter out of her mind. She had raised Qingtong, Sichen, and other orphans in the orphanage to better control the Yu family. Now, under pressure from Gu Junqing, those who once opposed her had begun to serve her diligently. She was no longer desperate to replace the old guard in the group, and Sichen's usefulness had naturally faded. However, she still felt a sense of regret, given the significant resources invested in cultivating Sichen. Unbeknownst to her, Sichen was currently trapped in the basement of the Loida base, experiencing absolute despair. Sichen was secured by several heavy chains to an iron chair. He could not move his body at all, and only his eyes were under his control. His eyes were bloodshot and raw, and countless veins bulged across his body. He struggled incessantly against his restraints, his skin covered in bloody lacerations from the friction of the iron chains. Even if his physical pain were multiplied 10,000 times, it would not compare to the agony and despair in his heart. A screen sat before him, playing footage of Gu Junqing winning over Yu Ruwen. He watched helplessly as Gu Junqing gradually entered Yu Ruwen's heart. He saw Gu Junqing holding his foster mother and sister, embracing their delicate shoulders and kissing their lips. Yu Ruwen's attitude toward Gu Junqing had transformed from initial resistance and unease to current habit and coquetry. As for Qingtong, while she did not know it, Gu Junqing, Yu Ruwen, and even the tortured Su Chen understood that she had already fallen deeply for him. Although he only ever saw Gu Junqing's back, the duration of the kisses, and Yu Ruwen's resistance made it clear she no longer offered any defense against his embrace. When Gu Junqing kissed her forcibly, she would even respond in kind. "Ah, Gu Junqing, you animal, let them go. If you have the guts, kill me. Why are you torturing me? Why?" Su Chen roared hysterically, his eyes splitting with rage. He could not bear to watch his loved ones throw themselves into the arms of his greatest enemy. He would rather be killed outright. Regret, disgust, hatred, resentment, and chaos swirled within him. No matter how he struggled or raged, he remained trapped. He could only watch as Gu Junqing seduced his foster mother and sister step by step, leaving him paralyzed by infinite despair. "I cannot give up. I have my system, I still have a chance. Gu Junqing must be trying to make me lose the will to live. I will not let you succeed." Su Chen closed his eyes, chanting frantically in his heart. "By the way, where has Su Chen gone? I haven't seen him for a long time. Qingtong, has he contacted you?" Seeing Yu Ruwen ask about him in the video, Su Chen's eyes widened, and his desire to survive was rekindled. "I am here. I am here. I have been captured by Gu Junqing." Even knowing she could not hear him, Su Chen shouted uncontrollably. He hoped Yu Ruwen would notice his disappearance and report it to the authorities, so they could find and rescue him. What drove him to despair, however, was that after failing to reach him by phone, Yu Ruwen simply stopped looking, showing no concern for his whereabouts. A trickle of blood escaped the corner of Su Chen's mouth. The hope that had reignited died, and his heart ceased its frantic beating. He stared blankly as Gu Junqing toyed with the mother and daughter. He could not describe his current feelings. He had tried every escape method and consulted his system repeatedly. For unknown reasons, the system appeared broken, failing to respond to his frantic calls. He only knew that it remained in his mind. "Am I truly never going to escape?" Su Chen closed his eyes in despair, unable to bear watching Yu Ruwen being conquered by Gu Junqing. His foster mother, who was usually cold and dignified, now exuded the aura of a devoted wife in front of Gu Junqing. He knew this was the sign that she was falling for him completely, and he was powerless to stop it. Chapter 867. After finishing his meal, Gu Junqing elegantly wiped his mouth with a napkin. He then proceeded to properly secure the miniature camera on his body. He secretly recorded his interactions with Yu Ruwen to show Su Chen, but it was not because he had any strange kinks. It was to completely crush Su Chen's will to survive, and his firm resolve. This also helped Gu Junqing thoroughly harvest Su Chen like a leek until nothing was left. Gu Junqing had also edited these videos beforehand. It was not a live broadcast for Su Chen to watch in real time. Yu Ruwen and Qingtong were completely unaware of all this. The three of them then headed together to the largest amusement park in the capital, Happy Valley. Happy Valley covered an area of 560,000 square meters, equivalent to 80 football fields. It contained several zones, each featuring different amusement facilities. They looked at the scene crowded with people coming and going. Although Qingtong felt slightly uncomfortable, the two most important people in her life, Yu Ruwen and Gu Junqing, were by her side. She did not feel afraid, but rather was very happy and full of curiosity about everything around her. For the outing, Yu Ruwen had styled her soft, beautiful hair into a fresh and capable bun, revealing her slender, swan-like snow-white neck. She hid her usual sharp demeanor, appearing intellectual, gentle, and exuding an extraordinary, elegant temperament. She wore a dress that cinched at the waist, tapering from her smooth, rounded shoulders down to her soft, slender waist, highlighting her perfectly curvaceous and graceful figure. A pair of slender lower legs emerged from beneath her dress, wrapped in a layer of black stockings as thin as a cicada's wing. The curve of her calves looked as smooth and symmetrical as silk, while the snow-white skin beneath the black stockings exuded an extreme, hazy temptation. Despite being in her 30s, her body and skin were maintained as well as those of a woman in her 20s. Her hair was piled up high, and she possessed a natural, charming allure. Even when walking with Qingtong, they looked just like two sisters. Many fathers nearby, who had brought their children, cast their gazes over. Upon discovering a man accompanying two stunning beauties with distinct, excellent temperaments, they looked at Gu Junqing with envy, jealousy, and resentment. Meanwhile, many women who had come to the park alone became infatuated upon seeing the tall, handsome, and godlike Gu Junqing. However, when they saw the female companions he brought along, they hesitated, not daring to step forward. Qingtong was one thing, as many women subconsciously disregarded her due to her pure and naive appearance. Yu Ruwen was different, as her noble, elegant, and aloof temperament made people shrink back in inferiority. The three of them, standing at the center of the atmosphere, seemed unaware that they were just visiting an amusement park compared to Qingtong's excitement. Yu Ruwen was much calmer. Even though there were many interesting attractions around, her expression remained indifferent. After all, she was a woman of ant status, so how could she be like Qingtong and drag Gu Junqing around to play everywhere? Yu Ruwen's reserved and noble demeanor brought a smile to Gu Junqing's face. He could see that although Yu Ruwen appeared uninterested in the amusement park on the surface, in reality, he could see that she was actually quite happy inside. "Aunt Yu, how about we go play on the pirate ship?" Gu Junqing suggested. "No," Yu Ruwen shook her head, acting spoiled. Then how about the haunted house, or a murder mystery game? Gu Junqing asked tentatively. These activities were excellent places for the affection between a man and a woman to heat up, so naturally, Gu Junqing chose options that allowed for physical contact first. However, all of these were rejected by Yu Ruwen. As the dignified head of the Yu family, managing the Yu group with tens of thousands of employees under her, would she really play these things? If word got out, how would she face anyone? Then I have no choice but to unleash the ultimate move. Gu Junqing sighed with regret, then pointed to a facility in the distance. Let's go play that. Yu Ruwen followed Gu Junqing's finger, but when she saw many wooden horses circling and moving, she felt speechless. Do you think I'm the same age as Qingtong? Riding the carousel is even worse than playing the things you just mentioned. Yu Ruwen slapped Gu Junqing irritably. Gu Junqing saw that Qingtong nearby had her attention drawn by a ring toss game stall. He secretly wrapped his long arm around and encircled Yu Ruwen's slender, soft waist in public. Why wouldn't it be okay? Gu Junqing lowered his head to the side, his tone ambiguous and soft. Yu Ruwen panicked and tried to pull Gu Junqing's arm away. Are you crazy? Qingtong is right there, and there are so many people around. What if our relationship is discovered? Yu Ruwen said in a hasty, low voice. Our relationship is not something that cannot be seen in public, and Aunt Yu, haven't you seen the envious gazes of the people around us looking at me? Gu Junqing chuckled and replied in a low voice. Upon hearing this, Yu Ruwen also noticed her surroundings. Many men looked at Gu Junqing with envy, but there was no other strange implication. She had originally thought that at her age, being held by such a young man would attract strange looks from those around her. After all, in their circles, many wealthy women liked to keep young men as lovers. Seeing scenes of an old rich woman holding a young man on the street would often invite criticism from outsiders. However, what Yu Ruwen did not know was that, in the eyes of others, she looked at most only 4 or 5 years older than Gu Junqing. Older woman and younger man relationships were very normal. Aunt Yu, have a little more confidence. Haven't you noticed that you have become much younger since we started dating? Gu Junqing chuckled. Yes, I have actually become somewhat unconfident. Yu Ruwen shook her head with self-deprecating humor. One of the reasons she had been unwilling to fully accept Gu Junqing was her lack of confidence in herself, and the fact that Gu Junqing was simply too outstanding. Even with her noble status and flower-like beauty, she felt a slight lack of confidence when facing Gu Junqing. In terms of age, appearance, family background, temperament, character, and ability, Gu Junqing was almost perfect. Moreover, she knew that she was not the only woman Gu Junqing had. Although she did not know exactly how many women Gu Junqing had, one of them was named Chu Yuchen. She and Chu Yuchen were old rivals, and they knew each other very well. She appeared disdainful of this old rival on the surface, but deep down, she attached great importance to her. Chu Yuchen possessed beauty and status that rivaled hers, and on top of that, Chu Yuchen was much younger than her. Yet, even someone like her was still one of Gu Junqing's women. How could this not make Yu Ruwen think too much? If her relationship with Gu Junqing were exposed, the criticism from others would be a small matter. What she feared was that Gu Junqing was only craving her body, and would abandon her once he grew tired of it. The consequences she would suffer would be absolutely unbearable. Perhaps even the entire Yu family would be implicated. Gu Junqing had also guessed the thoughts in Yu Ruwen's heart. Perhaps this was a common trait of women of Yu Ruwen's age, gradually shifting from emotional to rational, starting to think about and weigh the pros and cons, and whether there was any possibility of a future with this man. Chapter 868. If Gu Junqing only coveted her body, she could simply give it to him and be done with it. However, Gu Junqing had started playing for real, which left Yu Ruwen overwhelmed. After countless underhanded schemes in the business world, Gu Junqing's genuine approach caught her off guard. This was precisely why Yu Ruwen felt so hesitant. Auntie Yu, since we are here, we should just enjoy ourselves. Don't overthink things for now, Gu Junqing whispered, leaning close to persuade her. Gu Junqing had expected Yu Ruwen to remain reserved, but to his surprise, she gave a slight nod. She had agreed to his suggestion. Fine, but you must promise not to do anything intimate in front of Qingtong, she murmured. Yu Ruwen shot a glance at the excited girl to ensure she wasn't paying attention before speaking. That goes without saying. Gu Junqing smiled as he agreed, though he paused for a moment of thought. Does that mean, Auntie Yu, that as long as Qingtong isn't watching, I can do whatever I want? Yu Ruwen simply glanced at him without a word, feigning calm as she walked ahead. Yet, her message was perfectly clear. Gu Junqing understood perfectly and followed her with interest, while Qingtong trailed behind them both. The carousel was a massive structure divided into 3 levels, with rows of wooden horses rotating in tandem, to the sound of romantic songs. It was not just for children. There were many parents with their kids, as well as couples lost in conversation. Because of this, the 3 of them did not draw much attention. Come on, Qingtong, go sit in the front, Gu Junqing said with a smile. Okay, Qingtong nodded obediently. Although she wanted to sit with Gu Junqing, she sensed he had something to discuss with her mother. She sat on a horse 2 positions ahead of them. When Gu Junqing took his seat on the carousel, his mood was complex. Had it not been to win over Yu Ruwen, he would never have imagined riding such a thing. He hadn't even told his subordinates, thankful that no one knew he was riding this childish attraction with Yu Ruwen and Qingtong. As the music swelled, the carousel began to turn slowly. Yu Ruwen sat on the horse beside him, her gaze contemplative and distant. Auntie Yu, I've heard that the carousel is the cruelest game in the world. What do you think? Gu Junqing asked with a light laugh, noticing her expression. A carousel is usually for children, who are the most innocent and pure. If a woman feels weary, it is because she has experienced the coldness of the world and has grown indifferent to human nature. If you take her back to the simplicity of childhood, she will become deeply obsessed with that sense of innocence. You must let her feel carefree happiness, convincing her that this is romance, or even love. We chase each other, yet we never touch, separated by the ends of the earth. Yu Ruwen's thoughts were interrupted as she sighed, looking at Gu Junqing. I have been wondering why you brought me here. Now I understand. You are trying to tell me that this carousel is like my pursuit of fame and fortune, always out of reach. You want me to let go of my obsessions, don't you? I just want your body. Gu Junqing blinked, muttering to himself. Bringing Yu Ruwen here was simply to see if it was possible to take a weary woman on a carousel ride. It also allowed her to get used to the rhythmic motion of riding a horse, so she wouldn't have to learn later. He hadn't expected this trick to work so well. Auntie Yu, that is exactly what I wanted to tell you. It seems you have gained some insight, Gu Junqing said, his face filled with satisfaction. It seems my past self was truly wrong. Yu Ruwen sighed. She had been willing to sacrifice everything for the prosperity of the Yu family, even offering herself to Gu Junqing when the family was in crisis. Of course, the fact that she didn't mind being with him played a part as well. After all, Gu Junqing's appearance satisfied every fantasy women had for men. Had it been anyone else, she might have refused. At the very least, she would not have been so non-resistant as she was with him. Yu Ruwen did not want to dwell on such hypothetical scenarios. After the ride, Yu Ruwen felt a sense of sublimation. Ruwen, if your father and brother saw you sacrificing everything for the family, they would not be happy in the afterlife, Gu Junqing said, his voice gentle and intimate. He took the liberty of elevating his own status. Otherwise, given that he called her Auntie Yu, he would have to call her father Uncle Yu. Yu Ruwen did not notice his shift in address, nodding softly after a long silence. It was time for her to have her own life, rather than consuming everything for the Yu family. She had already exhausted all her youth, passion, and heart's blood for them. If she did not change, she might grow old before she knew it. She looked at Gu Junqing's profile, her face flushing momentarily before she turned away, acting as if nothing happened. She recalled a line from a movie she had seen before. One day, you realize you have fallen for someone you despise, and that is the most lethal kind of love. She had previously thought the line was flawed, because how could someone love someone they hated? Yet, now she was beginning to understand. She had not liked Gu Junqing at the start. Despite his looks and family background, she had viewed him with prejudice. Her opinion of him was even worse than her adopted son, Su Chen. She had always felt he was just after King Tong's body. But through their interactions, she realized he was not the shallow person he appeared to be. Whether in capability or personality, he was full of mystery. He made people want to explore and understand everything about him. Auntie Yu, why are you daydreaming? Mom. As she was lost in thought, the carousel came to a stop. Gu Junqing and Qing Tong looked at her with smiles as she remained seated. Cough. Seeing everyone looking at her with curiosity, she coughed lightly in embarrassment and quickly got off. Why didn't you call me sooner? Hurry up and walk. A faint blush appeared on her delicate face as she grabbed Gu Junqing and Qing Tong, leading them away from the spot. Gu Junqing and Qing Tong exchanged a glance. They could see that Yu Ruwen was different than before, but neither could quite put their finger on exactly how. Chapter 869. Gu Junqing, Yu Ruwen, and Qing Tong were exploring various attractions at the amusement park. Yu Ruwen had abandoned her stern demeanor and was having a wonderful time with Qing Tong. Gu Junqing watched the scene with profound satisfaction. He felt his efforts to woo Yu Ruwen paled in comparison to her self-initiated progress. The change was significant. He muttered to himself that the netizens were right. If Yu Ruwen stopped pouring her focus into family development and invested it in her own love life, Gu Junqing could win her over with ease. It did not matter that she was over a decade his senior. Whether she was a heroine or a female supporting character with great luck, he could win her over even if she were 300 billion years older. After all, if she is 300 billion years older, Pandu is your brother. If she is 3 trillion years older, you can crush the 9 heavens and 10 lands with your bare hands. Second sister, I have no idea where that boy Gu Junqing went. I have not seen him in days, and he will not answer his phone. Just as Gu Junqing was walking with the others, he heard a familiar, melodious voice. He froze in his tracks, his body stiffening for a fleeting moment. He slowly turned his head to scan the vicinity. He spotted 2 dreamlike, stunning figures. They were his 5th sister, Chu Yuchen, and his 2nd sister, Ji Hanyan. Ji Hanyan had just returned to the capital, so Chu Yuchen had been accompanying her around the city. Meanwhile, his 6th sister, Mu Peining, and his 7th sister, Shi Yushan, were still avoiding Chu Yuchen. Mu Peining was in Luodu developing secret technologies for Gu Junqing, while Shi Yushan had not even returned home. According to many eyewitnesses and victims, the phantom thief of the capital had resurfaced once again. Gu Junqing knew instantly that the culprit was none other than Shi Yushan. It was fortunate that the amusement park was crowded, as the 2 women had not yet noticed his presence. If they saw him here with other women instead of them, things would truly become a catastrophe. After all, when he left to find Yu Ruwen, Chu Yuchen had asked if he had any plans for the day. He had been in such a rush to leave that he replied casually, and failed to ask about her schedule. He never expected to run into them at the amusement park. Second sister, do you think Gu Junqing is seeing someone else? He has been coming home late every day, and he occasionally smells of a woman's perfume that I think I recognize. Chu Yuchen wrinkled her delicate, upturned nose as she complained to her second sister. It is normal for a man to socialize outside, so do not overthink it. Our eldest sister is coming to the capital soon, and if he really is cheating, we can just have her break his legs. Ji Hanyan added comfortingly, as long as his third leg still functions, he will be fine. Chu Yuchen stared at Ji Hanyan in speechlessness. She did not know what to say. She had not realized her second sister was so ruthless. Their voices were low, and the area was bustling with noise, so no one else could hear them. If Gu Junqing's hearing had not been heightened by his cultivation, he would never have caught their conversation. His temple twitched as he heard her comment. "Aunt Yu, how about we go ride the Ferris wheel over there?" Gu Junqing suggested, pointing toward the towering structure in the distance. His pace quickened significantly as he spoke. He immediately veered away to ensure the distance between them, and the two sisters grew. "Whatever you say." Yu Ruwen gave him a strange look and nodded in agreement. She could not help but notice that Gu Junqing seemed tense and urgent. Could it be that he is planning to confess his feelings to me on the Ferris wheel? She felt a flutter of excitement. As an ant-level woman, she felt she needed to nurture Gu Junqing's rare, youthful shyness. She considerately agreed to his suggestion. The three of them arrived at the ticket office. The attendant looked at the incredibly handsome Gu Junqing and felt a wave of jealousy as he saw him with two stunning beauties. Usually, it was parents with children or couples. The trio clearly did not look like a family. He had never seen a man take two girlfriends on a Ferris wheel. "May I ask if all three of you are riding together?" the male attendant asked, subconsciously trying to delay them. "How about you take the next car, Qing Tong?" Yu Ruwen apologized to Qing Tong as she asked. She felt certain that Gu Junqing had something important to tell her, and it was not an appropriate situation for Qing Tong to be present. "I am such a terrible person for wanting to monopolize him, even knowing that my daughter loves to be with him." Yu Ruwen felt a surge of guilt in her heart. She did not really want to be like this, but she was unsure if Gu Junqing would approve of any other arrangement. Qing Tong's eyes showed clear disappointment. It is fine. Let us just go together." "I am in a hurry," Gu Junqing said, his tone faster than usual. The attendant was confused by his response. Why was he in such a hurry to ride a Ferris wheel? He wondered if the man was eager to get intimate with two beautiful women in the cabin. The attendant's jealousy intensified. He had worked this attraction for a long time and had seen many couples leave in disarray. To think this man could be with two beauties at once. "I hate rich and handsome men," the attendant thought. Even Yu Ruwen and Qing Tong were confused by his frantic pace. "He must really want to confess to me," she thought. Although she worried that having Qing Tong present would prevent any intimacy, she decided to just get on and deal with it later. "Passengers, please do not bring any flammable materials like fireworks," the attendant said, despite his jealousy. Gu Junqing and the two women entered one of the Ferris wheel cabins. "Second sister, let us go ride the Ferris wheel. It is over 100 meters high," a charming voice echoed from the waiting area just as their cabin began its ascent. Chapter 870. Chu Yuchen and Ji Hanyan walked gracefully toward the ticket booth. Chu Yuchen suddenly caught sight of a familiar-looking back ahead of her. "Ha!" She let out a soft exclamation. By the time she tried to get a better look, the figure had already stepped into a Ferris wheel cabin and closed the door. "What is it?" Ji Hanyan asked, puzzled to see Chu Yuchen staring intently at the Ferris wheel. "It is nothing. I must have been mistaken. I thought for a second that man was Gu Junqing." Chu Yuchen shook her head. "I think you might be love-struck. You have only been apart for a moment, and yet you see him everywhere?" Ji Hanyan teased. "Second sister." Chu Yuchen looked at Ji Hanyan with a mix of resentment and shyness. Her reputation among her sisters was already ruined, especially since the sounds from her time with Gu Junqing had been recorded. Now, hearing her second sister tease her about him was almost too much to bear. All right, I will stop teasing you," Ji Hanyan said with a smile. Her sisters were truly adorable. "Do both you beauties want to ride the Ferris wheel?" The male ticket seller, who had just been snubbed by Gu Junqing, tried to perk up when he saw the two beautiful women. "Yes." Chu Yuchen nodded, her expression cold. She maintained a cold and arrogant image in public, except when she was with her sisters. After all, she was the chairwoman of the Chanyu Company, and her net worth was among the highest in the world. "By the way, may I ask you something?" Chu Yuchen still felt unable to let it go, asking the ticket seller in a flat tone. The ticket seller was secretly pleased, wondering if she wanted his contact information. She possessed beauty and temperament rivaling the woman that rich young man had brought earlier. Perhaps his spring had finally arrived. He answered with restrained enthusiasm. "Of course you may. Did you happen to see what the man who just entered that cabin looked like?" Chu Yuchen pointed at the Ferris wheel that had already ascended one position, her brows furrowed in inquiry. The ticket seller froze for a moment, then nodded with a sense of defeat. "Was he very handsome?" Chu Yuchen continued to press. Ji Hanyan watched Chu Yuchen's inquisitive behavior with a sense of helplessness. Just moments ago, she had complained about being teased, but her current intensity betrayed her feelings more than any teasing could. Another woman blinded by a handsome face. "That guy was only a little more handsome than me." The ticket seller felt stifled with indignation. He was not handsome. He was big and tall, but his face was nothing to look at. The ticket seller did not want to see these two beauties fall victim to the same scoundrel, so he deliberately slandered Gu Junqing. "Then it is fine." Chu Yuchen calmed down immediately, a weight lifting from her chest. If she considered Gu Junqing to be unattractive, then there were very few men who could be considered good-looking. She instinctively ruled out the possibility that the man she saw was Gu Junqing. "Let us go, second sister. I have already bought the tickets." Chu Yuchen stopped paying attention to the seller and pulled Ji Hanyan toward the Ferris wheel. The ticket seller had no choice but to swallow his frustration. As the Ferris wheel rose slowly, Gu Junqing finally felt relieved. As long as he was not caught red-handed by Chu Yuchen and the others, it was not a major problem. Since arriving in the capital, he had not faced a Jura field crisis in a long time. He did not feel it was necessary for his women to meet one another, especially since Yuruwen and Chu Yuchen already harbored animosity. If they discovered he was dating several people at once, they would certainly come to blows. He felt he had put a great deal of effort into maintaining peace within his harem. "As expected of me, always so thoughtful," Gu Junqing muttered to himself. The observation cabin was a fully transparent sphere, spacious and comfortable, running smoothly. It was equipped with comfortable seats, audiovisual equipment, air conditioning, and an intercom system. Gu Junqing and Yuruwen sat on one side of the cabin, while Qingtong sat opposite them. It was then that Gu Junqing noticed Qingtong and Yuruwen looking at him with strange expressions. "Brother Junqing, what is the matter? You seemed in such a rush to get on." Qingtong's clear, limpid eyes held a trace of curiosity. "It is nothing. I was just impatient to ride the Ferris wheel, as I have not done it very often." Gu Junqing used this to brush off Qingtong's question. In any case, no matter how outrageous his claims were, Qingtong would choose to believe him. As he expected, Qingtong nodded understandingly and asked no more, turning her head to watch the scenery outside as they rose higher. Yuruwen pursed her lips. She was not a young girl like Qingtong, so she could not be so easily deceived by Gu Junqing. She always felt that there was something wrong with Gu Junqing. Could he really be thinking of something? But Qingtong is right here. Yuruwen felt conflicted. While Yuruwen was lost in thought, she failed to notice a hand stealthily wrapping around her slender waist. With a sudden tightening, Yuruwen fell into the arms of the man beside her. This made Yuruwen feel instantly nervous. She felt a glimmer of anger in her heart. She had kindly let Qingtong sit apart from them earlier, and now, even with Qingtong right in front of them, this scoundrel dared to take liberties with her. "Do you want to die? Qingtong is right in front of us," Yuruwen whispered urgently. Soft music played in the cabin, masking the sound of her voice. "Rest assured, Qingtong's attention is on the outside right now," Gu Junqing answered in a low voice. Yuruwen had been too guilty to look at Qingtong, but upon hearing this, she dared to glance up slightly. She saw that Qingtong was indeed watching the scenery outside, and only then did she relax. "If you do this again, do not even think about getting close to me." Yuruwen's long, cold, and charming eyes narrowed slightly as she spoke with a touch of shy annoyance. "I understand, and you, do not worry. I will not let Qingtong know about our affair." Gu Junqing chuckled softly and whispered. However, the hand around Yuruwen's waist began to act up. It snuck inside Yuruwen's clothing, and his palm made intimate contact with her smooth, delicate skin. Feeling the hot touch of his large hand on her waist, Yuruwen felt a series of slight shudders run through her entire body. She wanted to stop Gu Junqing's next move, but she felt completely powerless. She glared at Gu Junqing, but it carried no strength at all, appearing instead full of daze and allure. Fortunately, it was already late, and Gu Junqing had specially dimmed the lights in the cabin. Coupled with the careful and subtle nature of Gu Junqing's movements, Qingtong remained completely unaware of what was happening between her mother and brother Junqing right across from her. Chapter 871. Yuruwen's cheeks flushed with a deep crimson. She parted her red lips, exhaling a sweet, melodic hum. For some time now, Gu Junqing had been taking liberties with her, though he usually avoided doing so in front of Qingtong. Now, being teased right in front of her own daughter made her feel like a shameless woman, unable to even fend off her daughter's man. Gu Junqing whispered into Yuruwen's ear, chuckling softly. "Aunt Yu, don't make a sound. It wouldn't be good if Qingtong heard us." On the surface, Gu Junqing and Yuruwen sat upright, perhaps just a bit closer than usual, and looking somewhat intimate. Privately, however, Gu Junqing's large hand was already wandering over Yuruwen's fair, voluptuous body, kneading her figure wantonly. The porcelain-like texture of her skin drew an internal compliment from Gu Junqing. It was a testament to how perfectly Yuruwen maintained herself that her skin remained so delicate and smooth at her age. Gu Junqing knew better than to go too far, however. Qingtong was sitting right there, and Yuruwen would never agree to anything excessive. The Ferris wheel stood over 100 meters tall, and a full rotation typically took half an hour. There was plenty of time, and Gu Junqing had no intention of settling for just a few casual touches. This was a perfect opportunity to get closer to Yuruwen. He had originally planned to be alone with Yuruwen on the Ferris wheel, and make up for Qingtong's absence later, as the two women required a hierarchy in his plans. Winning over Qingtong was easy, but winning over Yuruwen was difficult. In the end, Chu Yuchen and Ji Hanyan had arrived too quickly, leaving him no choice but to bring both mother and daughter onto the Ferris wheel. This had left Yuruwen somewhat restrained. Gu Junqing suddenly pulled his hand back. Yuruwen was stunned by his move, feeling a sense of relief, yet also an inexplicable loss and emptiness. "Qingtong." Gu Junqing called out her name with a smile. Qingtong, who had been admiring the view from the high altitude, immediately turned around. As soon as she locked eyes with Gu Junqing, her gaze drifted into a hazy trance. She felt as though his eyes were a strange vortex, a bottomless pit that could capture her very soul, and pull her entirely inside. Sleep now, sleep. A bizarre suggestion entered King Tong's mind, making it impossible for her to keep her eyelids from fluttering. Before long, she closed her eyes, which were usually as clear as a mountain stream. Gu Junqing breathed a sigh of relief after seeing Qing Tong drift off to sleep. He felt his mental energy drain and shook his head helplessly. The mental energy he used to hypnotize Qing Tong was more than what he would have needed to hypnotize 10 ordinary adult men. This was only effective because Qing Tong trusted him completely and regarded him as her closest person. It was as if the protagonist's immense fortune inherently bestowed her with mental resistance. Qing Tong, what's wrong? Yu Ruwen asked with concern, reaching forward to shake King Tong's body. She hadn't noticed the interaction between Qing Tong and Gu Junqing just moments ago. Such hypnosis was extremely subtle. Unless one was a high-level psychokinetic master or a cultivator like Gu Junqing, it would be impossible to detect. Aunt Yu, don't worry. It looks like Qing Tong just got tired from playing and fell asleep, so there is no need to worry. Gu Junqing wrapped his arm around Yu Ruwen's shoulder and offered an explanation. She must have worn herself out. Yu Ruwen gently leaned Qing Tong against the armrest of the Ferris wheel seat. Fortunately, the Ferris wheel moved slowly and steadily, so there was no risk of her bumping her head or sleeping uncomfortably. Aunt Yu, shouldn't we talk about our business now? Gu Junqing's voice was gentle yet dangerous. Yu Ruwen turned her head abruptly and finally noticed the burning intensity in Gu Junqing's eyes. This threw her into a panic. While Qing Tong was still awake, Gu Junqing hadn't dared to be wanton, only teasing her in secret. Now that Qing Tong was asleep, she was. You broke our agreement just now, and I am already very angry. Besides, we are out in public, so don't you dare go too far. Yu Ruwen furrowed her delicate brows, pretending to be composed. Don't worry, Aunt Yu. Qing Tong is asleep and cannot hear what we are doing. Besides, this cabin is fully enclosed. As long as we are careful, no one will know what we do in here. Gu Junqing wrapped his arm around her fragrant shoulders and began to coax her. No. Gu Junqing, what on earth is going on in your head? We are out in public, not at home. Who do you take me for? Yu Ruwen was flustered and annoyed, never having encountered such a situation before, even though she was much older than him. Aunt Yu, I just wanted you to give me a kiss. What are you talking about? Gu Junqing looked aggrieved, his expression dimming. Just a kiss. I thought you. Yu Ruwen paused, suddenly enlightened. What did you think, Aunt Yu? Gu Junqing blinked his eyes, looking as innocent as a child. It's nothing. Yu Ruwen blushed for a moment, then immediately regained her composure, speaking with some unnaturalness. If it's just a kiss, then that is acceptable. That is good, that is good. A smile immediately bloomed on Gu Junqing's face. Chapter 872. Down in the cabin below Gu Junqing's Ferris wheel car, Chu Yuchen spoke with a melancholic, murmured tone. Second sister, do you think the 7 of us sisters will ever have the chance to live together again? Aren't we together right now? Ji Hanyan replied, offering a comforting smile. But someday, the sisters will meet people they love and want to marry. Once we're married, we won't be as free as we are now. A rare look of worry crossed Chu Yuchen's delicate, usually serene face. All good things must come to an end, you know. Do you still want your big sisters to feed you like when we were little? Ji Hanyan looked at her 5th sister with eyes that seemed to see through everything, offering a smile that held a hidden meaning. Second sister, stop laughing. Chu Yuchen feigned anger. All right, I'll stop. You're such a successful CEO, yet you still act like a child. Ji Hanyan curled her lips, her eyes, usually as calm as a lake, filled with tenderness. So what would you like to do? Ji Hanyan asked softly. Chu Yuchen hesitated for a moment before probing. Second sister, do you remember the husband Master predicted for the 7 of us? Of course I remember. Master said the 7 of us would share a husband in the future, Ji Hanyan replied. So, second sister, we could just find the same man. Then we sisters would never have to be separated. Chu Yuchen blinked, seemingly feeling quite clever. Ji Hanyan let out a giggle and looked at Chu Yuchen with a helpless expression. Did you learn this cute and naive act from Yuchen, thinking you could fool me? Ahem, so you saw right through me. Chu Yuchen felt a flush of embarrassment for her attempt at being cute. Outside, she was a cold and frosty CEO, but in front of her sister, she lacked any of that overbearing aura. The 7 of them had survived together in an orphanage since childhood, creating a bond others could never understand. They say an eldest sister is like a mother, and for the sisters, both the first and second sisters had always filled those motherly and sisterly roles. Thus, Chu Yuchen's shyness only lasted a moment before she brushed it off. What was wrong with acting cute and spoiled in front of her own sister? But second sister, what do you think of my suggestion? So, the whole reason you insisted on taking me out today was just for this, wasn't it? Ji Hanyan glanced at her 5th sister. You really are clever, second sister. What kind of love potion did Gu Junqing feed you to make you try to set your own sister up like this? Ji Hanyan lightly tapped Chu Yuchen's head, annoyed. She had been wondering why Chu Yuchen was being so attentive, insisting on taking her out to wander around the capital. As for why it was Gu Junqing, given their relationship, it wasn't hard to guess who the man in question was. I'm not setting you up, Chu Yuchen muttered. Leaving aside whether Master's fortune-telling is accurate, even if it is, I would need to give my willing consent. Besides, the man destined for all 7 of us might not even be Gu Junqing. Ji Hanyan explained calmly, her eyes gleaming with wisdom. But the 6th sister, the 7th sister, and I have already given ourselves to him. If it's not him, who else could the destined man be? Chu Yuchen mumbled, her voice trailing off, making it hard for Ji Hanyan to hear clearly. While Ji Hanyan suspected that Shi Yushin and Mu Peining had some sort of relationship with Gu Junqing, she couldn't be certain. Unless she caught them in the act, she found it hard to believe any man could be outstanding enough to attract all her beautiful, brilliant sisters at once. What did you say? Ji Hanyan asked, puzzled by the incoherent mumbling. Nothing, it's nothing. Chu Yuchen shook her head, her eyes flickering. All right, stop thinking about it. We're here to have fun today, not to obsess over men. You're practically acting like a matchmaker now. Ji Hanyan leaned back comfortably against the soft seat, gazing outside as she issued a leisurely warning. Although Gu Junqing had saved her and the plane full of passengers, she certainly felt favorably toward him. However, she wasn't like some women who would offer themselves to a handsome savior, or promise to serve as a beast of burden in the next life to an ugly one. No matter how handsome Gu Junqing was, she wanted to investigate him further. Chu Yuchen was still unwilling to give up, her hands reaching out to grab Ji Hanyan's arm to continue, when Ji Hanyan suddenly interrupted her, secretly pointing toward the cabin directly ahead. Look at that man's back. Does it look like Gu Junqing? She hadn't spent much time with him, so she couldn't confirm his identity based on his back alone. Since Chu Yuchen had already been intimate with him, she decided to ask for her opinion. As the Ferris wheel rose, their cabin gradually aligned with the one ahead, giving Ji Hanyan a clear view. See, second sister? I told you his back looked like Gu Junqing's. But it probably isn't him. The ticket seller just said he was ugly, after all. Chu Yuchen looked in the direction Ji Hanyan was pointing, and upon seeing the upper half of the figure in the front cabin, she spoke with a hint of hesitation. You believe whatever people tell you? Maybe that ticket seller was just jealous, because he was handsome, and called him ugly on purpose, Ji Hanyan said, sounding annoyed. Wait, look again. There seems to be a woman sitting next to him, Ji Hanyan said, suddenly surprised. The cabin wasn't transparent, and the man in front only revealed his head and half his shoulder. The two women were only suspicious and hadn't confirmed it was actually him. In their eyes, the man in front appeared to be saying something to the woman beside him before suddenly embracing her and kissing her. Seeing the two of them kissing, Chu Yuchen narrowed her star-like eyes, a cold light flashing within them. She also felt that the back definitely looked very much like Gu Junqing. If that man truly was Gu Junqing, the identity of the woman sitting next to him was worth considering. Could he be dating another woman behind our backs? Ji Hanyan pondered for a moment before speaking slowly. If Gu Junqing really dared to betray Chu Yuchen and mess around with women on the outside, she would have to consider whether to turn against him, her savior or not. What the? The next move by the man ahead made even the well-mannered Ji Hanyan want to scream a profanity. Chapter 873. Chu Yuchen and Ji Hanyan stared at the Ferris wheel car in front of them with parted lips. They were completely stunned. Initially, the man leaned over to the woman's ear, appearing to be persuading her of something. The woman looked extremely reluctant. Following the man's repeated requests, she appeared to hesitate. Eventually, she seemed to resign herself to fate. She bent down and opened her crimson lips. From their angle, Chu Yuchen and Ji Hanyan could not see exactly what followed. They were not fools, however, and naturally guessed what the two were doing inside the Ferris wheel. Although both women had experienced plenty of storms, witnessing such a scene in person was still quite awkward. I don't think that man is Gu Junqing anymore, Ji Hanyan muttered to herself as if relieved. Although I have not known him long, I believe he is a graceful man with an air of nobility. He would not do such things on a Ferris wheel. Chu Yuchen felt a bit hesitant. She had experienced intimate contact with Gu Junqing, and she understood him far better than Ji Hanyan did. Whether Gu Junqing was capable of such a thing did not even need to be considered. She did not even know how many shameful positions Gu Junqing had developed for her in bed. Therefore, she was skeptical about whether Gu Junqing's upbringing would prevent him from doing such things. Fifth sister, what do you think? Is it him? Ji Hanyan turned her head and looked at Chu Yuchen with concern. She only had a slight favorable impression of Gu Junqing at this point. After all, he had saved everyone on the plane, and was not greedy for merit, even giving the credit for saving the plane to her. It was the first time she had seen such a righteous young man. She was not opposed to her fifth sister dating him. If it were a man she did not know well, she would not allow her sister to live with him, even if she did not stop them from dating. Perhaps influenced by her and the eldest sister, the seven sisters lived more traditionally. They were not like women in modern society, who lived with men at the drop of a hat. They knew that when boyfriends and girlfriends who lived together broke up, it was the same as a divorce. They were extremely cautious when choosing boyfriends. If their master's fortune-telling about 7 phoenixes surrounding one true dragon was accurate, they might be looking for a boyfriend not just for themselves, but for their sisters as well. I am not sure, but it should not be him, Chu Yuchen said with a cough, sounding a little unconfident. She had just been praising what a good man Gu Junqing was to her second sister. If Gu Junqing were caught doing this with another woman now, it would not only cause her second sister's impression of him to plummet, but she would also lose face. She decided to strengthen her tone. Yes, I agree. It does not look like him. Ji Hanyan nodded and continued to study the back of the man in front. Time passed slowly. After the Ferris wheel reached its highest point, it began to descend slowly. The car where Chu Yuchen and Ji Hanyan sat also began to look down from a high position. They watched the car with the man, who looked so much like Gu Junqing with somewhat numb expressions. Their view was much wider this time. They could already see the woman's hair trembling continuously. Do not look, do not look. They chanted in their hearts. Gu Junqing looked down. A delicate, beautiful face was turned to one side. The hair that was originally pinned up had scattered and fallen, covering her flushed, stunning face. I did not expect Auntie Yu to not only be beautiful, but also have such strong learning ability. Gu Junqing smiled with a trace of satisfaction. At the beginning, Yu Ruwen was extremely awkward. Gu Junqing had to teach her step by step. Fortunately, given her age, she was practically a natural at this, and she quickly mastered the skill. Actually, Gu Junqing did not need to control the direction afterward. Yu Ruwen was already sucking quite skillfully. You little lecher, I knew you were up to no good. Yu Ruwen stood up and straightened her clothes at her chest, grinding her teeth in frustration. Auntie Yu, you promised me you would kiss me, Gu Junqing said, sounding somewhat innocent. But you did not tell me you wanted me to kiss you there. Yu Ruwen pouted with shy and charming eyes. She was clearly blaming Gu Junqing for his deception, but she looked extremely charming and full of style. Gu Junqing felt his heart heat up again. However, the Ferris wheel was clearly about to reach the bottom, so he did not have the nerve to ask Yu Ruwen to do anything else. Yu Ruwen was also feeling regretful. She had actually used her red lips to help a man. When Gu Junqing explained it just now, she had actually resisted in her heart. But under his coaxing, she had agreed out of nowhere. Time returned to 10 minutes ago. If it is just a kiss, that is not impossible. Yu Ruwen curled her lips. She had been sneak-kissed by Gu Junqing more than once. She did not expect him to be so delicate now. In fact, she had long been used to Gu Junqing's surprise attacks. Coupled with the threesome trip today, with Gu Junqing and Qingtong, she had gradually accepted Gu Junqing in her heart. Auntie Yu, I want you to help me. Gu Junqing leaned into Yu Ruwen's ear and whispered with a laugh. No, absolutely not. Yu Ruwen looked at Gu Junqing in shock, looking extremely resistant. But Auntie Yu, have you not agreed to be my girlfriend? Just a kiss, only a kiss. Gu Junqing continued to coax her. No, we are outside now, and Qingtong is sleeping right there. If she wakes up, how can I face anyone? Yu Ruwen's face was already hesitant. Don't worry, Qingtong is exhausted from playing. She will not wake up that fast. Besides, no one can see us here. Auntie Yu, do you not think it is more exciting here than at home? Gu Junqing had already pulled Yu Ruwen's graceful body into his arms, grabbing her slender hands that were trying to struggle. Exciting your head. Yu Ruwen's cheeks were flushed, and she glared at Gu Junqing. She was not a young girl like Qingtong. She naturally knew how much a man wanted to possess her. She had known since Gu Junqing confirmed their relationship that he wanted to take advantage of her. So she was half reluctant and half willing regarding Gu Junqing's advances, just putting on a show on the surface. Besides, if she really wanted to find a man in the future, she would definitely want one as excellent as Gu Junqing. That way, even if she was bullied, she would not be at a disadvantage. But Gu Junqing actually wanted her to do such a shameful thing on the Ferris wheel. It was too much. No, absolutely not. Yu Ruwen felt firm in her heart. Chapter 874. Aunt Yu, if you just crouch down, no one outside will see anything. If you promise me this, I won't harass you in front of Qingtong anymore. Gu Junqing continued to coax her. Scientific evidence suggests a man's intelligence peaks when he is desperate to bed a woman or have her serve him. At that moment, a surge of adrenaline hits his brain, accelerating his thoughts. During this time, 9 out of 10 things a man says are lies, and the last one is half true. In order to get the girl, a man will say anything. For example, he might say he will just rub it without going in, that he will go in but not move, or that he is wearing protection. Yu Ruwen felt a flicker of hesitation. She would have to give in eventually, so helping him now might net her some benefits. However, the setting was too shameful. It was outdoors, and Qingtong was sleeping right beside them. If Qingtong woke up and saw her doing that for Gu Junqing, it would be over. No, she refused his request, though her attitude was far more hesitant this time. I heard your Yu group is competing for a development zone investment project. They say it will be hugely beneficial to your growth over the next 5 years. Gu Junqing played his trump card with a mysterious tone. How do you know? Yu Ruwen looked at him, surprised. Because the investor behind it is me, Gu Junqing winked. So the reason the investment side has been making things difficult and rejecting our proposals is because you instructed them from behind the scenes. You were just waiting to threaten me today, right? Yu Ruwen's charming face shifted, her tone turning dangerous as she spoke with a smirk. Aunt Yu, what are you talking about? I don't understand. Gu Junqing feigned confusion. Humph. Yu Ruwen's chest rose and fell as she took a deep breath to calm down. Despicable, shameless, obscene. She cursed him in her heart. I already realized it while we were riding the carousel earlier. I want to live for myself, so I won't agree to anything that harms myself just because of the Yu family, she said coldly after calming down. Gu Junqing froze, wishing he could slap himself. Why did he have to take her on that carousel? He had been too clever for his own good. Humph. She let out a small hum of victory when she saw his expression change. She, the head of the Yu family, did not want to be led by the nose by him every time. A struggle flickered across her beautiful face, but it quickly vanished. She sighed. She stood up, checked that Qingtong was truly fast asleep, and stood before Gu Junqing. Gu Junqing was about to ask what she wanted to do, but she had already knelt in front of him. She felt the pleasant scent emanating from him, and felt a bit bewildered. She had initially felt nothing but dislike for him, even finding his aura repulsive. Now, however, it held a strange attraction, and she hungrily drank in his scent. She didn't know that this was caused by the conflict between the villain's luck and the heroine's luck. Heroines subconsciously feel repulsion toward villains. Compared to a male lead chasing a heroine a villain has to work many times harder. Otherwise, given Gu Junqing's charm, he would be poison to women. It wouldn't be so hard to pursue these gifted heroines. At this moment, Yu Ruwen was already deeply infatuated with him, so she no longer loathed his scent. She stopped wondering why she no longer hated it. Just thinking about what was coming made her breath hitch, her cheeks flushing red, and her eyes glossing over with moisture. She calmed her mind, not daring to look at him, and clumsily began to undo his belt. Gu Junqing looked at her with deep meaning. With his grasp of the human heart, how could he not know what she was thinking? She knew he had planned today out well, but the headstrong Yu Ruwen did not want to admit she had lost. As long as he showed a bit of weakness, she would take it as a way to step down. He was more than happy to let her feel like she had won. They both knew exactly what the other was thinking. They also knew things were about to become inappropriate for children. Finally, she slid his belt down. Feeling the scorching heat, a forbidden pleasure instantly coursed through her body. Her breathing grew heavy as a flush colored her cheeks. She started with clumsy, repetitive motions, then couldn't help but lean down and open her scarlet lips. After it was over, her face remained flushed. She didn't act like a young girl, instead keeping a straight face to maintain her dignity as an elder. Only this once, and never again. She wiped the corner of her mouth with a tissue without expression, pretending she was experienced and telling him not to overthink it. Even the wildest horse can be ridden once it has been broken. Gu Junqing grinned, knowing she didn't quite understand that principle. Just then, Qingtong opened her eyes lazily and stretched, her lithe, youthful figure on full display. Ever since Yu Ruwen brought her along, her lifestyle had improved significantly. This allowed her thin frame to start developing, with the first signs of womanhood beginning to show. "I'm sorry, Mom. Brother Junqing. I don't know why I fell asleep," Qingtong said apologetically. "It's fine." Yu Ruwen managed a tight smile. Only after feeling the bitter taste in her mouth did her expression drop, and she felt filled with regret. She had actually done something so improper in front of Qingtong. "It's all right. As long as you are happy, that is all that matters. I brought you out today to have fun." Gu Junqing was satisfied and smiled with triumph. This left the newly awakened, still dazed Qingtong feeling a flutter in her heart. Her delicate, innocent face turned red. Seeing this, Yu Ruwen began to grind her teeth in frustration, realizing she was the only one who had truly suffered. Chapter 875. Gu Junqing and Qingtong walked off the Ferris wheel, chatting happily. Only Yu Ruwen stepped out with a stern, silent face. "Mom, are you unhappy?" Qingtong asked tentatively. "Mom is just a little afraid of heights. I am fine." Yu Ruwen forced a reassuring smile. "I am sorry, Mom, it is my fault for wanting to ride the Ferris wheel." Qingtong's eyes clouded with a mist of tears as she spoke, full of self-reproach. "It is all right, it is all right." Yu Ruwen touched Qingtong's head affectionately. It was true what they said about daughters being so thoughtful. "Qingtong, do not worry. Some people just have their little phobias, like megalophobia or thalassophobia." Gu Junqing explained in a serious tone, shaking his head with a touch of emotion. "Ha!" Qingtong looked at him, confused. She thought they were talking about fear of heights. Yu Ruwen was so angry she laughed. She thought Gu Junqing was truly shameless, spouting nonsense about megalophobia. She wondered if he could stop driving the car in front of Qingtong. Looking at Qingtong's innocent eyes, did his conscience not hurt? "Qingtong, I am sorry. I am actually not afraid of heights, I just have a little needle phobia." Yu Ruwen offered a cold smile on her charming face. She paused deliberately, then spoke to Gu Junqing in the voice of a mature, commanding woman. "Are you even capable, you weakling?" Gu Junqing's smile froze. His dark, cold eyes revealed a trace of danger. "Aunt you really are getting old. Your eyesight and memory are failing, and I wonder who was just mumbling about not being able to swallow it." Gu Junqing laughed coldly and spoke faintly. Yu Ruwen flushed slightly, brushing her hair behind her ear to mask her embarrassment. They stared at each other like lightning, deadlocked, neither willing to lose. Only Qingtong looked back and forth, confused. She wondered what happened while she was sleeping. Why were her mother and brother Junqing acting so confrontational? Gu Junqing's expression suddenly changed as he noticed Chu Yuchen and Ji Hanyan getting off the Ferris wheel. He pretended to be on a phone call, walked aside, and quickly returned. "Aunt Yu, I will not waste my breath with you this time. I have things to do, so I will be going. Qingtong, I will come visit you again next time." Gu Junqing said goodbye to the mother and daughter with a smile, then turned and strode away. His back looked a bit flustered. Yu Ruwen smirked, a look of triumph appearing on her charming face. In her view, Gu Junqing must have felt he could not win the confrontation and fled in a panic. "Qingtong, we should get going too." Yu Ruwen patted Qingtong's head gently. "Okay." Qingtong nodded sensibly. Just as the two women were about to leave, a female voice stopped them. "Wait." Chu Yuchen and Ji Hanyan had rushed over to intercept the man whose back resembled Gu Junqing. After arriving, they found only Yu Ruwen and Qingtong, the man having disappeared. "Hold on." Chu Yuchen called out to stop them. The voice sounded so familiar. Yu Ruwen frowned, confused, as she turned back. When she saw who it was, her charming eyes narrowed slightly. "Yu Ruwen, it is you?" Chu Yuchen's mouth opened slightly in surprise. In the capital, Yu Ruwen was an extraordinary woman who ranked alongside her. She was a woman who had single-handedly propped up a massive family conglomerate. She never expected that the one performing oral service for that man in the Ferris wheel cabin would be this cold, arrogant, and beautiful family matriarch. Thinking of this, Chu Yuchen actually felt a sense of schadenfreude. After all, she and Yuruwen had a history. Even though she could not see what Yuruwen was doing for the man, she was not a fool. She knew exactly what Yuruwen had been demonstrating. She did not even care anymore if that man was Gu Junqing. President Chu, what wind blew you here today? Are you reminiscing about your childhood? Yuruwen was surprised for a moment, then spoke indifferently. Her voice was gentle and charming, like a bird. She finally understood why Gu Junqing had fled earlier. He had seen the main wife and was afraid of being caught in the act. Yuruwen knew the relationship between Gu Junqing and Chu Yuchen was not simple, and she suddenly understood. Chu Yuchen wanted to see Yuruwen make a fool of herself, but Yuruwen wanted the same for Chu Yuchen. After all, Gu Junqing was Chu Yuchen's man, yet he was now captivated by her own charm. Yuruwen curled her lips, looking calmly at the imposing Chu Yuchen. Should you not be the one reminiscing about your childhood? Matriarch, you are older than me, are you not? It has been nearly half a century since your childhood, right? Chu Yuchen covered her mouth and chuckled. She knew Yuruwen was only in her 30s, but she deliberately exaggerated to annoy her. Ji Hanyan did not know Yuruwen. However, she enjoyed watching her sister trade barbs with others. Watching Chu Yuchen with her head held high, full of fighting spirit like a gamecock, she felt surprised and amused. She rarely saw Chu Yuchen this competitive. She was happy to watch the banter without intervening. Qingtong was shy and pure, like fresh grass, radiating youthful vitality. She was clear and bright, like a gardenia just blooming on a branch. Yuruwen had hair like ink, skin whiter than snow, and charming eyes. She was dignified, elegant, and indescribably captivating. Chu Yuchen was stunning, like an exquisite flower. Her features were peerless, her figure graceful, and her voice like a chime in an empty valley. Ji Hanyan seemed to exist within a mist, elegant and quiet. With a slender waist, jade-like wrists, red lips, and charming almond-shaped eyes, she was eye-catching. These four women all had their own unique beauty, but there was no doubt about it. They were all stunning beauties of world-shaking appearance. Because they were lingering at the gate of the Ferris wheel, the surrounding foot traffic was heavy. It was rare to see one such beauty, let alone four at once. This caused many passersby to stop and stare. With a wife like that, what does it matter if the child is not biological? One passerby muttered to his companion. I am different. The child is biological, so what does it matter if the wife is not? His companion replied. Seeing the crowd growing, the four women knew they could not stay there. After agreeing to debate it another day, the two groups dispersed. Chapter 876. Yuruwen and Qingtong returned to their car. Mom, who were they? Qingtong sat obediently in the passenger seat, fastening her seatbelt, and asked curiously. She had accompanied Yuruwen to meet many powerful figures in the capital, but she had rarely seen anyone speak to her mother with such insolence. She also felt that Chu Yuchen and Ji Hanyan were stunning, barely inferior to Yuruwen herself. In Qingtong's heart, she had always regarded Yuruwen as the most beautiful woman in the world. It was easy to imagine just how beautiful those two must have been to rival her mother. I don't know about the other one, but I know the relationship between one of them and your brother Junqing is far from simple. Yuruwen spoke with a meaningful look. She knows brother Junqing too. Qingtong's eyes lit up upon hearing Gu Junqing's name, missing the hidden meaning in her mother's words. What a pity he left early. I didn't get to see him. Qingtong shook her head. Your brother Junqing wouldn't dare to see you. Yuruwen glanced at her naive daughter and sneered. All right, let's go home for now. We can talk about other things later. Seeing Qingtong still wanted to ask more, she said gently. Okay. Qingtong nodded obediently. A red sports car sped off down the street. Meanwhile, on the other side, Ji Hanyan found the slightly agitated Chu Yuchen amusing. What is it? Do you have a grudge against that woman? Not a grudge, I just don't like her. Chu Yuchen sneered, then suddenly felt regret. I forgot to mock her for doing that thing with a man on the Ferris wheel. I also didn't confirm if that man was actually Gu Junqing. We didn't have any real proof. Besides, given that woman's depth, she wouldn't necessarily admit or care. Ji Hanyan comforted her with a light laugh. Chu Yuchen could only nod in frustration. It is very easy for us to confirm if that man is Gu Junqing. We will call him first and ask what he is doing. Ji Hanyan squinted her eyes and said calmly, okay. Chu Yuchen nodded and dialed Gu Junqing's number. It took a while before the call was answered, and Gu Junqing's distinct, magnetic voice drifted through, feeling low and relaxed yet ethereal. Hello, Sister Yuchen. Why the sudden call? Are you missing me? Yes, I miss you. Where are you right now? Chu Yuchen glanced at Ji Hanyan and, receiving her signal, replied calmly. Miss me where exactly? Gu Junqing's voice suddenly turned sultry. Chu Yuchen choked, blushing as she stole a glance at Ji Hanyan. If they were alone, she might have continued the flirtatious banter, but with her second sister listening, it was mortifying. It felt similar to the time her sisters secretly recorded her intimacy with Gu Junqing. She felt an overwhelming sense of second-hand embarrassment. Cough, I'll stop listening. Go ahead and ask him where he is properly. Ji Hanyan looked away, signaled with her lips, and walked aside. She felt she had been too abrupt. Chu Yuchen and Gu Junqing were already like a married couple. Listening to their private conversation felt like crossing a line. Simply put, this was not something she should be hearing. Can you be serious for once? What are you thinking about all day? Chu Yuchen felt a surge of annoyance and scolded him. Sister Yuchen, you aren't usually like this. Did something happen today to make you so angry? Gu Junqing sounded concerned on the other end. If you had just died of social embarrassment in front of your sister, let's see how angry you'd be. Chu Yuchen thought resentfully. I don't have time for this. Where exactly are you right now? She took a deep breath and spoke quickly and sternly. What? Is Sister Chu checking up on me? I am at home. Gu Junqing sounded surprised. At home? Tell me, are you at the amusement park? Chu Yuchen sneered internally. Amusement park? Why would I go there? Gu Junqing sounded puzzled. Fine. If you are at home, remember to cook dinner quickly. My second sister and I will be back soon. If you can manage that, then this sister won't mind rewarding you. Chu Yuchen blushed and cleared her throat as she said this. She glanced at Ji Hanyan and breathed a sigh of relief when she noticed she wasn't paying attention. This reward naturally referred to bedroom matters. Ever since that night, Gu Junqing frequently pestered her for intimacy. He also introduced many new tricks that left her nervous and flustered, though some undeniably brought her unprecedented excitement. However, she could not accept everything, and some of the more shameful positions remained locked. That sounds great. It's just a meal, Gu Junqing replied with a light laugh. Remember, it must be ready before we get back. Chu Yuchen warned before hanging up and quickly walking over to Ji Hanyan. Well, where is he? Wait, don't tell me yet. If that man was really him, he likely spotted us and ran off. So, to cover his tracks, he probably claimed he was at home. Ji Hanyan, with her exquisite features, speculated. He did say he was at home. I told him we are going back now, and he needs to have dinner ready, or else we'll know he's lying. If that really was him, there is no way he can make it back in time to cook for us. Chu Yuchen nodded. Then let's leave immediately. I want to see if that brazen man was really him. Ji Hanyan pulled Chu Yuchen toward their car. Not far away, Gu Junqing watched them and sighed as he put down his phone. My luck today is truly terrible. They say boys who smile a lot don't have bad luck, right? Gu Junqing chuckled bitterly and shook his head. He never expected to run into Chu Yuchen and the others while pursuing Yuruwen. The capital is so vast, yet it feels as small as a village. Still, he should be in time. Chapter 878. Deep in the loaded dungeon, a filthy, disheveled man stared desperately at the large screen before him. He was Sichen, held captive by Gu Junqing. He radiated profound despair as he watched the scene of Yuruwen being conquered. No, Yuruwen, you cannot do this, you cannot do this. Sichen cried out in despair. Sense transmigrating, everything around him felt foreign, as he knew this was a world built from a novel he had read. He intended to play the fool to eat the tiger, relying on his perfect god-tier system to grow in the shadows. However, at school, he unexpectedly clashed with the original book's protagonist, Dao Tianyan, and his company collapsed. He sought cooperation with Gu Junqing, revealing everything he knew about the Azura Society. He assumed Gu Junqing was merely the villain of Dao Tianyan's story. He thought if Gu Junqing knew everything, they could at most maintain a balance with the Azura Society's Dao Tianyan. This would give him time to grow until he could contend with both. He never expected to invite a wolf into his house. Gu Junqing destroyed the forces behind the original protagonist in a short time. In the end, Gu Junqing turned on him without a second thought. Then there was Yuruwen, his beloved foster mother. In both the original body's memories and his own sense arriving, she was the only one who had treated him well. During his most helpless and depressed moments, Yuruwen encouraged him, helped him, and believed in him. Yet, in the short month since Gu Junqing captured him, she had become so intimate with him. If Yuruwen had been forced by Gu Junqing, he would only loathe Gu Junqing. He could even forgive the fact that she kissed another man. But what was he seeing now? He saw the expression in Yuruwen's eyes, while looking at Gu Junqing gradually change from vigilance and disgust to joy and brightness. At first, Yuruwen would even ask about his whereabouts. Now, she was completely immersed in the sweetness of a romantic relationship. Although they seemed to spar occasionally, Gu Junqing never suffered a loss. When Sichen saw Yuruwen bow her proud head, willing to serve Gu Junqing with her perfect red lips, he understood. His foster mother, the person he loved most, had fallen completely. The video ended the moment Yuruwen bowed her head. Sichen did not need to imagine what would happen next. He closed his eyes in agony, two trails of tears spilling from his dim, lusterless eyes. To him, watching his mother serve Gu Junqing so servilely was more painful than death. The screen had long since stopped, and his tears ceased as well. He wanted to cry, but could not produce another tear. He felt his heart die, shattered into pieces. On the other side, Gu Junqing was not living in such misery as Sichen. Through various operations, he finally made it home before Chu Yuchen and Ji Hanyan returned. Entering the spacious kitchen, he found his overworked secretary, Yaya, making dumplings. You finally returned. Yaya looked at Gu Junqing with resentment. She was such a servile secretary, not only working hard without complaint, upholding the principle that Gu Junqing had secretaries for tasks and for personal leisure. She was even responsible for helping Gu Junqing coax his other women, acting as his cover. She really had a hard life. You have worked hard. Gu Junqing stepped forward and patted Yaya on the shoulder comfortingly. Today was supposed to be my holiday. You have to make it up to me in a few days. Yaya still looked at Gu Junqing with resentment, looking just like a woman living in the deep palace. Fine, I will spend a few days with you when I have time later. Gu Junqing agreed readily. That is good. Let us go to an amusement park in a few days. They say the largest amusement park in the capital is quite interesting. Yaya put away her resentful look after hearing Gu Junqing's words, beginning to plan their trip. Gu Junqing was speechless upon hearing this. He had not told his subordinates his itinerary for today, so Yaya did not know he had just returned from there, and now she wanted him to go back again. However, he was tolerant of his women. After dismissing her with a few casual words, Yaya left Gu Junqing's villa, swaying her slender waist in satisfaction. Shortly after Yaya left, a red convertible carried Chu Yuchen and Ji Hanyan back to the villa. I am blocked to death. What should have been a half-hour drive dragged on for over an hour. Chu Yuchen complained while holding the arm of her second sister, Ji Hanyan. Let us go inside and see if Gu Junqing is home. If that man at the amusement park was indeed him, since we were stuck in traffic, he surely could not have escaped. Ji Hanyan narrowed her eyes. What if he had his subordinates make the food for him? Ji Hanyan suddenly voiced her suspicion. I will know immediately if he made it himself. He does not know this, he definitely is not prepared, so even if he asked others to help him cook, I can expose him. Chu Yuchen said triumphantly. That is right, how did I not think of that? You are both an old married couple, so the taste of the food he cooks is unmistakable. Ji Hanyan laughed upon seeing Chu Yuchen's proud expression. Second sister, Chu Yuchen felt helpless as Ji Hanyan continued to tease her. This made her even more determined to find a man for Ji Hanyan, to stop her from teasing her about Gu Junqing. The two sisters chatted and laughed as they returned home. They happened to run into Gu Junqing, who appeared to be making dumplings. Second sister, fifth sister, you are back. Gu Junqing held a dumpling wrapper, smiling as he spoke. Seeing Gu Junqing, who was usually handsome and unparalleled, holding a dumpling wrapper with flour on his face, a warmth surged through Chu Yuchen's heart. Gu Junqing had such a noble status as a young master, yet he was truly willing to do such a thing to prove himself. Regardless, his attitude was excellent. The anger Chu Yuchen originally held seemed to have been extinguished significantly. Ji Hanyan and Gu Junqing did not have as deep a relationship as Chu Yuchen, so her feelings were not as profound. She was focused solely on confirming whether the man who accompanied another woman to the amusement park and did that on the Ferris wheel was truly Gu Junqing. Yuchen, can you taste the flavor of the dumplings? Ji Hanyan pulled Chu Yuchen aside to whisper. I cannot tell. It seems like this is the first time Junqing has made dumplings, but look at how many he has made. He should not be lying. Chu Yuchen pointed to the several steamers filled with dumplings, hesitating before replying softly. The two sisters were whispering, failing to notice Gu Junqing looking at them with a strange expression. Chapter 879. I have a way to find out if the man on the Ferris wheel was him, but this method might involve sacrificing you. Ji Hanyan whispered into Chu Yuchen's ear. What method? Chu Yuchen raised an eyebrow, curious. After a man does that, there is usually a period of rest. I have heard that during this time, he has no desires. If you try it out, you will know if he was the one on the Ferris wheel. Ji Hanyan laughed softly. Second sister, that is a terrible idea. How could you set up your own sister like that? Chu Yuchen was speechless. Her second sister appeared steady and gentle, usually acting as the peacemaker, when the eldest sister scolded them. In reality, she was full of mischief. All right, second sister, it is not really a big deal. Men are just like that. Wives are not as good as concubines. Concubines are not as good as someone stolen. And something stolen is not as good as something yet to be stolen. Besides, we do not have any evidence. Chu Yuchen thought for a moment, wanting to gloss over the matter. She had been angry, as they were all beautiful, and Gu Junqing stepping out on them felt like an insult. However, knowing the woman was Yuruwen, she felt relieved. Even if she did not want to admit it, Yuruwen was an exceptionally talented woman with beauty that did not pale in comparison to their own. They lacked concrete evidence to prove the man was Gu Junqing. Seeing a wealthy young man like him willing to listen to her and cook for them made her desire to pursue the matter fade. I see. You do not actually care if he messes around with that woman named Yuruwen. Ji Hanyan glanced at her. You saw right through me, second sister. Chu Yuchen laughed softly. You sigh. Why am I, the eunuch, worried when the emperor is not? Ji Hanyan seemed helpless. Seeing that Chu Yuchen had no intention of pursuing it, her own desire to stir things up vanished. Come, come, let us eat. Ji Hanyan ignored her and sat opposite Gu Junqing to eat the dumplings he had made. Second sister, how is it? Are the dumplings I made this morning good? Gu Junqing's ears twitched as he felt a sense of relief. He had finally passed this hurdle. Chu Yuchen's favorability towards him was already high, so being caught would not be a major issue. They had already been intimate, so a little conflict could be resolved by coaxing. At worst, he would just have to satisfy Chu Yuchen completely until she was full. He was more concerned about Ji Hanyan's favor. Saving an entire plane had already pushed her favorability quite high. According to the system, it had reached around 50, viewing him as a confidant. If he had not handled this well, given her protective nature towards her sisters, her favorability could have plummeted to zero, or even become negative. He did not want the favor he had worked hard to gain to vanish into thin air. They are all right. I did not know you had this side to you. Ji Hanyan looked at the exquisitely wrapped dumpling skin in her bowl and tasted it, surprised. She had never seen a man who could make such delicious dumplings. She knew Gu Junqing came from an extraordinary background, one of the top wealthy heirs in the entire Xiao country. It was logical to assume he would not even step foot in a kitchen. Yes, delicious. I have traveled the world, and have not met many people who can cook better than you. Ji Hanyan praised. You flatter me, second sister. Gu Junqing smiled lightly. He had farmed so much from the protagonists that he had millions of villain points. The skills he exchanged from the system were countless. Whether it was culinary arts, music, calligraphy, or languages, he exchanged everything he could to at least the proficient level. He leveled up the important skills that protagonists often use to show off, like appraising or medicine, to master, grandmaster, or even god level. This ensured he would not be suppressed by any protagonist. The near-miss plane crash had further proven the value of these skills. Your culinary skills are at least at a world-class master level. You should cook for me more often in the future. Ji Hanyan tasted a few more bites, her expression one of pleasure. Chu Yuchen looked surprised as well. She knew her second sister had deep insights into food, and had a very picky palate. This meant Gu Junqing likely possessed true world-class master-level skills. She was not eating his cooking for the first time, but she had only ever thought it was good, not realizing he was this talented. Chu Yuchen quickly gave Gu Junqing a wink, signaling him to agree immediately. This was a chance to win Ji Hanyan's heart. If you want to win a man's heart, you must first win his stomach. This saying held true for women as well. Second sister, I do not often cook. However, if you are willing to offer some benefit, it is not impossible. Gu Junqing smiled, acting as if he had not seen Chu Yuchen's signal. He was not a desperate follower. A man cooking once or twice was enough, and he did not have that much time to spare. Benefit? My dear fifth brother-in-law, I have already accepted your status. What more do you want? Ji Hanyan raised her delicate eyebrows. I heard from Yuchen that you have traveled across many landscapes around the world. I would like for you to share your experiences and the customs of some of those countries. Gu Junqing said with a smile. Oh, you are interested in that too? Ji Hanyan finally grew interested and spoke with excitement. Naturally. But I have too much on my plate, and never have the time to go out and broaden my horizons. Gu Junqing looked regretful. It is fine. After we finish eating, come to my room. I can tell you all about it. Ji Hanyan was pleased to see that Gu Junqing did not seem to be lying and readily agreed, even offering for him to come to her room. She had a great passion for beautiful scenery, famous landmarks, and cultural environments. Seeing that Gu Junqing seemed interested, she was happy to share her experiences. I have to hand it to you. Watching Gu Junqing and Ji Hanyan chatting so enthusiastically, Chu Yuchen muttered to herself. Compared to Gu Junqing's methods for flirting with women, she was indeed still a bit young. Chapter 880. Cool moonlight, like flowing water, draped over the world like frost. It filtered through the windows, casting a gentle glow on the villa, blending with the interior lights to create a warm and tranquil atmosphere. Gu Junqing walked into Ji Hanyan's room, intending to discuss the wonders of the world with her. Since it was night and she was at home, Ji Hanyan was dressed casually. She wore a simple, loose white sweater that hugged her curvaceous figure. The sweater fell down to her thighs. Perhaps finding it cumbersome, she wore no pants underneath, leaving her slender, alabaster legs fully exposed. Even with Gu Junqing's sharp eyes, he could barely find a single pore on her skin. He couldn't help but admire her flawless, jade-like legs, a true masterpiece of nature. Ji Hanyan sat with her legs crossed, revealing a length of snow-white, tender skin. She had been reclining on the chaise lounge reading a book. When Gu Junqing entered, she fixed her clear, bright eyes on him, her long eyelashes fluttering slightly. Her fair skin was flushed with a faint pink hue, and her thin lips were as delicate and tempting as rose petals. She looked stunning, elegant, and noble. You're here. Ji Hanyan elegantly tucked her still damp hair behind her ear and smiled at Gu Junqing. I'm here. Gu Junqing nodded solemnly. Then come sit over here. Ji Hanyan patted the spot next to her on the sofa. Come sit. That might not be appropriate. Gu Junqing hesitated. All right, you're not a child anymore. Stop being shy. It's not like I'm going to eat you. Seeing Gu Junqing standing still, reluctant to move, Ji Hanyan rolled her eyes slightly. Ahem. Gu Junqing cleared his throat, pushing away the suggestive thoughts racing through his mind, and sat down properly beside Ji Hanyan. The faint, fresh scent from her recent bath still lingered in the air. Why are you acting so reserved? That's not like you, Ji Hanyan said with a chuckle. My second sister is as beautiful as a fairy. Being alone like this, I'm afraid I might lose control. Gu Junqing blinked, staring into her eyes with a suggestive look. Ji Hanyan was no longer an 18-year-old girl, so she didn't blush or shy away from such flirtatious jokes. Does that mean I have to wait a little longer? Ji Hanyan said calmly, turning the pages of her book. Wait for what? Gu Junqing asked, looking puzzled. Wait until you've finished venting your desires with Yuchen and entered your sage mode. Then, I can tell you about my travels, and you won't have any impure thoughts, right? Ji Hanyan laughed softly. That won't be necessary. Gu Junqing shook his head as if he had just realized something. Why? Is my fifth sister not attractive enough anymore? Ji Hanyan raised an eyebrow. It's not that. It's just that I'm afraid second sister would have to wait until tomorrow. Gu Junqing said confidently. Ji Hanyan burst into laughter. She finally understood why her sisters were all so fond of Gu Junqing. At first, she thought it was just because of his looks, as few women could resist a man with such a handsome, extraordinary appearance. However, after interacting with him in private, she truly began to understand him. He was genuinely interesting, and one could never feel bored in his company. Ding. Heroine Ji Hanyan's favorability toward the host has increased by 5, now at 55, more than friends, less than lovers. The host is rewarded with 2,000 villain points. Their conversation continued pleasantly. Ji Hanyan spoke slowly about her travels around the world, and Gu Junqing often asked questions. The atmosphere between them was warm, and their relationship grew much closer. They both gained a deep understanding of each other. Second sister, are you still chatting? It's time to sleep. At that moment, the door to Ji Hanyan's room was pushed open. Chu Yuchen walked in, wearing only a silk nightgown, her delicate face showing a hint of helplessness. The silk nightgown, styled as a dress, exposed her slender, fair neck and delicate, alluring shoulders. She stood tall and graceful, her figure perfectly proportioned. What is it? Can't I even borrow your man for a chat? How long has it been, and you're already here to take him away? Ji Hanyan glanced at Chu Yuchen, finding the situation amusing. How long? It's already 2 or 3 in the morning. Gu Junqing came over at 10, so you've been talking for 4 or 5 hours. Chu Yuchen pulled out her phone and pointed at the time, speaking loudly. It's almost 3. Ji Hanyan looked surprised. This was the first time she had ever had such an engaging conversation with a man, to the point of losing track of time. Even knowing it was late, she still felt like there was more to talk about. You shameless girl, can't you sleep at night without a man? Fine, fine. Take your man and go. Ji Hanyan glared at Chu Yuchen before waving her hand generously. We'll be going then, second sister. Gu Junqing stood up with a smile and returned to her room with Chu Yuchen. How was that? My timing was perfect, wasn't it? After they returned to their room, Chu Yuchen asked with a cunning expression. Sister Chu, your timing was indeed perfect. It's this feeling of wanting more that makes it so unforgettable. Gu Junqing nodded with a smile. In truth, ever since Ji Hanyan moved in, she had rarely interacted with him, perhaps to avoid suspicion. Today was the first time they had talked for so long. This was all planned by Gu Junqing and Chu Yuchen, ensuring they had some interaction to get to know each other. A mere life-saving act on a plane wouldn't be enough to fully win over Ji Hanyan. They had to interrupt the conversation at a critical moment, leaving things unsaid. By leaving her unsatisfied and wanting more, they were laying the groundwork for the future. Both Chu Yuchen and Gu Junqing were masters of human psychology, and this time, she had even used her skills on her own dear second sister. Chapter 881. After Gu Junqing and Chu Yuchen returned to their room, Ji Hanyan sat alone on the sofa. She held a book in her hands. Her gaze drifted, however, and she was clearly not focusing on the pages. On the surface, she rested her chin on her hand, her eyelashes fluttering like fans, as she gazed with bright, colorful eyes. She appeared to be reading with extreme concentration. In reality, her heart was filled with thoughts of the joyful conversation she had just shared with Gu Junqing. She also thought of the pleasant, refreshing scent of hormones clinging to him. Ji Hanyan closed the book, feeling a bit agitated. Perhaps it really is time to find a man. Ji Hanyan looked at the cold and empty room, murmuring to herself. She had traveled to countless places around the world and seen the customs of many countries and regions. Naturally, countless dignitaries and nobles had pursued her along the way. Some had even rented out entire buildings just to win her over. However, she had always been disdainful of such displays. Unexpectedly, after returning home and watching her younger sister and her brother-in-law, Gu Junqing, show off their affection every day, she suddenly felt the urge to find a man of her own. A look of helplessness appeared on Ji Hanyan's gorgeous face. Perhaps she could actually consider her fifth sister's words. Meanwhile, in another room in the same house, Gu Junqing and Chu Yuchen were not as lonely as Ji Hanyan. A series of sounds, sounding at times like pain, and at times like pleasure, drifted from the room. Listening carefully, the sounds were clearly coming from the bedroom. No, you cannot do that. This position is far too much. Chu Yuchen's voice was hurried and ambiguous. It seemed she was resisting one of Gu Junqing's movements. Little darling, you promised to reward me well today. Gu Junqing chuckled. His voice was slightly different than usual, exceptionally low and suppressed. He would call one sister, then another, and eventually, they all became his little darling. It was a standard maneuver for this man. Gu Junqing felt no psychological burden calling Chu Yuchen, who was significantly older than him, his little darling. Upon entering the bedroom, one could see Chu Yuchen sprawled on the bed, her clothes in disarray. Her fair, jade-like body appeared to be shaking violently. Chu Yuchen raised her head, revealing a snow-white, long neck. She looked like a swan with its wings pinned back. This position, where she could not see Gu Junqing, always left her feeling insecure. Furthermore, such a submissive posture was difficult for the proud CEO Chu to accept. However, she had promised Gu Junqing that if he cooked for her to prove he was truly home, she would grant him one request. She had not expected his requested reward to involve unlocking a new position. Yet, the intense stimulation, physical pleasure, and the taboo nature of it all began to assault Chu Yuchen's mind. Ultimately, under his persistence, she accepted Gu Junqing's demands. She allowed him to ride freely behind her. Time passed, and the violent swaying of the bed gradually ceased. The two shifted from their intense exchange to a warm embrace. Chu Yuchen lay quietly on Gu Junqing, panting. She felt weak in her limbs and her legs were soft, unable to fight any longer. You bastard, you only know how to torment me. Chu Yuchen poked Gu Junqing's chest in dissatisfaction. What do you mean by torment? Did my little darling not feel comfortable and happy just now? Gu Junqing half-hugged her shoulder, answering with a chuckle. The old Chu Yuchen would never have accepted that position. He had to admit that his recent training had been very effective. If Dao Tianyan knew the relationship between his fifth sister, whom he both respected and feared, and Gu Junqing, he would likely lose his mind. Who is a little darling? You really have no shame. Chu Yuchen's fair, jade-like face still held a blush from their recent intensity. She struck Gu Junqing in anger. We have been together for so long. What is there to be ashamed of? Gu Junqing blinked. Since when have we been together for so long? Tell me, how many women have you called darling? Chu Yuchen rolled her eyes slightly and sneered. Too many darlings to count, Gu Junqing muttered to himself. Of course, he would not dare say that out loud. You are the only one, Gu Junqing answered without blinking or hesitation, appearing entirely sincere. Chu Yuchen was almost amused by his gall. She had never seen such a shameless man. However, she did not intend to dwell on it. Ever since she accepted Gu Junqing, she had long decided to accept everything about him. She was not the type of woman to dwell on such things indefinitely. Chu Yuchen suddenly braced her hands on Gu Junqing's chest, her loose hair falling over his chest. However, it was you at the amusement park today, wasn't it? Chu Yuchen shifted the subject. She looked into Gu Junqing's eyes, her tone flat. Sister Chu, what are you talking about? Haven't I been at home making dumplings all day? Gu Junqing looked bewildered. It is fine to pretend with my second sister. Even if you turned to ash, I would recognize you. How could I possibly not recognize you? Chu Yuchen hummed coldly when she saw Gu Junqing quibbling. I was careless, I did not dodge that time. Gu Junqing felt his heart skip a beat upon hearing this. With his keen senses, he naturally knew of Chu Yuchen and Ji Hanyan's presence. Therefore, he had never shown any part of his front or side profile for them to discover. However, looking at Chu Yuchen, it was clear she was certain that man was him. If he continued to make up excuses, he would lose his dignity. Furthermore, seeing that Chu Yuchen had not told Ji Hanyan, he knew she did not want to make the matter public. Cough, how did you guess, Sister Chu? Gu Junqing blinked. In his moment of guilt, he did not dare use the little darling term again, lest Chu Yuchen truly explode. Humph, I was not sure it was you at first. But when I knew that woman was you, Ruin, I became certain that man was you. Because there are very few men in the entire capital who could make you, Ruin, do such things. Combined with your identical silhouette, I guessed it was you. Chu Yuchen did not care about Gu Junqing's form of address. She hummed coldly, stating her deduction in a calm tone. She did not let her position as the CEO of Chanyu go to waste. She had even been secretly covering for him with her second sister. Why didn't you expose me, Sister Chu? Gu Junqing asked, puzzled. Because I wanted you to sleep with you, Ruin. Chapter 882. Because I want you to go sleep with you, Ruin. Gu Junqing blinked, wondering if he had misheard. He had never encountered a heroine who encouraged him to sleep with another woman. Chu Yuchen did not blame him for deceiving her. She actually pushed him toward Ruin. This sparked a strange curiosity in him. Chu Yuchen was not an emotional woman. Even though she admired and liked Gu Junqing, her composure and personality would not allow her to act like a jealous wife catching a husband cheating. She had a certain respect for Ruin, despite their constant bickering. When she found out Gu Junqing had been intimate with Ruin, she was angry, but it was within an acceptable range. Truth be told, she never had high expectations for this dog of a man, Gu Junqing. You heard me right, Chu Yuchen said, glancing at him. Sister Chu, you don't love me anymore. You are actually pushing me onto another woman. Gu Junqing feigned grievance. He wanted to agree immediately, but he had to be sure this was not a trap. If she was just testing his attitude, he would be in trouble. Ha, as if you would not cheat if I did not push you. Chu Yuchen rolled her eyes at him. Gu Junqing gave a dry cough. I want you to sleep with her so you can torture her in bed and film it. Then, I can use it to crush her spirit later. She spoke with a look of excitement in her eyes. If you can train her to become your slave, even better. Gu Junqing looked at her in silence, wondering how he had not noticed that the fifth sister among the seven was even more twisted than he was. Sister Chu, I do not have the habit of filming adult movies. I am really not that kind of person, he said with a pained expression. He seemed to have forgotten that he had already filmed many videos while seducing Ruin. Then you can become that kind of person, she hummed. How about we film one together and try it out? Gu Junqing raised an eyebrow, seeing she was not letting it go. Get lost. I am not filming. If that got out, how would I show my face? She rolled her eyes and refused absolutely. After her sister had eavesdropped on their intimacy, she felt like she had died of embarrassment in front of her. If other sisters saw such a video, she would rather die. You are being a hypocrite. Gu Junqing chuckled. So are you going to film it or not? Chu Yuchen leaned on the mattress, her hair falling onto his face, staring intensely into his eyes from above. Gu Junqing felt a bit helpless. I can only take some intimate photos, but that kind of thing is out of the question. That is fine. Good boy. Her alluring eyes showed satisfaction. One soft, fair hand stroked his handsome face, while the other slithered down his abdomen like a snake. Since you are such a good boy, little brother, I will reward you. Let us see who has better skills, me or that bitchy Ruin. Her voice was dripping with seduction, her mature tone enchanting. She moved down along his body, disappearing under the covers. A look of pure comfort washed over Gu Junqing's face. Indeed, women are like water. If you make them boil, they will scald you. If you ignore them, they freeze into ice and crush you. If you add some sugar, they are sweet. Most importantly, if you leave them alone, they might grow algae. Gu Junqing naturally had no worries about the latter. Finally, after Chu Yuchen had her fill, the two fell asleep in each other's arms. Chapter 883. Luedu. Behind the Gu family's main residence, the winding mountain ridge rose tall and majestic. It stood against the night sky like a massive tomb. Hidden beneath the great mountain was an indescribably massive base. Under Gu Junqing's orders, the Gu family had spent tens of billions to build this colossal facility. They had hollowed out almost the entire mountain. They installed all the necessary facilities, including lighting, ventilation, waterproofing, and earthquake-proofing. Unfortunately, it remained unfinished due to a lack of time and manpower. It was still just the rudimentary skeleton of a base. Even so, its scale and concealment were beyond what an ordinary person could imagine. Deep inside the base, within a strictly guarded and high-security cage, a disheveled, expressionless man hung his head. His hair had grown long, obscuring his hollow, listless eyes. This was Su Chen, the protagonist who had been captured by Gu Junqing for days. It was not that Gu Junqing treated him poorly. Aside from stripping away his freedom, Gu Junqing had never ordered his subordinates to torture him. After all, physical pain might only serve as mental tempering for a protagonist. Only by taking away what they cared about could the minds of these children of luck truly collapse. Physical pain might only make a child of luck stronger. The reason Su Chen had become this way was that his spirit was on the verge of breaking. Watching the most important person in the world fall step by step into the hands of his enemy would break anyone's mind. That Su Chen had held on this long was a testament to his strong will. Yet, having been missing for so long, he received no attention from his only family member, Yu Ruwen. And there was the despair of calling out to his system every day, only to receive no answer. Su Chen's vitality continued to wither as the days of waiting dragged on. If Su Chen could see his own aura of luck, he would notice it dispersing at an alarming rate, as if being devoured. When Su Chen was first captured, his luck was still decent. That was why Gu Junqing had specifically ordered every measure to be taken to block any escape. Now that his luck had been siphoned off, Su Chen was allowed to move freely within his cell. Without luck, a protagonist was like a tiger without teeth. Just then, the television in Su Chen's cell suddenly flickered to life. His dull gaze reacted, and he looked over mechanically. He expected to see another video of Gu Junqing seducing his mother. Instead, a man with a face like jade and eyes as bright as stars appeared on the screen. A man whose beauty defied description. Teacher Su Chen, you don't seem to be in very good spirits lately. Gu Junqing wore a gentle, refined smile. Yet, this gentle, sunny smile was blindingly piercing in Su Chen's eyes. Only he knew just how evil and dark this seemingly sunny youth truly was. Gu Junqing, you finally showed up. You beast, I will make you die 1,000 times over. Su Chen's formerly listless eyes instantly turned vicious. He gripped both sides of the monitor, his eyes bloodshot with rage. He stared fixedly at Gu Junqing on the other end, his gaze like that of a man ready to tear him apart. His hatred for Gu Junqing ran deep. Not even all the waters of the world could wash away this bone-deep grudge. Teacher Su, it's not good to lose your temper like that. Gu Junqing kept that elegant smile on his face. He remained unmoved by Su Chen's curses. You are forbidden from getting near Yu Ruwen and Qingtong. If you dare to approach them again, I will cut you to pieces. Su Chen roared. All the anger he had pent up over the past few days was finally unleashed upon the culprit before him. Is that so? Now that you've been reduced to a prisoner, Teacher Su, do you still have such confidence that you can escape? Gu Junqing raised his eyebrows slightly and chuckled. I am a transmigrator with a system. I am the child of destiny. I am the protagonist. How could I not escape? You are nothing more than a stepping stone. How could you possibly understand the abilities of someone like me? Having been imprisoned for days and watching his loved ones be seduced, Su Chen's mental state had already spiraled into madness. He no longer cared about anything and blurted out his identity as a transmigrator. He hoped this would intimidate Gu Junqing and force him to immediately stop his lecherous behavior toward Yu Ruwen. Last time, Yu Ruwen had even been willing to do such debased things for Gu Junqing on the Ferris wheel. As for what would happen next, he didn't even dare to imagine. Just the thought of his stunning, alluring foster mother, Yu Ruwen, lying beneath Gu Junqing made him taste blood in his throat. Is that so? So you're still pinning your hopes on that system of yours, which has long since been blocked? A bizarre smile suddenly appeared on Gu Junqing's face. What are you saying? Su Chen had been waiting for Gu Junqing to ask what a system was. Hearing these words, he froze in astonishment. What am I saying? I'm saying you can stop thinking about your system. It was blocked by me a long time ago. Otherwise, why do you think you haven't been able to contact it? Gu Junqing explained calmly, looking to further break Su Chen's spirit. How do you know about the system? How could you possibly know about it? Su Chen looked at Gu Junqing in disbelief. This was completely beyond his comprehension. Wasn't Gu Junqing just a rich second-generation heir with some connections? Why would he know that Su Chen possessed a system? Moreover, he seemed to know the system intimately. Chapter 884. Su Chen was already mentally unstable, yet he was still shocked by Gu Junqing's unwavering composure. Gu Junqing actually knew about his greatest trump card. He had even used some unknown method to sever the connection between Su Chen and his system. No wonder Su Chen had tried countless ways to contact the system after being captured, only to fail. He could not even communicate with the system to escape this prison. Su Chen forced himself to calm down, but the anxiety in his heart made his whole body tremble uncontrollably. If Gu Junqing truly had no fear and possessed the means to restrict his system, perhaps there was no hope for escape. What, you are so curious about how I knew? Gu Junqing arched a brow and said nonchalantly, yes. Su Chen remained silent for a long time, then finally choked out a pained affirmative. He really wanted to know why Gu Junqing knew about the system's existence, as this was a system, after all. Even in the vast sea of novels from his previous life, the system was considered one of the strongest golden fingers. Logically speaking, having transmigrated here, and relying on his perfect god-tier tycoon system, he should have been thriving in this world. At the very least, in a city like this, he should have been able to live a life of luxury and romance. Yet, not only had his life been incredibly difficult, he now encountered a man who could name his system on sight. How could Su Chen not be terrified? Furthermore, he was now a prisoner. His beloved foster mother, Yu Ruwen, and his cherished sister, Qing Tong, were about to fall into the clutches of this villainous bastard, Gu Junqing. I will tell you if I feel like it, but I would lose face doing that, Gu Junqing said with an indifferent expression. I am already your prisoner, what else do you want from me? Let me die knowing the truth. Su Chen roared, his eyes bloodshot. How familiar, Gu Junqing muttered to himself. In the novels of his past life, the protagonist would demand to die knowing the truth, and the villain would spill everything, allowing the protagonist to escape or counterattack. That was why villains were said to die from talking too much. Get on your knees and beg me. Gu Junqing still maintained a gentle smile on his face. Am I going to tell you we are countrymen? Gu Junqing thought to himself. He was not a fool, so he would not do what Su Chen asked simply because Su Chen demanded it. Even if Su Chen had no possibility of escape, he would not say anything unnecessary. He had no habit of sharing his secrets with others. Gu Junqing, I will fuck your mother, you piece of shit. Su Chen's face became ferocious, and he cursed Gu Junqing wildly. However, his rage was entirely impotent. Gu Junqing looked at Su Chen with a touch of pity and shook his head. Fuck my mother? Gu Junqing repeated the words with a playful tone, enunciating them one by one. Tisk tisk tisk, I actually wanted to say those words to you too. But don't misunderstand, I never curse people, and those words certainly don't apply to me, Gu Junqing said with a smile. Hearing this, the rage that had climbed to the peak on Su Chen's face faltered. He grabbed both ends of the screen, shaking it frantically, and roared like a madman. Gu Junqing, I curse you to die a horrible death, you beast, you bastard. Get the hell away from Yu Ruwen and the others. Ding, the host has driven the protagonist Su Chen to madness. Plundered 500 luck points. Host villain luck plus 500. Ding, the host has completely altered Su Chen's destiny as a protagonist. Awarded 500 villain points. Seeing this notification, the corners of Gu Junqing's mouth curled up. His mission to fleece Su Chen one last time was almost complete. He could now rest easy and start raising the protagonist. The protagonist farm did not have many protagonists currently, so his title as farm manager felt a bit hollow. I am a bit rebellious by nature, so I might not be able to fulfill Teacher Sue's request. Since you want me to stay away from them, I intend to get even closer. In fact, negative distance sounds even better. Gu Junqing chuckled, maintaining a gentle facade while his tone remained ice cold. By the way, there is one last video coming up. This video might make you very excited, Teacher Sue. Gu Junqing then unilaterally ended the video call. Su Chen's heart sank. In the previous video, Yu Ruwen had seemed to serve Gu Junqing with her mouth. What could they have done this time? What did you do to Yu Ruwen? What did you do to my mother? Gu Junqing, come out. If you have the guts, come out and face me. Why are you doing those things to my mother? Su Chen roared in agony, pounding his fist against the TV screen. However, the screen remained pitch black. Su Chen slumped, holding the display as he slid to the floor, kneeling and sobbing with infinite regret. If he had known, he never should have used that strategy of driving the tiger to eat the wolf by making Gu Junqing fight Dao Tianyan. He never expected that not only would Dao Tianyan hunt him down, but he would also be captured here by Gu Junqing. Now, his journey was truly at an end. God, why are you doing this to me? Su Chen roared at the sky. After closing the video, Gu Junqing continued to monitor Su Chen through the prison surveillance cameras. He felt not a shred of softness after seeing Su Chen's miserable state. How could a human possibly understand the pain of a sheep or a leek? In his eyes, these protagonists were no different from leeks. As for Su Chen asking why God was treating him this way, the question was laughable. Without the favor of luck, how could he have so easily obtained the perfect God-tier tycoon system that ordinary people could never imagine? Chapter 885. After hearing that Gu Junqing had one last video, Su Chen felt his heart pounding in his chest. He felt a moment of extreme despair, followed by an attempt to console himself. The cell was built deep underground, so Su Chen could not see the sun outside. Because of this, he lost all sense of time, unable to tell how long he had been held captive. He could feel, however, that it had not been that long since his capture. It had been, at most, a few weeks or a month. He refused to believe that within such a short time, his noble and beautiful adoptive mother, Yu Ruwen, would have truly been intimate with Gu Junqing. She was the cold and proud matriarch of the business world in the capital. Even without his presence to prevent their contact, he could not believe that Yu Ruwen would be conquered by Gu Junqing in just over a month. He must be lying to me. He must be lying. Su Chen desperately tried to convince himself, yet as time passed, his bad premonition grew stronger. He became increasingly uneasy. Su Chen did not have to wait long before the monitor screen lit up again. The image shown was no longer the video call style from earlier, but a pre-recorded video. The video started by showing a massive room, seemingly a presidential suite in a luxury hotel. Based on the moonlight visible outside, it was clearly night. A beautiful woman wearing an expensive white evening gown soon appeared in the video. She possessed a natural allure that young women could not replicate. Her figure looked especially enchanting, revealing the unique charm of a mature woman, like a fully bloomed peony, stunning and brilliant. With a man and a woman appearing together in a hotel late at night, there was no need to guess what would happen next. Mother. Watching the woman in the recording, Su Chen's eyes turned red. His heart ached as he muttered to himself. This woman was his adoptive mother, Yu Ruwen. He had not seen her for a long time. She was one of the two only relatives he had after transmigrating. At this moment, Yu Ruwen's eyes were unfocused, and she gazed at the top of the camera with a spoiled, pouting expression, seemingly unaware of the lens. Chen knew that the man Yu Ruwen was looking at was Gu Junqing. He did not know why Gu Junqing wanted to torture him this way, but he sensed deep down that he could not allow himself to fall further. If his mentality continued to collapse like this, he would fall into a bottomless abyss. However, as Gu Junqing's grooming of Yu Ruwen escalated and their relationship progressed, he kept a smile on his face, while mentally calculating which position to use. Then go book another room. I need to sleep. Yu Ruwen's tone was sluggish, her thoughts slowed by alcohol. There are no more rooms in the hotel. If you kick me out, Aunt Yu, I will have no choice but to sleep on the street. Gu Junqing sighed. How can such a big hotel only have one room left? Business is so good. I should go open one myself. Yu Ruwen muttered quietly. Then just find somewhere here to sleep. She seemed a bit impatient. Thank you, Aunt Yu. Gu Junqing's eyes gleamed as he smiled. Watching Yu Ruwen, under Gu Junqing's coaxing, actually agree to his request to stay, Chen was filled with murderous rage. Gu Junqing, you beast, you bastard, you asshole. I curse you to die a horrible death. Chen roared at the video in anger. Chapter 886. When Yu Ruwen agreed to let Gu Junqing stay, even Gu Junqing himself was stunned. The situation had developed far too smoothly. He had originally prepared a set of lies to continue coaxing her after being rejected. Are women this easy to coax after getting drunk? Gu Junqing muttered to himself. If it were the sober Yu Ruwen, there is no way she would have believed Gu Junqing's nonsense about being afraid of the dark and not wanting to walk alone at night. Not even a child would believe that excuse. Wait, you can stay, but let us make an agreement first. You must not do those things to me. Gu Junqing had felt confident that tonight was already settled. However, the seemingly intoxicated Yu Ruwen appeared to sense some danger, eyeing Gu Junqing with a look of caution. Which things? Gu Junqing asked with a confused expression. Seeing his reaction, Yu Ruwen felt a mix of shame and annoyance. She pinched Gu Junqing's arm and snapped, "Are you still playing dumb? Oh, Aunt Yu, you have really misunderstood me. I am an upright and honorable person, and my integrity is well known. How could I possibly take advantage of you while you are drunk?" Gu Junqing cleared his throat and spoke with a righteous tone. Yu Ruwen was already drunk and her mind was unclear. After being coaxed by Gu Junqing, she quickly believed his words and let down her guard. That is good. I am going to take a shower, so find a place to sleep if you want. Yu Ruwen pulled Gu Junqing's arm away from her waist with her soft hands. She dragged her slightly swaying body into the hotel bathroom. The bathroom walls were made of electronically controlled dimming glass. In short, a remote control could be used to switch the glass from a frosted state to a transparent state. This suite was originally designed for the amusement of couples. After Yu Ruwen entered the bathroom, Gu Junqing suddenly revealed a mysterious smile and picked up the remote control by the bed. With a light press, he instantly turned the frosted glass transparent. When Yu Ruwen had just entered the bathroom, she was surprised to find that the glass was transparent. She could see the scene in the room through the glass, as well as Gu Junqing sitting on the sofa. Yu Ruwen was startled and quickly walked back out of the bathroom. Seeing this, Gu Junqing secretly pressed the button on the remote again. The transparent glass wall turned back into frosted glass, restoring it to a state where the inside of the bathroom could not be seen from the outside. Yu Ruwen, whose mind was still hazy, looked at the frosted glass wall in confusion. She walked around the wall and entered the bathroom again. Gu Junqing took the opportunity to press the remote once more, making the frosted glass transparent again. After entering the bathroom again, Yu Ruwen was surprised to discover that the glass was transparent when looking from the inside out, but nothing could be seen when looking from the bedroom into the bathroom. Yu Ruwen walked out of the bathroom again. She touched the glass wall in confusion, feeling a sense of novelty. Aunt Yu, what is wrong? Why do you keep walking in and out of the bathroom? Gu Junqing blinked and asked with a puzzled expression. It is nothing. Yu Ruwen waved her hand. Seeing that the bathroom scene could not be seen from outside, she sighed in relief and walked into the bathroom once more. Watching Gu Junqing walk around the room, Yu Ruwen still felt embarrassed about taking off her clothes. She felt as if she were bathing completely naked in front of Gu Junqing, which made her feel awkward. However, she could not tolerate the smell of alcohol on her body. Eventually, she slowly began to remove her dress. The silky fabric slipped off, revealing her snow-white, rounded shoulders. No, he is lying to you. He is lying to you, Chen roared incessantly from far away in the Loida dungeon. But he could only watch helplessly as his mother fell into Gu Junqing's trap, being wantonly toyed with by him. However, just as Yu Ruwen was about to finish undressing, the video suddenly cut off and the monitor went black. Chen knew this was because Gu Junqing did not want him to see what happened next. Even though he forced himself not to think about it, the intense unease in his heart made him understand. What Yu Ruwen did next would not only feast Gu Junqing's eyes, but he dared not even imagine what would happen during the night. After all, the drunken Yu Ruwen was no match for Gu Junqing. Moreover, the video Gu Junqing sent was not happening live, which suggested that they might have already engaged in improper relations days ago. Ding. Host caused the protagonist Chen's mentality to become imbalanced, rewarding the host with 7,000 villain points. Ding. Host caused the protagonist Chen's mentality to fall into despair, rewarding the host with 8,000 villain points. Ding. Host caused the protagonist Chen's mentality to collapse, rewarding the host with villain points. Chen felt as though he were going mad. Heartache, sorrow, sadness, despair, along with the feeling of betrayal and loss, all flooded into his heart. He did not understand why Yu Ruwen would believe that Gu Junqing would not covet her. She had actually fallen into Gu Junqing's hands in just over a month. Su Chen felt as if he had been cheated on. If Gu Junqing were in front of him, even if he feared Gu Junqing's martial prowess, he would surely rush up and find a way to perish with him. His hatred for Gu Junqing could not be washed away even if he emptied the 5 lakes and 4 seas. It was a hatred that transcended time. Chapter 887. Yu Ruwen shed all her clothes, her shapely, graceful figure slowly revealed to the air. She glanced at the transparent glass wall in front of her. Seeing Gu Junqing dazing in the room, she felt awkward and embarrassed. Although she had repeatedly confirmed that the inside of the bathroom couldn't be seen from the outside, she still had the illusion that she was exposed right under Gu Junqing's eyes. It's all his fault for choosing a couple's hotel, Yu Ruwen muttered to herself, feeling a headache coming on. She viewed this glass wall simply as a design specifically for couples pursuing a bit of excitement. Yu Ruwen first glanced at Gu Junqing in the room. He seemed to be watching TV. She felt slightly relieved and lowered her head. At this moment, Gu Junqing glanced sideways. He saw her slender, fair, and elegant neck, like a swan's, and the corners of his mouth curled slightly upward. He was as clever as ever. He had researched all the hotels in the capital beforehand, and decided this couple's hotel was the best. The top-tier luxury suite even thoughtfully provided plenty of brand new toys. Yu Ruwen was still hesitating whether to remove the last 2 restraints on her body. After all, the transparent glass wall made her feel like she was showering in public. However, she eventually couldn't stand the smell of alcohol on her body. Yu Ruwen lowered her head for a moment, as if she had suddenly realized something. It was embarrassing to watch Gu Junqing bathe. But why did she have to watch him? She could just wash with her back turned. Anyway, Gu Junqing couldn't see her. Yu Ruwen felt her logic was sound, especially since her vigilance was already low due to the alcohol. She quickly let go of her reservations. With a soft click, her lingerie fell to the floor. Yu Ruwen slowly removed her last garments, then turned around to bathe, avoiding looking at Gu Junqing outside. What Yu Ruwen didn't know was that as soon as she turned around, Gu Junqing looked openly. Although he was a gentleman and extremely resistant to taking advantage of others or bullying people, but given the situation, if looking made him a beast, then not looking would make him worse than a beast. Gu Junqing muttered to himself, then looked over with a serious expression. Immediately, Yu Ruwen's graceful and shapely figure was completely exposed, her snow-white, delicate skin flushed with a hint of red, extremely alluring. Yu Ruwen began to shower, crystalline liquid flowing over her snow-white, delicate, and shapely body. Her long hair was soaked, clinging tightly to her beautiful, soft, and snow-white back. Crystalline water streams flowed down the smooth skin, gathering in the clear indentation. Gu Junqing felt the heat rising in his nose. Under the bathroom lights, Yu Ruwen's body was so fair it actually reflected a crystalline, oily sheen. This was simply a perfect body. It was hard to imagine that a woman over 30 could maintain such an alluring form. Yu Ruwen felt a bit awkward while bathing, as if a pair of eyes were constantly watching her. So she washed quickly. After a brief rinse, she put on her bathrobe and walked out of the bathroom. However, after the shower, her mind was much clearer. She realized, dazed, that she had actually let Gu Junqing stay the night. She worried that given Gu Junqing's tendency to push his luck, he might misunderstand and think she had sent some kind of special signal. But since he was already here, it wasn't easy to kick him out. Full of regret, Yu Ruwen dried her hair and stepped out amidst the post-shower mist, radiating a unique, beautiful fragrance. As soon as she came out, Yu Ruwen saw Gu Junqing hastily hiding something. "What are you doing?" Yu Ruwen asked, frowning slightly. "Ahem, nothing. It's late, Aunt Yu. Let me dry your hair, and then we'll sleep." Gu Junqing coughed lightly and hid the remote control for the transparent glass wall. He had been so mesmerized watching her body that he only managed to fog the glass wall a second after she emerged, preventing her from noticing anything. Okay. Yu Ruwen seemed momentarily choked for words, nodding her chin slightly. Thinking about the sleeping arrangements, she lost the desire to pursue the matter. She began to agonize over what would happen next. Now that they were alone in a hotel room, she didn't believe Gu Junqing wouldn't try anything. A few days ago, on the Ferris wheel, even with Qingtong present, he had made her do such embarrassing things. Now that they were alone, she was truly worried about being violated. "Aunt Yu, sit down." Gu Junqing's voice came from behind her. Yu Ruwen couldn't help but shiver at these words. Doing it? Was he in such a hurry? Isn't it a bit too soon? Yu Ruwen turned around, trembling, and managed a forced smile. But when she turned, she saw Gu Junqing smiling on the large bed, holding a hairdryer and pointing to the spot beside him. "Too soon. If you don't dry your hair, you'll get a headache, and you won't be able to sleep well," Gu Junqing said, looking puzzled. "Ahem, it's fine. Go ahead." Yu Ruwen blushed at her own thoughts. However, she was someone who had seen plenty of situations before, so she sat calmly on one side of Gu Junqing. Seeing Yu Ruwen sitting so stiffly, Gu Junqing raised an eyebrow slightly and began to dry a few strands of her hair. Even though they weren't touching, Yu Ruwen felt as if she could still sense the scorching body heat of the man behind her. Coupled with the dim lighting Gu Junqing had set, the atmosphere in the room felt warm and amorous. That's a bit hot." Yu Ruwen suddenly let out a muffled sound. Her voice was alluring, filled with feminine charm. "A bit hot?" Gu Junqing puzzledly tested the temperature of the hairdryer with his hand. He definitely hadn't set it to the highest level. "Bear with it a little. Any lower, and it would just be blowing cold air," Gu Junqing said helplessly. It's fine, it's fine. Keep going. Yu Ruwen felt embarrassed by her own arousal. This was her first time staying alone in a hotel with a man. In the past, whenever she was with Gu Junqing, Qing Tong was usually there. Now that she was alone with him, his hormones instantly stirred her long-neglected body. Having drunk alcohol, her blood circulation had quickened. Her face was flushed, and the rapid secretion of hormones was understandable. What Yu Ruwen didn't notice was that Gu Junqing, behind her, looked at her as if she were a lamb ready for slaughter, lightly licking his thin lips. Chapter 888. The lighting in the room was dim, and the atmosphere grew warm and romantic. Aunt Yu, your hair is dry. Should we sleep now? Yu Ruwen could finally no longer sit still. Under Gu Junqing's surprised gaze, she turned around and bit him on the neck, mumbling indistinctly, "You liar." Then, with her fair, elegant arms, she pulled Gu Junqing into position. Her graceful figure moved closer to his. As she moved, a sound of pleasure mingled with pain escaped Yu Ruwen. It was enchanting and bone-deep. Su Chen waited for a long time amidst the black screen, his expression already lost to madness. It is not true. It is not true. Yu Ruwen should not have been gotten by Gu Junqing so quickly. Su Chen, what are you thinking? A man and a woman alone in a hotel late at night. Do you not know what would happen? No, it is not possible. Yu Ruwen is not that kind of person. She is exactly that kind of person. She is no longer the person you love most. She is tarnished now. Su Chen murmured nonstop, his expression crazed. He alternated between sanity and wild shouting. Just then, the video restored, and the image appeared once more. With a glimmer of hope, Su Chen hugged the monitor, desperate to know the final outcome. He urgently wanted to know if Yu Ruwen had actually been with Gu Junqing. The screen flickered a few times, revealing a wall. Su Chen recognized it immediately. This was the same hotel where Gu Junqing had taken Yu Ruwen. Suddenly, a fair arm appeared in the lens, seemingly wrapping around the neck of the person filming. Then, a voice Su Chen knew extremely well came from the video. Upon hearing that voice, Su Chen's complexion gradually turned pale. Gu Junqing, are you men also fickle? From the time you touched me until now, you have only had me 9 times. Are you already bored of me? Yu Ruwen said, her voice filled with delicate charm. Aunt Yu, why do we not go eat something first? We have not eaten or drunk for a day and a night. Can you let me rest for a while? Gu Junqing's voice seemed to tremble slightly. I do not care. It was you who tricked me into bed. Humph, do it again. Yu Ruwen's voice suddenly became alluring and magnetic. It was full of a dominant aura. With their dialogue, Su Chen's complexion changed entirely. Despair and various negative emotions intertwined in his soul. He had completely lost all expectation and desire to survive. His persistence and struggles now seemed like a joke. Ding. Host has seized the female supporting character Yu Ruwen. You have plundered 500 points of Yu Ruwen's luck and 300 points of the protagonist Su Chen's luck. Ding. Protagonist Su Chen has lost his status as the male lead. Reward. Villain points. Ding. Host has thoroughly altered the plot. Reward. Villain points. I should not have set myself against you. I should not have opposed you. Su Chen recalled every moment he had plotted against Gu Junqing. He despairingly closed his eyes. If he had another chance, he would have escaped the whirlpool of conflict between Gu Junqing and Dao Tianyan from the very beginning. Relying on his system, perhaps after developing, he might not have been a match for these two. But it was too late to say anything now. The game is over. Before Su Chen fell into a permanent slumber, his heart was filled with the pain of regret. Chapter 889. Gu Junqing felt a twinge of guilt regarding Su Chen's predicament. He felt this protagonist had been truly pushed into a miserable state by him. After all, he had never before been so sadistic as to live stream the entire process of winning over their heroines. Perhaps this was simply what growth felt like. Gu Junqing leaned against the headboard, staring blankly ahead as he pondered the meaning of life. Suddenly, a warm and soft body wrapped itself around him again. A pair of snowy white arms encircled his body, while delicate fingers gently massaged his temples. Yet, the mere feel of her sultry body made Gu Junqing's legs tremble involuntarily. What is it? What are you thinking about? Yu Ruwen's voice came from behind him. Her voice had become increasingly tender and alluring, a captivating tone that would obsess any man. However, Gu Junqing's handsome face twitched slightly upon hearing her. Truth be told, given his strength, it was impossible for him to be physically tired. But ever since he coaxed Yu Ruwen into bed that day, he had barely left it, leaving Gu Junqing feeling mentally exhausted. How did that saying go? Behind every goddess in your heart, there is a man who is sick of fucking her. The saying that a woman at 30 is like a wolf is no joke, especially for a woman like Yu Ruwen, who had never tasted the fruits of passion before. After tasting it once with Gu Junqing, she became completely addicted to this ultimate pleasure that could make one feel like they were soaring to heaven. I'm not thinking about anything. Gu Junqing shook his head. He had simply entered a period of post-coital clarity and was reflecting. Then what are you waiting for? Surely you haven't lost interest in Aunt Yu. Yu Ruwen's eyes were deep and soul-stirring as she gazed at Gu Junqing, lightly licking her crimson lips with immense allure. Aunt Yu, as much as I want to be a perpetual motion machine, I am still human. You wanted me 28 times in 3 days, and if it were anyone else, they would have been drained dry. Gu Junqing's tone was filled with a hint of tragic indignation. Initially, Yu Ruwen could not keep up, but after practicing dual cultivation with Gu Junqing, her body and stamina received a certain level of strengthening. Furthermore, women generally expend less physical effort in this aspect than men. This only made Yu Ruwen even more tireless. He and Yu Ruwen messed around in the hotel for 2 or 3 days before finally returning to the villa, leaving her unsatisfied even then, after Qingtong called. As a result, Yu Ruwen arranged a room for Gu Junqing in her villa. That very night, she snuck into his room and spent the entire night entangled with him. Qingtong was naturally happy that Gu Junqing had moved in. She did not suspect anything regarding the relationship between her mother and Gu Junqing. In any case, Gu Junqing felt that Yu Ruwen's ability to obtain scriptures was better than the Tang monks. Of course, Gu Junqing was experiencing both pain and pleasure. After all, that tight channel was something many men would give everything to possess, yet would forever remain out of reach. Don't worry, I've already ordered the butler to make you something nourishing. It's not that you can't perform anymore, is it? Yu Ruwen's voice became even more seductive. A woman who has been nourished is truly different, both in her complexion and her aura, which had become much more vibrant and seductive. It was as if a withered flower had been nourished by the rain. Not only was her body softer, but her usually cold and noble demeanor had also softened significantly. Her entire being radiated a unique charm of mature ripeness. I can't perform. Gu Junqing laughed in exasperation. He was merely a bit mentally drained, as he had spent a large portion of the 24 hours in a state of post-coital exhaustion. However, his reserves were still plentiful. Thinking of this, Gu Junqing wanted to teach Yu Ruwen another lesson. He wanted her to know that the scriptures were not so easily obtained. Gu Junqing's hand had just touched her slender waist, and his hand had just slipped into the front of her clothing. Mom, Brother Junqing, what are you doing? The door to the room was suddenly pushed open, and Qingtong walked in with a hint of curiosity. She didn't know when her mother and Brother Junqing had become so close. They used to bicker with each other all the time. Recently, they had often been closing doors to whisper to each other. Upon sensing the movement outside the door, Gu Junqing immediately stopped his movements, quickly straightened his and Yu Ruwen's clothes, and assumed a serious expression, looking like an upright gentleman who could resist any temptation. Qingtong, why are you here? A trace of panic flashed across Yu Ruwen's flushed face, and she hurriedly moved away from Gu Junqing without making it obvious. The butler said lunch is ready and asked me to call you for dinner. I saw the door was open, so I just walked in. Qingtong explained softly. We know. I'll go down with you now, and you should come down quickly, Junqing. Yu Ruwen stood up calmly, and in order not to let Qingtong see any clues, she hurriedly swayed her waist and pulled Qingtong out of the room. Gu Junqing breathed a sigh of relief. What a greedy woman. Even after injecting billions in capital, she is still not satisfied. Gu Junqing shook his head as he watched the graceful figures of the mother and daughter walk away, muttering to himself. A man still needs to keep some reserves to feel secure. After all, experience is forced out of necessity. Chapter 890. After Gu Junqing came down from upstairs, the three of them gathered around the dining table to eat. Qingtong looked at the dishes on the table, such as chive stir-fried oysters, lamb stewed with lingzi, and yum stewed with goji berries. She hesitated for a moment. Why is today's food so strange? It is not strange. The taste is also quite all right, right? Yu Ruwen's cheeks were flushed. She looked at Gu Junqing with deep meaning in her eyes, then skillfully placed some food into Gu Junqing's bowl. It is all right. Gu Junqing nodded calmly. Then eat more. Eating more chives is good for your body. Yu Ruwen's red lips exhaled like orchids. She placed several more helpings of chives into Gu Junqing's bowl. I cut the protagonist's chives so much, but I did not expect to be fed so many by someone else today. Gu Junqing laughed bitterly in his heart. Beside him, Qingtong blinked her clear, limpid eyes. She felt that the relationship between Gu Junqing and Yu Ruwen was a bit off, but she could not put her finger on it. Moreover, she felt that Yu Ruwen had changed too much. Specifically, she had become more beautiful and gentle. In the past, Yu Ruwen's eyes were sharp, and she was noble and indifferent to the outside world, not allowing any slight offense. Now, Yu Ruwen's presence was visibly much softer. Her face was flushed, her gaze was hazy, and her speech had become much more delicate and charming. Her complexion also looked much more rosy and vibrant than before. Although she did not know why Yu Ruwen had such a big change, Qingtong was naturally happy about her mother's transformation. She felt very happy about everything now. Brother Junqing, who had always helped her and doted on her like an older brother, was also by her side. Both of them were now the most important family members to her. This beautiful companionship was something the lonely and saddened Qingtong of the past could not have imagined. However, the innocent Qingtong did not know what anyone with even a little understanding of intimate relations would know. The reason for Yu Ruwen's drastic change was most likely that she had been nourished by a man. Gu Junqing was originally calmly looking for rice in his dish when a soft, familiar touch suddenly climbed up his legs. The small, silk stocking-clad foot moved like a beautiful snake, sliding around. Gu Junqing glanced at Yu Ruwen without leaving a trace. He found that she was also quietly watching him at this moment, and after noticing him looking over, she ambiguously pouted her tender, dripping lips. The charming, blurred expression in her eyes made Gu Junqing's throat roll involuntarily. It has always been my turn to harass others. I did not expect that the tables would turn today. Gu Junqing muttered to himself in his heart. It was like in the past, when he had not yet had an improper relationship with Yu Ruwen. He was always the one taking the initiative to harass her. Unexpectedly, after the relationship happened, it was as if Yu Ruwen had opened a forbidden door. She was almost completely unreserved towards Gu Junqing now. When the relationship first started, Yu Ruwen would still be reserved. It was almost half push and half yielding, saying it was not allowed with her mouth. But her body was very cooperative. Now, Yu Ruwen had learned to take the initiative to sit on top and twist her slender waist. Gu Junqing once again verified his point, that even the wildest horse can be ridden forever once it has been ridden once. If it were not for Gu Junqing's Yellow Emperor's internal classic providing him with a continuous stream of energy, he might have really exhausted himself to death. After finishing the meal, Gu Junqing unexpectedly received a call from Luodu. "You say Sichen still wants to talk to me?" Gu Junqing asked his subordinate on the other end of the phone in surprise. He had thought that after he sent the video of himself and Yu Ruwen to Sichen, this protagonist would completely lose his protagonist status and hold a blood-sea grudge against him. He did not expect that he would request to speak to him at the last moment. "Yes, young master, we also thought he had given up resistance, so we already injected him with the eternal sleep potion. But we did not expect that he would still have a sliver of will to resist. Even though he had no fighting spirit left, he still insisted on talking to you," the subordinate on the other end said respectfully. "He actually still has this kind of will? Since that is the case, I can satisfy this wish of his." Gu Junqing agreed with interest. Perhaps it was because he had had too much sage time in the past few days, and he had the leisure to listen to the words of this protagonist, who had already lost his protagonist status. Of course, there was also the reason that this protagonist's mother was too moist. Gu Junqing was even a little grateful for the appearance of this fellow townsman, Sichen, for sending him such a good heroine and female supporting character. If Sichen was coming to curse him with something like son of a bitch, then Gu Junqing would have a better excuse to retort. Getting into people's heads had always been one of Gu Junqing's strengths. "I heard you want to see me." Gu Junqing opened the call with Sichen for the last time. Sichen raised his eyes, and his eyes, filled with black energy, looked at Gu Junqing, still carrying extreme hatred. However, now he would no longer think about revenge. Even his greatest reliance, the perfect godly tycoon system, had been killed off by the other party. "I know you definitely will not let me go. My ending is either death or being imprisoned by you forever. So I just want to ask you one thing last. It can only be said that he is worthy of being a protagonist. This magnanimity is indeed ridiculously large. If he had been defeated by a protagonist one day, he might have only chosen to let all his women be buried with him. Deep down, he, Gu, had always been an extremely selfish guy. Otherwise, how could he have become a big villain? Also, Teacher Mu Painting, please help me say sorry to her as well." Sichen's face finally showed a trace of melancholy. Mu Painting was the first goddess he fell in love with when he came to this world. If it were not for the killing intent of Dao Tianyan, that brother who was a slave to his 7 sisters, he might not have given up on Mu Painting in the end. "Teacher Mu?" A strange look appeared on Gu Junqing's face. "At that time, I was intimidated by Dao Tianyan's force, and had no choice but to leave her side. She must have been very sad about me leaving without saying goodbye. So I want you to help me say goodbye to her." Sichen said coldly. "What would you do if I told you that she is currently staying in the same base as you and is working for me not far away?" Gu Junqing found it a bit funny in his heart. Chapter 891. Gu Junqing dismissed Sichen's final wish as a joke. It was unnecessary, as Mu Painting, the 6th of the 7 sisters, had no interest in Sichen anyway. Furthermore, Gu Junqing was not exactly a saint. Why would he bother fulfilling a protagonist's wish after killing them? However, he could certainly imitate Cao Cao when it came to taking care of the protagonist's wife and daughter. "After you die, I will care for your wife and daughter, so do not worry. You are not even willing to grant me my final wish?" Sichen asked, sensing Gu Junqing's disdain. Upon realizing Gu Junqing would not agree, he let out a miserable laugh before his face turned completely numb and lifeless. "Hey," Gu Junqing replied with a flat, cold sound before hanging up the call. He had expected Sichen to have something important to say. He was surprised to find that it was merely a last will and testament, a complete waste of his time. After ending the video call, Gu Junqing immediately ordered his subordinates to execute the plan for the host farm. At that very moment, a white, unknown gas began seeping into Sichen's prison cell through the ventilation ducts on all sides. Sichen sensed his fate immediately. Though he desperately held his breath, hoping to avoid inhaling the suspicious gas, he could not hold out for long. The moment he relaxed and inhaled a small amount of the white gas, he collapsed instantly into a deep faint. After a while, when the room was filled with the gas, several subordinates in white protective suits and full gear entered the cell. Following Gu Junqing's orders, they moved the unconscious Sichen into a massive container. They filled the container with nutrient solution to sustain his physical needs and added a potent sedative to ensure he remained in an eternal slumber. Then, they transported the container to the center of the base. The center of the base featured a vast platform with a giant computer at its core. The computer connected to every container in the facility, each holding a blurry figure floating inside. These figures were the protagonists whose systems Gu Junqing had previously harvested. He kept their physical bodies solely to control the systems within them. In Gu Junqing's understanding, a system functioned like a set of laws or programs. If the protagonist died, the system would either perish or wander the universe seeking a new host. Gu Junqing could choose to use his own supervillain system to suppress these lower-tier systems directly. However, that would consume a vast amount of energy, specifically villain points. Gu Junqing did not have enough villain points to spare. He found a different path, utilizing external energy sources like solar, geothermal, biological, and nuclear power. He used tools redeemed from his system to convert these sources into the high-level energy required by the systems. This allowed him to minimize losses, while maximizing the utility of the systems. This was the origin of Gu Junqing's host farm. When Sichen's container was placed in its designated spot, the virtual computer screen at the center flickered. A black line, invisible to the naked eye, forced a connection to the system inside Sichen's mind. The computer display showing the money balance began to grow at a rapid, visible speed. This was the purpose of Sichen's perfect tycoon system. Once such a tycoon system had sufficient energy, the speed at which it could generate money was unimaginable. Coupled with the super tycoon system Gu Junqing was already maintaining, he never had to worry about a lack of currency again. Mom, you never have to worry about me having no money again. Gu Junqing, who had been monitoring the Loado base operations, sighed with satisfaction. It seems the energy is still insufficient, however. Gu Junqing watched the flickering computer at the center of the base and muttered to himself. He now controlled several systems, yet he only had access to solar and geothermal energy from a single mountain range. The conversion ratio for turning these low-level energies into the high-level energy required by the systems was pitifully low. Therefore, his energy reserves were running low. These systems were only operating at a minimal level. Supporting their full operation would require an astronomical amount of energy. According to the information Gu Junqing had obtained from his own system, he knew the truth. Many advanced civilizations in the universe had constructed celestial computers powered by stars. The energy required for those computers to run once could drain the hydrogen energy of half a sun. Even a cultivator like Gu Junqing could not exist without energy. True qi, spirit, and even the vitality of the physical body were all forms of energy. The strength of a civilization or an individual was tied to ever-increasing energy demands. This was the logical necessity of civilization's ascent. Energy was the truth of the universe, the driving force behind the existence of all things. Gu Junqing cast his gaze back to the surveillance footage of the research department. There, a woman in a lab coat, with delicate features and a calm, serious expression, was researching something. It was Peng, whom Gu Junqing had requested to help with the project. As the youngest top-tier researcher in the Xia Kingdom, Peng was young enough to have achieved academician status in her 20s. Her intelligence and research capabilities were sufficient to handle projects on her own. Combined with her protagonist aura as one of the seven sisters, everything she did seemed to be assisted by divine providence. Even for Gu Junqing, convincing her to help with the research of the Starlink system had required a great deal of effort. After all, Peng's ability to resist persuasion was quite formidable. The Starlink project she was researching represented Gu Junqing's exploration of the future. Gu Junqing was never one to sit and wait for death. After all, he was facing protagonists with the aura of destiny. Every child of destiny was blessed by heaven, capable of finding opportunities and turning danger into safety, driving the changes of the plane. Even those with far less strength than Gu Junqing were not easy to deal with. If a protagonist like a reborn immortal emperor were to appear in the future, Gu Junqing was not certain he could handle it right now. Therefore, he did not plan to rely solely on his own strength. He had no intention of missing out on anything he could utilize. Chapter 892. Just as Gu Junqing was dealing with Sichen and hooking him up to the terminal calculator, Yuruwen found herself wandering around the villa area out of boredom. She noticed that Gu Junqing was not around. She wore a black off-the-shoulder dress that exposed her jade-white shoulders and long, slender legs. She looked like a soul-stealing enchantress, with shoulder-length hair slightly curled at the ends and a naturally beautiful, stunning face. In the past, Yuruwen was beautiful, but her beauty was cold and haughty. A single glance from her could exert immense pressure on others, making her seem like a block of indifferent ice. She would never have worn the dresses that young girls typically wear. Before, she always dressed in sharp business suits, exuding the air of an elite career woman. But now, the thousand-year-old ice had melted into water. Her already tender skin had become even smoother, her spirit was vibrant, and her entire being radiated a unique, amorous glow. I wonder if that bastard is avoiding me on purpose. He is nowhere to be seen all day, she thought silently as she walked. Maybe I asked for too much. Then again, one cannot just keep demanding things from a man. Men are creatures that tire of the old and crave the new, so I cannot let him get fully satisfied all at once. Perhaps I should have Qingtong try to seduce him. Mother and daughter together? No, absolutely not. Yuruwen, how could you have such a thought? As if recalling something, a clear flush of crimson rose to her delicate, porcelain-white face. Seeming somewhat embarrassed, she quickened her pace. Yuruwen, what are you doing here? Just then, a surprised voice suddenly called out to her. Yuruwen stopped and turned back to find a slender, graceful figure. The woman was wearing a form-fitting cheongsam, possessing an elegant and quiet temperament with exquisite, charming features and a perfect, curvy figure. It was none other than the fifth sister among the seven, Chu Yuchen. Even though they had some history, she could not help but silently admire Chu Yuchen upon seeing her. Chu Yuchen was truly worthy of being one of the top businesswomen in the capital, standing on par with her. She remembered that during their past arguments, Chu Yuchen had once proudly told her something. The two women stared intensely into each other's eyes. With old grudges and new grievances surfacing, they both felt an urge to mock the other. Let us set that aside for now, Chu Yuchen said, examining Yuruwen's cheeks before her tone suddenly shifted into a cold sneer. I see you seem quite pleased with yourself lately, clan leader Yu. There is a hint of passion in your brow. Could it be that the iron tree has finally blossomed and you have decided to find a man? Yu Ruwen's eyes flickered, and she knitted her brows slightly. She had long known about Chu Yuchen's lack of restraint in her speech. That was why she rarely engaged in verbal sparring with her. Still, she was surprised that Chu Yuchen could even tell. Whether I find a man or not is none of your business. I think you should focus on managing your own man, lest he go out and cheat with more excellent women, Yu Ruwen said coldly, lifting her chin slightly. She hesitated for a moment, then added, since he is so energetic, it must be because you have not fed your man well. You really have no fear of him straying. What? Cheating? So energetic? Chu Yuchen was taken aback by this remark. She had only noticed the change in Yu Ruwen's style of dress, and the flush on her face, so she asked tentatively just to gauge a reaction. Looking at Yu Ruwen now, could it be that Gu Junqing had really succeeded with her? Judging by her tone, she did not seem to know that Chu Yuchen was aware of her affair with Gu Junqing. Your temper is so fiery today. Could it be that you were harshly disciplined by a man in bed? Chu Yuchen's eyes flickered as she began to pace around Yu Ruwen, speaking in a leisurely tone. Yu Ruwen felt goosebumps rise all over her skin under that gaze, as if she were a piece of merchandise. She felt a choke in her throat at the words, as memories of her intimate moments with Gu Junqing over the past few days flashed through her mind, along with those incredibly shameful games. She wanted to retort, but realized she truly could not refute the claim. Upon closer thought, it seemed there really was no issue. However, she did not feel this was anything to be ashamed of. So what if it is? You do not know how indulgent and devoted my man is in bed. Every single time, I can make sure he is fully satisfied, Yu Ruwen said indifferently. After all, Gu Junqing was originally Chu Yuchen's man. Since she had managed to lure him away from Chu Yuchen's bed, she naturally took pride in it. Did this not prove that she was far more excellent than Chu Yuchen? Is that so? This is something you are proud of, Yu Ruwen? Should you not feel ashamed? When I am with him, I can go for an hour at a time. Chu Yuchen sneered immediately. Some keys have their own exclusive locks. As long as the key and lock match, it takes only a few minutes to open. But when they are incompatible, you could poke at it for 3 or 5 hours and still not be able to open it, Yu Ruwen said with a hint of disdain. Hearing Yu Ruwen resort to personal attacks, the air between them grew thick with the scent of a powder keg. They immediately began to confront each other angrily. Yu Ruwen, you are a clan leader of a major family, and yet you are willing to let your own daughter serve a man? How laughable. He always likes to make me use my mouth. Chu Yuchen, you have the nerve to lecture me? You are a dignified president of a listed company, yet you let a junior toy with you as he pleases. He prefers to have me sit on top. Our house's bathroom, the living room, and his bedroom have all borne witness to our traces. Ha, I have even done it in my daughter's room. Since both women knew the man in question was Gu Junqing, they held nothing back in their words. Chapter 893. Yu Ruwen, you are the head of a major family, yet you want your own daughter to serve a man. It is truly laughable. He has always made me use my mouth. Chu Yuchen, you have the nerve to criticize me. You are the president of a listed company, yet you let a junior manipulate you at will. He likes to make me sit on top. We have left our marks in our house's bathroom, the living room, and his room. Ha, I have even done it in my daughter's room. What does it matter if you have done it in a room? I was planning to introduce my second sister to him, Chu Yuchen replied with a sneer. What is the point of 2 sisters? When the time comes, I will be with my daughter Qingtong, which will allow him to enjoy the ultimate pleasure of the mortal world much more than you sisters together. Yu Ruwen laughed in rage. You the skin peeler, do you have any shame left? To say you are selling your daughter is true after all. Chu the king of hell, do you have the face to criticize me? Are you any nobler, you who sell your sister? Yu Ruwen always acted for the benefit of the Yu family, valuing every bit of profit, so Chu Yuchen nicknamed her the skin peeler. Chu Yuchen was clever and quick in business, often keeping a cold face, earning her the title of cold-faced king of hell. The two began to argue, and before long, the situation grew heated as they refused to back down. With old grievances and new conflicts, they settled everything together. Gu Junqing had returned to the villa area after dealing with Su Chen. He had just arrived when he witnessed the confrontation between the two women. Their angry words continuously reached his ears. At first, he thought both Yu Ruwen and Chu Yuchen were women of cultivation. However, after hearing the content of their debate, even Gu Junqing, who usually remained calm even when Mount Tai collapsed before him, was frozen in place. Crude words and vulgar behavior. Do not just draw a pie. When will this ultimate pleasure you speak of be realized? You must keep your word. Gu Junqing muttered to himself. He could only complain internally. If he could, he would have loved to persuade the two to live in peace, as they were sisters, and there was no need to cause chaos in his harem. However, he knew that it would be difficult for him to persuade the two in this situation. If he were to step in now, he might become the fuse that escalates their war. Gu Junqing quietly stepped back, and soon escaped from this place of right and wrong. However, the two women noticed the movement from Gu Junqing's arrival. They did not know why, but after having relations with Gu Junqing, their 5 senses and physical strength seemed to have been strengthened, making it easy for them to detect surrounding movements. However, they were currently in a standoff, and since Gu Junqing had already walked far away, they had no time to call out to him. Their conflict now was not just because of Gu Junqing. Hee, Yu Ruwen, you are truly a failure. You have just been taught by Gu Junqing for 10 days and a half, yet when he saw you, he turned around and left. It is clear that you are worthless in his heart. Chu Yechin took her eyes off the direction where Gu Junqing had left, raised her eyebrows slightly, and spoke slowly. Yu Ruwen's heart skipped a beat, and her eyebrows knitted together. How could Chu Yechin know so early that Gu Junqing was her man? No wonder she was so angry today, and had been arguing with her for so long, Yu Ruwen muttered to herself. However, the shock in her heart did not show on her face. She had been mentally prepared for this face-to-face confrontation with Chu Yechin today. We just came down from the bed, and we have been intimate for a long time. If he did not want to see me, he would have left long ago. I think he was just trying to avoid you. Yu Ruwen sneered. Then you were intimate for so long, yet he left without even saying hello to you. Ha, you have been with him for so long, yet he did not come to say hello to you either. Does that mean you are nothing in his heart either? Fire sparked in the eyes of the two women, and the atmosphere became even more intense. What, Sichen is missing? How did he disappear? At this moment, in a high-rise building in the capital, someone made a surprised sound. If Gu Junqing were here, he would recognize this person as the brother of the 7 heroines, who had not appeared for a long time, Dao Tianyan. Report to Azura. Our subordinates have been tracking his movements, and found that he disappeared at the border of the capital and Luodu. It should be related to the man you asked us to watch, named Gu Junqing. Dao Tianyan's subordinates reported respectfully. Ha, the moment I am gone, these two have really started dog-biting dog. Dao Tianyan said disdainfully. He did not have a good impression of Sichen, mainly because he had always pursued his 6th sister. Moreover, he did not know why, but Sichen, who possessed no real strength, could bring him a faint sense of threat. Dao Tianyan was very puzzled by this. Therefore, he had even personally taken action, wanting to test Sichen's strength halfway. However, he did not expect that Sichen would escape, and he still could not imagine how Sichen had escaped. The living person simply disappeared. Since then, he had sent people to monitor Sichen. That was how he discovered the connection between Sichen and Gu Junqing. Just as he wanted to deal with Gu Junqing and Sichen, his Azura society overseas was inexplicably overthrown overnight. Many powerful elders and countless subordinates were also found brutally murdered in the base. Because he did not want to leave his sisters in the country, he had to helplessly give up most of his forces in the Eagle country and move his focus back to the country. Recently, because of this matter, he had been busy dealing with the affairs of the organization. He had not even had time to care about his beloved sisters. Fortunately, the matter had been dealt with recently, and he was finally able to return to his sister's side. Gu Junqing, this time, I will not let my sister be taken away by you again. Dao Tianyan stood on the high-rise building, overlooking everything outside, clenching his fists, his eyes burning with fire. Chapter 894. After Gu Junqing left, Yu Ruwen and Chu Yechin remained locked in a standoff. Neither was willing to yield, fueled by both past grievances and new tensions. Both were proud women at heart, making it impossible for either to concede easily. If not for their remaining scraps of rationality and their desire to maintain their dignity, they might have resorted to a public shouting match. They were on the verge of physical confrontation. She is so hot-tempered, is she hitting menopause? I will never back down. Chu Yechin squinted, staring fixedly at Yu Ruwen's face. Yu Ruwen, this constant friction is not a solution. Since I met Gu Junqing before you should treat me with respect and call me older sister from now on. If you agree, we can put our grudge behind us. Chu Yechin seemed to have made a difficult decision. She felt she was conceding too much. She had originally intended to humiliate Yu Ruwen, but now she found herself needing to coexist with her. She was merely trying to establish their pecking order early. The 7 sisters had no defined seniority, but she needed to secure an advantage over the many women surrounding Gu Junqing. Yu Ruwen was a formidable rival, so confirming her status was crucial. Yu Ruwen sneered internally at these words. At first, she had considered letting Chu Yechin be the primary wife, while she took the role of a secondary spouse. But looking at how Chu Yechin constantly tried to assert dominance, her jealous behavior made it clear that she would never tolerate competition in the future. Yu Ruwen knew she could not surrender just yet. Having come from a wealthy family, she was well-versed in their dirty laundry. She knew far more about the underhanded tactics women used against each other than Chu Yechin did. She absolutely could not show weakness now, lest she be trampled later. The two women were full of hidden motives, and their past grievances were one thing. But now that they were competing for the same man, the nature of their conflict had changed. I am older than you, so you are the one who should call me sister. Yu Ruwen covered her mouth to chuckle, her eyes sparkling like the moonlight. Do you not understand the concept of seniority? The one who arrives later must call the one who arrived earlier sister. Seeing Yu Ruwen continuing to provoke her, Chu Yechin huffed. But I have heard that your 7th and 6th sisters, who grew up with you, have a complicated relationship with that animal Gu Junqing as well. In fact, they seem to have known him even longer than you. Yu Ruwen continued nonchalantly, so, dare I ask if you call your own 7th sister older sister? We are like siblings, without distinctions of seniority, so we continue to use our old titles. Besides, if I recall correctly, your adopted daughter Qingtong also has quite a deep connection with Gu Junqing. Chu Yechin spoke with a blank expression. You investigated me? Yu Ruwen narrowed her eyes. It sounds as if you haven't investigated me as well. Chu Yechin curled her lips in a mocking smile. The atmosphere between them grew heavier, their gazes locking with intense scrutiny. To an outsider, it seemed as if they were about to come to blows. Yet, the two beauties looked breathtaking even while bickering. Gu Junqing was like a goddess, with skin as smooth as ointment, exuding an aura of unattainability. Yu Ruwen was curvaceous and alluring, her beautiful eyebrows and charming manner fully displayed. What is going on with you two sisters? Why is there so much anger? Please do not fight. Just as both women were finding it hard to back down, a delicate voice suddenly rang out. The newcomer was a strange girl, whom neither Yu Ruwen nor Gu Junqing recognized. However, the interruption provided both of them a way out. They glanced at each other, then turned away, taking the opportunity to adjust their clothing. Only then did both of them shift their attention to the young girl. Once they saw the girl's face, both women were struck by a sense of surprise. Her facial features were flawless, her skin as white as snow and clear as jade, with a small, cherry-red mouth and a delicate nose. She was undoubtedly a woman of striking beauty. Even if she did not quite match the beauty of heroines like Yu Ruwen, she was not far off. Yet, both Yu Ruwen and Gu Junqing felt an involuntary and strange sensation toward her. Her face looked lovely, and they should not have felt repulsion or hatred toward her. Two sisters, please do not argue. Can we not hold hands and make peace? The beautiful young girl tried innocently to step forward and take their hands, clearly hoping to mediate the standoff. Both women instinctively pulled their hands back and stepped away, preventing the girl from making contact. The girl retracted her hand in embarrassment, seemingly unaware of why they had simultaneously pulled away. Yu Ruwen and Gu Junqing looked at each other in confusion. They did not know why they had subconsciously retreated by half a step, as if by reflex. Little sister, I'm sorry. We are not used to holding hands with strangers. Seeing that the girl was around the same age as her daughter Qingtong, Yu Ruwen felt a softening of her heart and spoke up to explain. It is all right. The girl waved her hand hurriedly. Oh, by the way, what can we do for you? Are you looking for someone here? Gu Junqing asked kindly. Wait, could a sister this beautiful be another romantic debt left behind by Gu Junqing? Gu Junqing realized the possibility, her star-like eyes narrowing as she studied the girl's face intently. Whatever Gu Junqing could think of, Yu Ruwen could also imagine. Consequently, Yu Ruwen also looked at the girl with a suspicious gaze. The girl did not know why both of them were suddenly looking at her with such vigilance, so she could only answer awkwardly that she was not looking for anyone. No one? You do not need to be afraid. If you have encountered any bully or bad person, you can tell us. Gu Junqing remained calm and wore a kind smile. Really, there is no one. The girl wiped the cold sweat from her forehead and shook her head repeatedly. After confirming multiple times that the girl was simply lost and nothing had happened, the two women finally sighed in relief. They had almost thought they were about to have another sister join the group. Finally, Yu Ruwen and Gu Junqing exchanged a look, huffed, and turned away to leave. This left the cute and sweet-looking girl standing alone in the awkward silence. Chapter 895. The girl stood there awkwardly, seemingly puzzled by why those two beautiful ladies had left so quickly. It made no sense, as they should have stopped to chat with such a cute girl like her. She felt a pang of regret in her heart. Those two beauties were truly breathtaking, far more stunning than any of the glamorous celebrities on TV, and they were rare to come by in everyday life. If he could just touch their hands, he would be hitting the jackpot. Back when he was a man, he never encountered such good fortune. Although she appeared to be a beautiful girl, inside, he thought something lecherous. That was right. He was actually a genuine man. His name was Peng, and he was just over 20 years old. It should have been his prime, a time to freely unleash his masculine charm. However, not long ago, a cross-dressing system had inexplicably appeared in his mind. Initially, he felt quite curious and excited about it, feeling as though his life was about to take off. After all, this was a system, and who wouldn't want an omnipotent golden finger? Only later did he realize something was wrong. Other people's systems were overpowered and cool, so why was his just a cross-dressing system? He even suspected he might have opened the system incorrectly. But after the system issued its first task, he finally despaired. The first mission was to make him go out in women's clothing. At first, he was naturally unwilling, even threatening the system with immense backbone. He was a dignified man, so why should he become a woman? He would rather be a eunuch than a girl. However, the moment he chose to refuse the first task, the system punished him, turning him into a woman for real. He immediately regretted it, but even as he begged the system, it was too late. Peng had transformed into a woman. Fortunately, the system promised that as long as he completed future tasks, it would change him back. This gave the desperate Peng a glimmer of hope. Yet life as a girl was truly painful. He didn't know how to get along with his family or his old brothers. After returning to school, he didn't know how to face his best friends. He didn't dare admit that his body had become female. He was terrified that they would drop to their knees and beg him to do something. Fortunately, he was originally delicate-looking, so others didn't notice even when he gained female characteristics. Still, this kind of life made him want to break down. He had to quickly move to a different city to live. After moving, he started to complete the tasks set by the system. Finally, after finishing several tasks, the system saw his good attitude and returned his manhood. However, the hobby of cross-dressing and the gradual feminization of his body could no longer be stopped. It was from that moment on that he began to experience the benefits of being a woman. When he looked in the mirror, he almost wanted to fuck himself. At school, simps constantly sent him gifts, and at his part-time job, seniors and leaders doted on him. Life was far better than when he was a man. Wherever he went, he was met with countless burning, envious, and jealous stares. Ye Peng lowered his head, looking at his long, slender, straight legs beneath his cute bubble skirt. These beautiful legs were over a meter long, clad in pure white silk stockings. Flawless, exquisite. A hint of admiration appeared in his eyes. Under the system's modification, his body had shifted toward a feminine form. If this pair of perfect legs belonged to someone else, he could play with them for a year. It was a pity, or rather a blessing, that they were his own, meaning he could play with them for a lifetime. Ye Peng thought lecherously. Another benefit of cross-dressing was that when he approached girls, they didn't show the same guarded expressions as before. Some girls even found him pure and cute, growing exceptionally close to him. That was why he was puzzled as to why those two sisters, who were even more beautiful than him, had acted like they wanted to avoid him at all costs. What Ye Peng didn't know was that these two women possessed immense fortune, instinctively sensing danger and negative things. In truth, even they didn't know why they felt such resistance toward Ye Peng. Tisk, tisk. This is definitely a rich district. I wonder how much these mansions cost. Ye Peng clicked his tongue in wonder. He wandered around the villa area where Gu Junqing lived, sighing at the surrounding magnificent and luxuriously decorated villas. He was here because the system had issued another task. Ye Peng closed his eyes slightly, and the text prompt for the task suddenly appeared in his mind. Task issued: Prince falls for the Grey Gentleman. Task description: brush shoulders with a noble young master. Make him fall deeply for you and engage in a wonderful, melodramatic romance. Note: even if he discovers you are a man, make him unable to let you go. Task failure penalty: thrown into a group of starving, horny men. Target none. Target affection none. When Ye Peng first saw this task, he gasped. This damn system had set such an outrageous task. The punishment made his vision go dark, and he felt his future was extremely bleak. Fortunately, he had some confidence in completing it. As long as he learned how to master distance, and kept the other party from discovering he was a man, his cute looks might just catch a powerful young master. Were there really so few naive, wealthy, and devoted people these days? For this, he specifically crammed many tropes about overbearing CEOs and kind young masters. Otherwise, he would rather die than accept the punishment for failing this task. Chapter 896. The villa area was filled with green grass, lush trees, and blooming flowers. Everywhere the eye landed, there were precious plants, and the forest swayed slightly in the breeze, creating a natural and captivating landscape. Ye Peng had come to this villa area because he had heard it could be considered top tier even in the capital. Everyone who lived here was a person of noble and prominent status. It was a good place to run into those rich, foolish young masters, or perhaps a domineering CEO. As long as the person fit the requirements of his system mission, that was all that mattered. If he could just find an outstanding man who met the criteria, he was confident he could hook him. Men were the best at understanding other men. He did not believe for a second that even though he was not perfectly endowed in the chest or backside, he could not snag a few men with his delicate face and slender, fair legs. Which man would not be dazed when they saw someone as beautiful as him? When he first started walking on the street, he would get goosebumps from men staring fixedly at his legs. Now, he could walk among groups of men with ease. He even occasionally teased a few men in return, enjoying the feeling of being madly chased. Ye Peng strolled through the villa area, encountering elite professionals walking by from time to time. Just then, a middle-aged, pot-bellied bald man smiled and asked Ye Peng a question. "Little girl, are you lost? Would you like your uncle to show you the way out?" "I am not lost." Ye Peng felt a bit disgusted being looked at like that. Though the middle-aged man looked rich, he was too greasy, and did not fit the system's requirements at all. "It is all right, uncle is a good person, do not worry." The middle-aged man looked at the girl's flawless, delicate face, her eyebrows like distant mountains, and her eyes like an autumn moon, combined with her pitiful appearance, and a flash of amazement passed through his eyes. The villa area did not have many residents, and as a businessman, he often visited others to build connections. He basically knew 7 or 8 out of every 10 residents here. If there was a beauty he did not know about, that would be impossible. For instance, there was a mysterious household living in the most expensive villa in the area, rumored to have an incredible background, and the women living inside were stunningly beautiful. Later, after making inquiries, he found out that the owner behind the villa was the young master of the Gu family, who now dominated Luo City. There were several women living inside, who would occasionally come out for a walk, and he had seen them many times. Of course, he did not have the guts to disturb them. He had once seen the famous Chu Yuchen, director of Chenyu, traveling with those women. Even a famous beauty like Chu Yuchen lived with this young Master Gu. This left the greasy middle-aged man feeling incredibly envious. He often muttered that he did not envy the Mandarin ducks or the immortals, but only envied young Master Gu's daily life. There was another household where Yu Ruwen, the head of the Yu family and also a famous beauty, was being kept. The most beautiful women he had seen in the villa area were from these two households. So, even though the villa prices were extremely high, he did not regret buying a house here. Being able to live in the same villa area as the two famous beauties of the capital made him feel honored, and it was a point of pride he could brag about. As for the beautiful young girl before him, he had never seen her in the villa area. In fact, he had encountered more than one little girl lost in the villa area like this. Many young girls and university students would use the excuse of being lost to sneak into the villa area, fantasizing about scenarios where a princess meets a prince. The greasy middle-aged man subconsciously assumed Ye Peng was one of them. "Uncle, I am really not lost, I am leaving now." Ye Peng was speechless. Did this person think he could woo him by blocking his path? He really wanted to say that if he took his equipment out, it would be bigger than his. But he was afraid this man would be scared to death. "Little girl, I know what you are doing, do not look at me like that, but uncle has money. Spend the night with uncle, and I will give you this much." The middle-aged man generously made a gesture with a $500? Ye Peng raised an eyebrow slightly. $50,000, you have to know that even some small celebrities are not worth this price. I once played with a top-tier A-list star, and it only cost tens of thousands. The middle-aged man talked eloquently, even giving Ye Peng an example. In reality, he just wanted to enjoy himself for the smallest possible cost. Of course, if this beautiful university student was good at it, he would not mind a long-term contract. Ye Peng rolled his eyes slightly. Even if he was not a man, he would not prostitute himself to a middle-aged uncle based on his looks alone. Ye Peng was in a good mood today after seeing two great beauties, otherwise he would have wanted to beat someone up. Just as he was about to refuse, he caught a glimpse of a man turning out from the corner of the road ahead. After seeing the man's face clearly, Ye Peng was immediately stunned. He had peerless, handsome features, a perfect face shape, and a tall, sturdy figure. He was handsome without losing his masculinity, with a pair of deep eyes that were like the calm, black ocean when still, and like brilliant stars in the sky when they moved, as if filled with affection that could make one lose themselves if not careful. This was simply the perfect male god. If he were truly a woman, he might have really fallen for such a handsome appearance. Furthermore, from his clothing, one could tell that while he was incredibly handsome, his wealth must be immense, and he was certainly a young master from one of the families in this villa area. Wasn't this the perfect target for his mission? He could already imagine what it would be like having this outstanding man circling around him in the future. Even if his identity as a man was exposed in the end, this man would be very pained, but for the sake of love, he would still love him. Ye Peng thought about the future, and could not help but giggle stupidly. The middle-aged man saw Ye Peng staring at something and giggling, so he suspiciously cast his gaze over as well. But when he saw the person Ye Peng was looking at, his expression changed drastically. Wasn't that young Master Gu? How could young Master Gu appear here? Did these two know each other? The middle-aged man's heart began to beat wildly. "Miss, do you know that man?" the middle-aged man asked tremblingly. "I do not know him, but I am about to." Ye Peng came back to his senses and began to ponder how to have a chance encounter with that man. Should he deliberately trip and fall on the man? Or should he stage a wardrobe malfunction to create a beautiful encounter? Ye Peng thought of countless movie scenes of male and female protagonists meeting and began to mull over his options. Chapter 897. Ye Peng was already brainstorming how to orchestrate a chance encounter with that man. Should he pretend to trip and fall into him? Or perhaps accidentally reveal a bit of skin for a dramatic introduction? Ye Peng replayed countless scenes of romantic leads meeting in movies, curling his painted lips with confidence. Having consumed so many stories of Cinderella's meeting wealthy heirs, he refused to believe his own looks could not snare a rich young master. He imagined hooking this guy and making him fall madly in love with him, which sounded delightful. Although the thought of flirting with a man made him slightly uncomfortable, this was, after all, a mission from the system. Furthermore, the man was handsome enough to fit the image of those melancholic gods found in novels. Ye Peng stopped caring about his personal reservations, rationalizing that he was only doing this for the mission, not because he actually wanted to get involved with a man. "Miss, do you know that man?" Ye Peng felt a pang of envy. It was true that rich people knew how to have fun. Even though young Master Gu has many women, he passes through the flowers without a single petal sticking to him. Yet, every woman remains hopelessly devoted to him, the middle-aged man said with a wistful shake of his head. He then whispered quickly, "I've heard rumors that someone as powerful as young Master Gu is extremely ruthless, and might even be bisexual." He did not actually know Gu Junqing, but he said these things just to pique Ye Peng's curiosity. He needed to get close to Ye Peng easily. Bisexual. Ye Peng had been excited, but now his heart began to drum with nervousness. Based on what this uncle said, Gu Junqing fit the mold of a romance novel protagonist perfectly. He was a player with many women, yet he never lost his heart to any of them. Then, the moment the female lead appeared, he would be completely smitten and obedient. Wasn't this the perfect target for his mission? But after hearing the later parts, he hesitated. This did not sound like the typical romance hero, but rather like a villain in a novel. He was handsome, ruthless, and skilled at deception. Moreover, was the bisexual part a bit dangerous? He was, in fact, a man. What if he got forced into a real encounter? "Little girl, you smell so good. What perfume are you wearing? Why don't you let me take a closer look, uncle?" While Ye Peng was lost in thought, he did not notice the middle-aged man closing in. Seeing that he was practically pressing against Ye Peng without a reaction, the man flashed an evil grin, twitched his nose, and wore a look of intoxication. "You asshole." Even though Ye Peng was a man, seeing the creepiness of this uncle still made his skin crawl. Just as he was about to punch the man, a sudden idea struck him. If he pretended to be harassed and called for help, would that not grab the attention of the man nearby? A heroic rescue would follow, and he could just collapse into his arms for the perfect, staged encounter. As soon as this thought occurred, Ye Peng felt a surge of joy and became indifferent to the middle-aged man's approach. He even worried that the oily man might be too hesitant, and he feared Gu Junqing was already too far away to notice them. So, to the middle-aged man's surprise, he grabbed the man's hand and pressed it against his chest. "There is a pervert here. Somebody catch this creep." The moment the middle-aged man touched him, Ye Peng slapped his hand away and screamed in apparent panic. "Hey, you, this was your idea." The middle-aged man was stunned at first, but upon feeling Ye Peng's initiative, he felt a spark of delight. He ignored the cries for help, assuming Ye Peng just liked role-playing. "But why is it so flat? It feels smaller than mine," the middle-aged man muttered to himself as he recalled the texture of the touch. Chapter 898. The middle-aged man was overjoyed to see Ye Peng so impatient. He thought Ye Peng had finally come around. Money really is omnipotent. Even the prettiest girl cannot resist the temptation of money. However, the texture felt a bit off. Shouldn't it be soft? The middle-aged man pondered the texture for a moment, whispering to himself. Regardless, looking at Ye Peng's delicate face, he still felt happy. Even if such a beautiful person did not have the best figure, that face alone was enough to stir his carnal desires. However, Ye Peng's sudden cry of pervert left the middle-aged man stunned. He panicked and tried to cover Ye Peng's lips. "That is bullshit, playing dirty and framing me." But it was clearly too late. Ye Peng's loud cry seemed to have caught the attention of Gu Junqing, who was nearby. Gu Junqing was already walking over. Seeing Gu Junqing approach, Ye Peng breathed a sigh of relief. As for letting the creep touch him, he did not mind too much. After all, he was also a man, and at most, he just felt a bit disgusted. His goal was to attract the attention of that handsome man. Once the guy saw him being bullied, he would surely help him, and then fate would take its course. Isn't that how all those cheesy dramas are filmed? The arrogant male lead, usually a womanizer, would meet the female lead after rescuing her. Soon, they would fall into a passionate, torturous love, until the heroine reformed him, and they ended up together. He felt he could follow this routine to make his target fall for him. With his appearance in women's clothing, he did not believe he could not charm these men. Men understand men best, and when a man gets seductive, women do not stand a chance. The middle-aged man watched Gu Junqing approach with trepidation, while Ye Peng looked on with hopeful, playing hard to get eyes. Feeling their gazes, Gu Junqing walked over with a calm expression. When Gu Junqing got close, the middle-aged man bowed and scraped, looking respectful. However, his expression and tone were hurried and aggrieved. Young Master Gu, I really did not force her." Although he claimed to be the know-it-all of this villa area, he did not fully understand the power behind Gu Junqing. Even so, Gu Junqing was someone he could not afford to offend. Furthermore, as Gu Junqing approached, his aura felt like a king descending, scaring the middle-aged man until his legs went weak. "Lies. You just said you wanted to pay money, and you wanted to bully me." Ye Peng's eyes turned slightly red, his tone filled with fear. He looked at Gu Junqing with pitiful eyes, which despite the grievance and tears, held a look of strength. "That is it. Doesn't this kind of young master like women like this? Resilient and unyielding to power." Ye Peng felt a secret thrill. No man can resist the aggrieved, pleading gaze of a cute girl. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man truly had grievances he could not voice. Although he did have some bad intentions, he had not actually acted on them yet. As Gu Junqing drew closer, both of their moods grew restless. However, to their surprise, Gu Junqing just glanced at them with a strange expression, then walked right past them without giving them a second look. Ye Peng stood awkwardly in place. He had already prepared himself to throw himself into Gu Junqing's arms the moment he asked a question. He had not expected Gu Junqing to just brush past them. Such a lack of public morality. Seeing a beauty being teased by a pervert and remaining indifferent, is he even a man? Ye Peng grumbled inwardly. He had planned how to bring their relationship one step closer, but never imagined Gu Junqing would not even take the first step. Gu Junqing's five senses were always sharp, and at that distance, he had naturally heard everything they were saying. He had also fully noticed their actions. It was just a woman trying to be clever and a client who wanted to sleep with her. As for Ye Peng's looks, although they were jade-like, exquisite, and beautiful, scoring at least an 85 out of 100, he could have been higher if his figure was better. However, he was still lacking the charm of a heroine. Moreover, looking at that face, he felt an underlying sense of something being off. Thus, he could not be bothered with the pair. He was already annoyed enough trying to figure out how to ease the tension between Yuruwen and Chu Yuchen. Handsome, please help me. If you leave, he is definitely going to do that to me." Seeing that Gu Junqing was really going to leave, Ye Peng panicked. He stepped forward to grab Gu Junqing's arm, speaking pitifully. Just as Ye Peng's hand was about to touch Gu Junqing's sleeve, Gu Junqing shivered and instinctively sidestepped, avoiding contact. Ye Peng was left standing there with his hand awkwardly extended. He began to guess that Gu Junqing might be a straight man, so unromantic. He had let such a perfect hero saves beauty opportunity pass by. Wait, why did I instinctively dodge when a woman tried to touch me? Could it be that I have been drained too hard by you recently, leaving me with psychological trauma? While Ye Peng cursed inwardly, Gu Junqing muttered to himself. Seeing Ye Peng approach Gu Junqing for protection, the middle-aged man could not sit still and charged over. "Young Master Gu, I really did not bully her. She was the one who put my hand on her chest," the middle-aged man explained hurriedly. "You still dare to say that? Why would a girl like me want a greasy, perverted old man like you to touch me?" Ye Peng wore a resilient expression, though the pity and grievance in his words were audible to anyone. I am already like this, can you not see the fragility hidden behind my strength now? Ye Peng stared at Gu Junqing, screaming in his heart. Of course, it was for my money, and to attract young Master Gu's attention. The middle-aged man retorted irritably. Did she really think he was stupid enough not to know her intentions? Although I am poor, I am willing to work hard to create my own wealth. I would never use a method like this. Ye Peng imitated the tone of a heroine from those cheesy romance dramas, speaking indignantly. Quite a performance, I almost believed it. Gu Junqing watched their act with a blank expression, feeling utterly bored. Chapter 899. Gu Junqing felt a strange sensation. The person before him was fairly attractive, but when they tried to grab his hand just moments ago, a sudden, primal instinct had forced him to recoil. As a cultivator with foundation establishment strength, his control over his body and reactions was far beyond that of an ordinary person. It was impossible that his physical state was the cause of that instinctive flinch. He was genuinely curious as to why his intuition had flared up so sharply. The performance the two were putting on felt tedious, like watching a couple of clowns. Had they mistaken this moment for a television drama? You can leave now. Gu Junqing was curious about the identity of the person who had been struggling, but he had no interest in the middle-aged man. The man was nothing more than a pervert, so Gu waved him away dismissively. The greasy middle-aged man was overjoyed, his face filled with relief. He had heard rumors that young Master Gu was a wealthy playboy who lived for the night, always surrounded by women. It just went to show that one shouldn't trust gossip. Gu was clearly a hero of great stature, and unlike other men who fell for beauty, he was completely untainted by such trivial temptations. For the first time, the middle-aged man felt genuine respect for someone so young. Previously, his fear had stemmed solely from the weight of Gu's family name, but now, he was truly in awe. He, on the other hand, was always being lured into traps by his own lack of self-control. Gu Junqing was surprised to see the respectful gaze the man sent his way as he departed. He didn't dwell on it for long though. Given how upright and principled he was, it was only natural for him to receive such admiration. It wasn't something to be surprised about. Now that he was alone with the individual calling themselves Ye Peng, Gu turned his attention to his face. He had to admit, thanks to the system's transformation, the delicate, feminine features were flawless. Even Gu Junqing couldn't spot a single flaw at first glance. Hello, my name is Ye Mingming. Thank you for helping me, and although I am poor, I will find a way to repay you. Ye Peng had intentionally chosen a feminine name, holding Gu Junqing's gaze with a look of earnest sincerity. Based on his understanding of wealthy young heirs, they were constantly surrounded by women vying for their attention. If he acted like a sycophant, they wouldn't care at all. So he had come up with a brilliant plan: play the role of the impoverished innocent. Wealthy men were accustomed to socializing with women of their own class, so a poor girl would naturally feel like a fresh, exotic experience. Only by projecting a spirit of poverty and resilience could he intrigue a man like Gu. Gu Junqing felt a flash of pity as he looked into Ye Peng's eyes. He finally understood why he had recoiled earlier. He had run into a complete idiot. It was a shame, really. They were beautiful, but clearly not very bright. Gu Junqing shook his head and turned to walk away, hoping to avoid catching whatever stupidity this person was suffering from. Wait, big brother, don't go yet. I haven't thanked you properly, and I at least need your contact information so I can reach you. Ye Peng grew anxious as he saw Gu Junqing preparing to leave. If he let Gu walk away, the system's plan to seduce this target would hit a dead end. Finding a man as outstanding as Gu Junqing was not an easy task. If he could bind Gu Junqing to him and make him his subservient partner, the rewards from the system would be astronomical. He could even plunder vital attributes from his underlings, such as martial strength or charm points. The more men he attracted and turned, the richer his rewards in stats and items would be. And a man like Gu Junqing, who was handsome, wealthy, and radiated such an aura of noble refinement, must have charm points that reached levels he couldn't even fathom. If he could just make Gu Junqing obsessed with him, he could steal that charm and become even more beautiful himself. Not necessary, Gu Junqing said indifferently. He had seen through tricks like these before. He had lost count of how many women had tried the same desperate ploys. Back on campus, countless female students had used every imaginable tactic to get his contact information. They had staged scenes, accidentally fallen into his arms, and even resorted to self-harm and suicide threats. It was endless. There was no helping it, really. His own charm had reached the absolute peak of humanity. It was perfectly normal to be pursued by adoring fans. However, as a man who was deeply devoted to his one true love, he wasn't about to hand out his contact details to just anyone. He had only given his information to a few hundred sisters so far. He often sighed at the thought that men as deep and devoted as himself were truly becoming a rare breed in this world. Ye Peng was speechless. Wasn't there a saying that the barrier between a woman pursuing a man was as thin as gauze? Why was Gu Junqing so stubbornly impenetrable, especially when he was masquerading as such a cute girl? If he were in the other person's shoes, he would have already been dreaming of names for their future children. Is there anything else? If not, I am leaving. Gu Junqing furrowed his handsome, perfectly groomed eyebrows. Under his long, slightly curled lashes, his dark, profound eyes locked onto Ye Peng. He felt a strange confusion in his own heart. Logically, he shouldn't be feeling this impatient. Even if he was currently struggling with the headache of how to keep Yuruwen and Chu Yuchen at peace, he shouldn't be feeling such intense revulsion toward a beautiful girl. Even for any other man, It would be impossible to feel such hatred towards someone so cute. Take, for example, Yuruwen's daughter, Qingtong. She was so soft and adorable that she was loved by everyone she met. Otherwise, the notoriously sharp and short-tempered Yuruwen would never have been so indulgent toward her. Could it be? Ye Peng was busy racking his brains to figure out how to capture Gu Junqing, failing to notice that a faint, golden light had begun to flicker in Gu Junqing's eyes. After discovering something truly interesting, a slight curve formed at the corner of Gu Junqing's lips. He looked like a predator preparing to feast. Chapter 900. Ding. Host has detected the male protagonist, Ye Peng. Protagonist name, Ye Peng. Gender, male. Protagonist trope, a cross-dressing mastermind who dominates the city, becoming more feminine than any woman. He bends all men to his will, turning top-tier male idols into his personal simps. Protagonist system, peerless cross-dressing system. System description, a man should either wear a suit to strategize, or military attire to guard the border. If that fails, he should put on women's clothing to wreak havoc everywhere. Combat power, 546. Charm value, 88. Protagonist luck aura, 7217. Skills, Grandmaster level makeup, Grandmaster level disguise, Grandmaster level voice changing, Grandmaster level acting, Grandmaster level dancing. Gu Junqing activated his insightful golden eyes, and Ye Peng's information displayed densely before his eyes. Seeing this information, Gu Junqing finally understood why he had subconsciously avoided contact with Ye Peng. Damn it, he had never expected that the person in front of him was actually a man who cross-dressed. No wonder he only felt disgust, and no heartbeat, when Ye Peng spoke to him in that cutesy, high-pitched voice. Otherwise, with Ye Peng's charm value, which was almost on par with the heroine's, he would not have remained completely indifferent. No wonder I felt like something was wrong. It is fortunate that I managed to hold back, otherwise I would have lost all face, Gu Junqing grumbled to himself. However, this brought him good news, as there was another woolly sheep he could fleece. Ye Peng noticed that Gu Junqing's gaze toward him had changed, filled with evil, greed, and tyranny. At first, Ye Peng felt his scalp tingle. Being looked at like a piece of prey was truly an uncomfortable feeling. But a moment later, he felt a slight joy. Did this not mean that Gu Junqing was finally interested in him? I knew it. I put on such a mesmerizing cross-dressing look. How could there be a man who does not like it? Ye Peng thought smugly. As long as Gu Junqing was moved by his looks, he would have the confidence to win Gu Junqing's heart. He would make Gu Junqing his loyal simp. He grew increasingly jealous as he looked at Gu Junqing's appearance, thinking that, while he was quite handsome himself, he had not expected to meet a man even more handsome than him. Just the thought of this handsome and wealthy man becoming his simp filled Ye Peng with a sense of pride and pleasure. Ye Peng did not realize that he had misinterpreted Gu Junqing's greedy gaze, aimed at fleecing him, for a gaze of lust. Handsome, what are you looking at? Ye Peng lowered his head coyly, as if he could not bear the heat of Gu Junqing's gaze. He had assumed Gu Junqing was a cold, high-ranking male god who would not be easily moved by women. He never expected that he would still fall for his stunning, cross-dressed beauty. Little did he know that, when he bowed his head in feigned shyness, Gu Junqing was almost repulsed to the point of vomiting. Nothing. By the way, I see you are not old. You should still be in school, right? Gu Junqing forced a smile to ask, despite the disgust in his heart. Yes, I study at Huaqing University. Ye Peng raised his head proudly. This was one of the identities the system had arranged for him, as the school was the best way to get close to a male god. Being able to attend a world-renowned school like Huaqing was naturally capital for him to show off. That is good. A smile appeared on Gu Junqing's face. Since Ye Peng was also at Huaqing, he basically had a plan on how to make good use of him. What about you, handsome? Which school do you attend? I am also at Huaqing. Gu Junqing replied indifferently. That is great. Brother, can I come find you to hang out later? Ye Peng's eyes flashed with surprise, thinking that being in the same school meant they could meet often. He did not believe that, with his tea-serving skills and looks, Gu Junqing would remain indifferent. Of course you can. Even if you do not come to find me, I will come to find you. Since this cross-dressing protagonist was willing to deliver himself to be fleeced, he would naturally not refuse. The profound meaning in Gu Junqing's words left Ye Peng feeling confused, but he subconsciously felt that Gu Junqing was interested in him, so he nodded happily. He started daydreaming about how many rewards the system would give him once he successfully captured Gu Junqing. Gu Junqing looked at Ye Peng's charming face after the cross-dressing, a flicker of contemplation in his eyes. He still had some concerns. Although Ye Peng possessed the cross-dressing system, he was, after all, a man. Under the guise of being a woman, other women would easily lose their guard against him. For example, he could easily enter women's restrooms or changing rooms, and women would not be vigilant about him seeing them. Even if this protagonist claimed to be righteous, and might not do anything like peeping, Gu Junqing never believed in human nature. Gu Junqing's eyes flashed as he opened his system store, and found an item that cost 50,000 villain points to redeem. The Impotence Atrophy Potion. This colorless, odorless potion had no side effects. Once the target consumed it, they would unknowingly become impotent. Furthermore, the person would completely lose interest in matters between men and women. Not only would it chemically castrate the target, but it would also psychologically castrate them, causing the target to thoroughly despise the most pleasurable acts between men and women. The effect of the potion lasted for 100 years, and could not be detected by Ye Peng's system. This was originally an item the system gave him to deal with protagonists. Although the potion required 50,000 villain points, Gu Junqing decided to redeem it after a moment of thought. It was expensive, but at the very least, it was truly effective. Ye Ming. Although Gu Junqing already knew his real name, he did not want to expose it just yet. Yes, that is me. At first, Ye Peng was stunned, but then he realized that Gu Junqing was calling him. You seem tired from walking. Let me buy you a bottle of water. Gu Junqing produced a bottle of water from nowhere and handed it to Ye Peng with a smile. Ye Peng did not care where he pulled it from, but he cared about why he felt, for some reason, that it was better not to drink it. A strong sense of vigilance and unease rose in his heart. Why are you not taking it? Gu Junqing gestured with a smile. Ye Peng suppressed his inner unease and reluctantly took it. System, detect if there is any poison in this bottle of water. After obtaining the water from Gu Junqing, Ye Peng hurriedly gave the order in his heart. Ding. The system did not detect any abnormal ingredients in the water. After the system finished the inspection, Ye Peng secretly breathed a sigh of relief. To be continued. Hope you liked today's video. Join the community by subscribing and dropping a like. I'll be back with another update as soon as possible. See you then.